Framed for murder, he was sent to the most brutal rehabilitation prison in the country. Inside, violence rules every corner, and no inmate is ever meant to leave unchanged. Everyone expected him to die there, but they forgot one thing. His older brother was willing to enter that hell to bring him home. Together, they'll grow stronger, crush everyone standing in their way, and expose the rotten system from the inside. Can two brothers bring down a system designed to keep them locked inside forever? All the journalists had gathered for the press conference, because with a stunning 87.5% of support in the election, the president-elect, Khan Mansu, became the most supported candidate in the history of presidential elections. The president-elect's address to the public is now beginning. He approached the microphone and said, he stands here, in this place, because he cares about the youth who are the future of this country. He worked as a teacher for a long time and lived his life thinking about what is truly the best path for children. What he regretted most was the lack of a proper education system. One day, a teacher got angry at a student because he was listening to music during class. She rudely ripped the headphones off his head and told him he was grounded and that he should bring his mother today. He looked at her furiously and called her a foul word, then grabbed a pen from the table and hit her, which shocked all the other students. The teacher who was supposed to guide children on the right path became the target of violence. The teenagers went completely crazy. One day, a guy and his friends were speeding down the road, fleeing from the police. Of course, in the heat of the moment, they were going to surrender to them and accidentally hit a woman with a stroller at a crosswalk. The hood was completely crushed. The woman and her child died, and these children didn't even feel any guilt. In any case, they won't be properly punished. They know this and take full advantage of it. One day, the teenagers cornered the poor old man and started beating him, saying that therefore he can't do anything except be a security guard. The poor old man apologized to the teenagers, saying that he did wrong, and then the guy put out a cigarette on him and said that since he was wrong, he should accept punishment. The old man's scream came from the alley. People heard it but simply passed by. In their time, there are no adults who could correct children. Adults are preoccupied with pleasing children. They are afraid of revenge, so no one dares to speak out against them. However, from today on, the era of forgiveness for being just children is over. There will be no more lenient punishments. They will repeal the law on the protection of minors, which has been problematic until now. If children sin, they will undergo rehabilitation training. When it is decided that the training is complete, the children will enter society as new people. This is a new era of the law on the protection of minors, the law on rehabilitation and re-education. Journalists recorded his every word and constantly took photos, and then the man smiled broadly and said that if they disobey, then they must be punished. And so all these children were sent to re-education. It was an ordinary day. Medical workers arrived at the school and set up a blood donation station, for which a huge line had already formed. One of the nurses asked her colleague if this was her first time at this school. There are a lot of kids here who want to donate blood. It seems like there are several times more kids here than at any other school. It's so strange. Young people don't even consider donating blood these days, and her colleague agreed with her. It's so surprising. But the kids took the blood donation certificates not to help, but for their own benefit. After receiving the certificates, they all lined up in another line to a guy named Minsu. One of the students asked if he just gave the blood donation certificate, how much would he get? Minsu answered that he would buy it for 5,000 won. There were 5 minutes left until the end of the break, which caused everyone to rush and worry. MC made money from these certificates. It's his business. He exchanges a 5,000 won coupon and one blood donation certificate for 10,000 won. At first glance, it may seem like his business is unprofitable, but his true goal is blood donation certificates. The actual value of the certificate is about 12,000 won, and if you put this up for sale for 10,000, there will be dozens of messages from people who need a blood transfusion. Then why isn't anyone selling it? It's because it's a crime. But a minor like Minsu, even if he gets caught, will only get off with a warning. Violence, theft, fraud, and murder. Even such brutal crimes are not punished properly. In an incident with no casualties, will anyone report it to the police? Even so, it's not an easy matter. He calculated everything he earned, 600,000 won, even less than last month. Suddenly, someone kicked him in the face, causing him to fly to the side and scatter all the money. Committing a crime also means becoming the target of another crime. Someone who committed a crime and profited from it has no way to justify it. No one will sympathize with him, and no one can be told about it. So what difference does it make? Because no one will protect the MC anyway. The hooligans surrounded him from all sides and asked, did he make a lot of money today? He looked up at them and cursed. Then they started beating him up and discussing the new law on rehabilitation and re-education. They did something stupid again. The stupid world came up with a stupid law. The higher-ups sit there and do nonsense. They just talk, but can't do anything. A hooligan named Taewon, sitting on Minsu, farted loudly, and one of his friends exclaimed in disgust, "What's that smell? Did he eat something rotten? What a stench. He didn't shit his pants, did he?" The hooligan asked, "Why make a fuss over some smell? Men often get the urge to take a crap while smoking a cigarette. Besides, it's better than the smell of cigarettes, it's really bubbling. He looked at Minsu with a smirk and asked, he's right? If he earned money, he should share it with his friends. He decided to run away because Changsu went to prison. He pulled out some snot and spat it at Minsu along with the saliva, and he said in a rage that without Changsu, they were just scum. The bully asked, he knows that Changsu is 100 times scarier than him, right? He was coming today. Hearing this, the MC became scared. Chu Changsu is the head of a criminal cartel made up of minors who committed crimes. Everyone has suffered because of him, but no one can come forward and call themselves a victim. Why? Because everyone is afraid of the retribution that will follow in the blind spot of the law. He is literally omnipotent. Minsu asked, is he really getting out of a penal colony today? The bully told him to be more respectful. What, is he his friend or something? He was scared when he heard that he was getting out. Now it's time to pay taxes. They'll both be in trouble if Chansu hates them. MC thought for a bit, then reached into his bag, and the bully said that it felt so good when he behaved so obediently. After that, Minsu took something out of the bag, which even made them a little confused, and he asked, what are they standing there for? Are they not going to take it? He gave them the middle finger with a big smile on his face and told them to eat something. Taewon got really angry. He kneed him in the stomach and exclaimed, what kind of weakling does he think he is? Since Chansu is not here, then there is nothing to be afraid of? Does he think nothing will happen to him? His friends noticed that he was really angry. He needed to calm down. Taewon told them not to even stop him. He was going to kill that idiot today. His gaze fell on the shovel, and his friend asked him to calm down, otherwise he would also end up in a penal colony. He took a shovel and said that he wasn't afraid of prison, he'd just serve his time and get out. But he'd make sure Minsu wet his pants every time he saw him. But before he could land a blow, someone pushed him in the back and he fell with a crash, and his friends' mouths dropped open in shock. The MC was also surprised. The student who saved him, Kang Yuseong, said that school violence is prohibited. He crouched down next to Minsu to help him up, and one of the guys asked, isn't that idiot the student council president? His friend said that he'd been wondering who it was. He took off his glasses and immediately started showing off. Taewon called out to him in a rage, saying that today, he'll kill them both and go to prison. He swung the shovel, but the student council president quickly dodged, then grabbed his shoulder and slammed his head on the ground, asking, has he ever killed anyone? Will he be able to answer for this? He twisted his arms so hard that he started screaming, unable to bear it. He looked at his friends and exclaimed, what are they standing there for? Let them kill, that is, beat this idiot. His friends pounced on Yusung. He quickly responded to the first one's blow, grabbing his arm and punching him in the face. Then the second guy pounced on him from behind and said that he pitied him for being the council president, but he was asking for trouble. He lunged. Yuseong ducked sharply, and then grabbed his arm and threw him over himself, knocking him to the ground, after which he rushed to the third guy, who was standing to the side in fear and asking him not to come closer. He just stood there and did nothing. But Yuseong didn't stop. The guy got really scared and then screamed in pain. Meanwhile, the MC stood up, brushed off his clothes, and sighed heavily, telling the student council president that he himself said that school violence is prohibited. He smiled and responded that in times like these, you should say, thank you, brother. Minsu walked away and said that he was no longer his brother, so he should stay out of such matters. Why stand next to trash if it splashes you? Yusung said that he was not trash, but his younger brother. No matter what he thought, they were still brothers. The MC told him to stop and that he should throw away that watch. Yusung asked what was wrong with his watch, and he said that if he was adopted by a rich family, he should change his watch. Even he was ashamed of himself. The watch had the name of the orphanage Penguin written on it, and Yusung said that he didn't care. Seeing him heading towards the school gate, he exclaimed, what about classes? Minsu told him that he didn't care. He was going home. His older brother scratched his head in confusion and asked, again? Well, he's an idiot. He should change his watch for starters. On the way home, Minsu kept swearing at his brother. And why is he even getting involved in such things? What if he doesn't get into university because of him? His older brother, the student council president and an applicant to Korea Medical University, Kang Yu-sung, and he, the worst student in school, Lee Min-soo. They are half-brothers. His brother's real name is Lee Hyun-soo. He was adopted by a rich family and became Kang Yu-sung, and he still remains here in the Penguin Orphanage. Therefore, his brother cannot get involved with him. He can become an obstacle for him. He must firmly follow his own path, and he must find a way to live his own way. In an alley next to the orphanage, in a container for old clothes, lies his way to continue living, what he's painstakingly collected so far, his entire belongings, 3,400,000 won. He needs another 6,600,000 to reach 10 million. How can he earn it? Does he need to wait another 3 months until the next blood donation? Or maybe he can go on a business trip to another school. But why is he so frugal with money? In 2 years, he'll be evicted from the orphanage. Of course, he'll get 5 million won from the government, but it's hard to get a house with that. Maybe he should get a part-time job, but such underage orphans are rarely hired. He knows he's committing a crime, but there's no other way to make money faster. He doesn't want to be a burden to his brother anymore. He put the bag with all his belongings in the locker and closed it, and suddenly Taewon's voice was heard behind him, mockingly asking, does he have that much money? He put his hands on his shoulders and decided to tell him something funny. If this illegally obtained money is found, then the state will take it. He let out a chuckle, then couldn't help but laugh out loud, drooling, and the MC asked what he wanted. Taewon answered that he told him that he would make him wet himself just by looking at him. The next day came. Yusung was sitting in class with headphones on, but suddenly the teacher came in and ordered everyone to shut up and sit down. He wanted to tell them something. Chang-soo, who had been serving time in prison, returned. The teacher concluded that he had repented of his actions, so they should try to help him get used to school life again. Some students received this news with delight, while others with annoyance. One of the guys asked his deskmate what was wrong with the teacher. He said with a smile that Chang-soo would hear this and go crazy. There was nothing special about the penal colony, since he was already released after 4 weeks. And then Chang-soo rolled into the classroom in a wheelchair, and everyone was simply shocked by his appearance. Cho Chang-soo, the head of the juvenile cartel and an all-powerful guy, lost all his mind during his 4 weeks in the penal colony. Chang-soo suddenly laughed loudly and hysterically and then exclaimed, "A pea shot!" His pants got wet and a puddle immediately formed under him, and the students shouted to the teacher that Chang-soo had wet himself. What the hell happened to him? The teacher asked Chang-soo's mother to take him away from there, and they left. Now everyone knew what was happening in the penal colony. A special law on rehabilitation and re-education. The previous law for adults only created problems, so it was repealed. And now a minor who committed a crime undergoes rehabilitation training in facilities under military control. The preparation period lasts until the re-education is considered complete. In the evening, the police arrived at the shelter. They cordoned off the alley where Minsu's things were lying, and all the passers-by crowded to find out what had happened. They said someone had died there. Yusong was just passing by, and the driver said there were so many cars ahead, they might be late for classes. Yusong looked out the window. After all, this was the shelter where he used to live. And then he saw something on the road and immediately jumped out of the car. His little brother's watch was lying on the ground, and an uneasy feeling settled in his chest. Onlookers crowded near the alley shouted that there was a killer there. They said it was a child. It's so terrible. So the price of nearby buildings will fall? That's why they were against opening a shelter here. Yusung ran to the alley, pushing through the crowd, asking them to make way. His little brother was there. Finally seeing him, he was horrified. The police handcuffed Minsu and took him away, saying, Article 243, in accordance with the special law on rehabilitation and re-education, the boy was detained at the scene of the crime. From now on, the youth's personal information will be managed by the Re-Education Center. Some time passed. MC was summoned to a court of summary jurisdiction for minors. The judge slammed his fist on the table in anger and exclaimed that rehabilitation was impossible. There was not even a sign of remorse. Let him not forget that he was here for murder. He answered him that he did not kill. He had already said that. Why don't they listen to him? The man clicked his tongue in displeasure and said that he continues to lie to them. He showed him evidence. His fingerprints and bloodstains are on this brick. How will he explain this? And what about the crimes committed before this? He didn't commit them either? He had seen people like him many times. They blame the situation, their family, or someone else. It's simply impossible to rehabilitate people like them. If something isn't beneficial, they immediately act miserable. He doesn't even think about repenting himself. He has no respect at all. As if it's okay to kill because of bullying, kill because someone stole your money, or kill because you don't like someone, then this world would be full of dead people. That's why he was taught. If someone bullies you, you should ask adults for help. After all, the reason he committed the crime was because he didn't trust adults. That's how, in accordance with Article 28 of the Rehabilitation and Re-Education Law, Minsu was ordered to be placed in a re-education correctional facility with a bunch of other scum. While they were riding there on the bus, the guys kept arguing about how far the correctional facility was. When will they get there? There's nothing here but mountains. Out of boredom, they started pestering the guards, telling them to sing a song. And one of them, with an awkward smile, asked them to be patient for a bit and sit quietly. One of them said he needed to go to the bathroom. When would they get there? The officer told him they were almost there. They should be patient for a bit and could go to the bathroom as much as they wanted. Finally, their bus pulled up to the re-education center. They all immediately pressed themselves against the windows to look at it, and one of them indignantly asked why this building was so old. Were they really going to sleep there? And suddenly they saw girls who were digging the ground right now. They immediately started drooling over them, and the guy sighed languidly, saying that he loved the smell of women so much. He thought he wouldn't be able to enjoy them for a while. His friend cursed and asked how it was possible to smell through glass. They started shouting at them from the windows too. The girls decided to take a break and stared at them in confusion, and the officer told the guys to calm down. This was a women's colony, and their building was across the street. The guys were very upset, and one of them exclaimed, "Who's ready to go with him to meet girls? He can't sleep without a girlfriend." The MC sat sadly the whole time and thought, how can you trust adults? Even when he told the truth, no one believed him. They pulled into a correctional facility, and the doors slammed shut. The bus stopped at the main platform, and an officer asked everyone to line up, and the guys felt like they had arrived at some kind of resort. One of them pestered the officer, asking for a cigarette, but he nervously replied that minors were prohibited from smoking. The guy angrily said that he was only asking for one, and his friend joined him and asked if he wanted to get punched in the face. Maybe they'll hit him twice, and then he'll give them cigarettes? They started arguing, and Minsu got off the bus and heard some grunting. Some prisoners were running around nearby, pretending to be pigs, causing the guys who had just arrived to stare at them in shock and then burst out laughing, asking what was wrong with these idiots. Only the MC understood that something very strange was going on here. The officer turned to the pig squad and suddenly, in a very loud voice, ordered everyone to stand still. The guys were surprised that he was shouting so much, and he ordered the squad to fall into line. They all stood at attention, and then the officer ordered them to salute the chief. They grunted loudly, putting their hands to their temples, and the other guys continued to laugh at them. The chief ordered, "Company, at ease." The guys started mimicking him and calling him an idiot, and asked if they should do that too. This is so stupid. The warden of the penal colony noticed them and, with a smirk, ordered the squad to dig in, and the guys called him an idiot. What kind of nonsense is this idiot talking about? What does he want to dig in and where? That squad immediately dug their heads into the ground, which surprised the guys and asked, did they really do that? But is it really okay to do that to them? Don't they know about the rights of minors? The warden pointed his finger at them and exclaimed that today, as usual, nothing but bugs arrived. He called out to the pigs, and they immediately responded with loud grunts. And then he told them that he would give them 10 minutes to turn these scum into livestock. Because of the way he called them, the guy got really angry and said a few kind words to him. But then a prisoner's fist flew into his face and Minsu stared at them in shock, thinking, what the hell is going on here? The squad threateningly advanced toward the new arrivals, flexing their fists, and they retreated back in fear. The guys rushed to attack. MC stood right in the front lines, but somehow he was barely hit, but the others were not so lucky. The boss told the pigs that he really liked their behavior. From now on, they were not pigs, but slaves. From now on, he allows them to talk like people. Did they understand everything? They shouted at him in unison that they understood everything, and the officer ordered them to salute the boss as a sign of gratitude. They all immediately stood at attention and thanked him, and Minsu wondered, what kind of situation is this? In a situation like this, the best strategy is to play dead. While he pretends, he needs to scout the situation. There are many other guys here besides him. If he screams and runs like they did, he will become an easy target. They all ran in a panic to the guards, asking them to save them from these crazy people, but they only smiled and waved their hands, saying that they weren't allowed in here. Minsu was surprised that they were smiling in such a situation, but if they wanted to help, they would have done it from the very beginning. This means that those people are even more dangerous. Because the guys weren't listening to them, one of the guards got really angry and hit the guy on the head with a baton, exclaiming that he said they weren't allowed in here. He hates insolence, hates it when people don't listen to what they say. They started beating that poor guy together, and MC thought that this was probably the starting point for his future life. Subtle adjustment of force, unnecessary body movements, blows to non-critical places. This is not real violence with the intent to kill. Of course, no one wants to become a murderer just like him. Suddenly, the voice of the colony's director was heard right above him, noting with a grin that he was quite a cunning guy. He had only just arrived and should have been at a loss, but he pulled off such an amazing trick. Minsu apologized to him, and he put his foot on his head, saying that he had nothing to apologize for. He liked such smart rats. Now he would be a rat and continue to amuse him. Did he understand everything? He wheezed and said that he should squeak. Since he remained silent, he began to kick him, making him squeak like a rat, and turned to his subordinates, asking if they were finished yet. They answered him that all the new students were completely naked. After that, they undressed Minsu and threw him to the others, and the colony's director with a smirk told his subordinates to start marking them. Some time ago, Yishong came to Changsu's house. He rang the doorbell and asked if anyone was home. It was already 2 p.m., a perfect time for the house to be empty. He took a pair of scissors out of his pocket, pried the door open with them, and broke the lock, then entered the house. As a child, he often broke into empty houses with his younger brother. MC watched from the hallway, and he stole anything from the house that could bring in money. Until they were caught by the police and taken to an orphanage, they repeatedly robbed empty houses for many years. As a result, they could take all the valuables from a house in 5 minutes. After those days, he didn't think he'd have to do it again. He went to Chansu's room and told him not to worry. He didn't come here to rob him at all. He just needed to know something. His younger brother ended up in that place. Chansu was tied to the bed. He didn't look like he understood what was happening and quietly mumbled that he shit his pants. Yushong looked at him with disgust and asked what kind of correctional facility had turned him into this. He'd heard he'd fallen from a height and injured his head, but there didn't seem to be any injuries or fractures on his body. Was there really something else? There were times when even the police avoided him, but now he was in such a pathetic state. Changsu screamed that he'd shit his pants, and Yusung shut him up by hitting him on the head and exclaiming, he'd only been there 4 weeks, but there was no telling when his brother would be released, so he should pull himself together and answer him. But instead of answering, Changsu just laughed loudly and started shaking his head, screaming that it hurt, that he'd made a mistake. Yusong turned away from him in frustration, realizing he'd only wasted his time. And then he noticed something interesting on his chest, some kind of paint. Right now, his brother and the others were being marked with red letters that designated the class of crime. Theft, C. Property damage is also C. After looking over the list, the warden sighed heavily and noted that this time it was just a boring and trivial matter, and then something interesting caught his eye, and he exclaimed that he finally found it. His eyes did not deceive him. He happily jumped up from his chair and congratulated the rat. He was the letter A. MC did not understand what was going on, and the warden of the colony said with a wide smile that he was more cruel than he seemed. He was the only A this season. An especially fun re-education life awaits him. Because of this, Minsu became nervous. Murder belongs to Class A. Some time ago, at Yongji Girls' High School, the girls happily headed to the school gates, but one of them noticed someone interesting and grabbed her friend by the shoulder, telling her to stop eating and look there. An incredibly handsome man, Yusong, was standing near the gate. Of course, he attracted the girls' attention, and they approached him, offering to get to know him better. Her friend coquettishly tucked her hair behind her ear and asked if he was also a student. She suggested that they follow each other on social media, but he just gave her a dark look and then declined with a smile, saying that he didn't use social media. Seeing his smile, they squealed with delight, and he asked if he could ask them a question. The girls were so delighted with him that they immediately began breathing heavily and laughing strangely, saying that he was so cute, it took their breath away. Let him ask whatever he wanted. They could even give him their addresses. He said that there was the person he was looking for. Her name was Simon. The girl pointed at her and said, "There she is." After taking off her helmet, Simon headed towards the school gate, and the girls said that she had just recently gotten out of the correctional facility. They immediately looked down, trying not to make eye contact, and Yusung walked straight towards her. He stopped in front of her, and she gave him a displeased look, asking what was wrong, and he said that he wanted to know about the correctional facility. She roughly pushed him with her shoulder, telling him to leave her alone, and moved on. And then he sadly said that his little brother was there. She stopped, but then walked on again, and he sighed heavily, wondering if he had asked this too openly. Next time, he would need to use a different method. But suddenly, Simon called out to him. She threw the helmet into his hands and climbed onto her bike, telling him to get on. This doesn't seem like the right place to talk. While they were driving, he asked her why she'd changed her mind, to which she replied that her brother was still locked up there. He asked, "Rehabilitation Center for Re-Education? What kind of place was that?" She fell silent, then sadly lowered her gaze and told him it was hell. Currently, the warden was conducting a special training session for the new arrivals and exclaimed that it had barely been 3 hours. They would now move on to the next training session. MC nervously clenched his teeth and wondered when this would end. The supervisor ordered them to start jumping and lunging. Everyone started grunting like pigs, and Minsu squealed like a rat. They grunted constantly throughout the entire training session, as instructed by the supervisors. MC was already feeling ill. 3 hours had passed, but when would it all end? Meanwhile, the supervisor, smiling, put his hand to his ear and sighed languidly, enjoying the sounds of screaming cattle. He liked to hear it every time. But one of them, instead of grunting, let out a sigh, which immediately ended his enjoyment. The supervisors immediately started kicking the guy, telling him to get up and not look for easy ways. Since there was a laggard, they would start all over again. The guy apologized and said that his stomach hurt badly and he needed to go to the toilet. The supervisor clicked his tongue in displeasure and shouted that when he first arrived, he pretended to be strong. He can't even stand this, but the supervisor told him to stop. They're hitting him so hard just because he needed to go to the bathroom? Aren't they ashamed? This is bullying. He walked up to the guy and sat down next to him, saying he must have been holding back, and only now was he able to say it. He offered him his hand to help him stand up, and told him not to worry. Who else wants to go to the bathroom? The other guys immediately answered him, and Minsu was surprised. At the beginning, he treated them like trash, and now what? One of the supervisors exclaimed. Who gave them permission to make human sounds? They immediately started grunting, and they gathered everyone who wanted to go to the bathroom in one line. Minsu was among them. The supervisor yelled that if they don't go to the bathroom now, they won't be able to do it until the end of practice. The MC found all this strange. Do they really want to send them to the bathroom and the rest will practice? That's not fair. Maybe then everyone will just pretend they have a stomachache and leave. One of the guys in front told his friend that they would drag out their time in line like this, and the day would be over. And Minsu thought they were already plotting. This was all somehow suspicious. The supervisor asked if there were any cattle who wanted to leave the line. This was a rare opportunity. MC suspected something was wrong. They couldn't just send them to the toilet. Selfless kindness is like the fruit of an unknown tree in the mountains. The more tempting and sweet it looks, the more dangerous it can be if eaten without thinking. So he needs to be very careful and doubt. He raised his hand and squeaked like a rat, and one of the guards irritably asked what he wanted. Minsu squeaked, and only when he was allowed to speak like a human did he exclaim that his stomach didn't hurt anymore and he wanted to get back to training. The guard grabbed him by the neck and called him an idiot, asking, "Are you kidding me? Is this some kind of kindergarten for him?" Out of rage, he started choking him, and he said he just suddenly tensed up and that's why he felt like he had a stomachache. The man asked, so what? Should he make it so that he actually got a stomachache? He asked him for forgiveness, and the warden threw him out of the line, promising to keep a close eye on him. While he was getting his breathing back to normal, the other guys laughed at him, and the warden asked if there were any more cattle who wanted to get out of the line. But MC knew he had made the right choice. They treat them like cattle, and yet they allow them to go to the toilet. But cattle don't go to the toilet. Only people do. The warden ordered everyone who wanted to go to the toilet to gather in one group, and the boss said with a smile, both people and animals have to go to the toilet. They had to endure all this very hard. They were released for 30 minutes. The guys who stayed to train cursed out of frustration and started envying them, and those guys laughed at them, calling them idiots. But it wasn't that simple. The boss smirked, pointed his finger at them, and asked why they were laughing. Those who didn't go to the bathroom were resting. Then they all stared at him in shock, and he told those who were going to the bathroom that from now on they would be making a human centipede. Minsu was shocked. It's an arthropod belonging to the class Chelopoda. 15 pairs of legs is the standard for this one, with the largest number reaching 177 pairs. A creature shorter than humans and animals, an insect. After that, the guards lined them up and told them to shove their faces into the asses of the person standing in front of them and put their legs over their shoulders. They were supposed to rise on their hands and hold on, and if they fell, they would be given extra time. The boys couldn't object and had to obey. The guards constantly bullied them, telling them they were worse than pigs and any other livestock. They were inferior creatures who couldn't even control their urine and possessed low intelligence. For people like them, a restroom was a luxury. The supervisor pushed one boy, breaking the entire line, and told the insects to finally relieve themselves. He had made the toilet for them and prepared everything. He started kicking them, laughing loudly, and the guards followed his example. After that, the guards kindly sprayed them with water from a hose so they could wash themselves. Only 3 hours had passed. The boys, who behaved like animals and feared nothing in this world, had now become cattle, afraid of being beaten. A signal came over the loudspeakers. The lesson was over, and the supervisor told them to finish and go inside. The cattle needed to be fed. The guards and prisoners saluted him, and then they all went to the dining hall. The food was pretty meager. Rice, a few beans, and some scraps in the soup. MC frowned and thought, this is food. There's nothing to eat here. Besides, why are they the only ones eating on the floor? Because they're cattle? They could at least give them a spoon. The prisoners at the table looked pretty humble, and unlike them, they at least had clothes. The guard announced that they were starting a song of gratitude right now and ordered them to sing. The prisoners at the table immediately began singing. We are not people, we are dogs, pigs. We eat what we are given, we do what we are ordered. We are happy and happy when we are scolded and beaten. Minsu stared at them in shock and thought that they really considered people animals. The words to the Song of Gratitude were hung in a prominent place in a gold frame. MC gathered his strength, grabbed the rice with his hands, and began to eat it greedily, deciding that he would endure, even if they considered him cattle or someone else. He would endure and definitely get out of here. Some time ago, Seimin took Yusung to the observation deck, which offered a view of the Rehabilitation Re-Education Center. She sat on the fence and said that she comes here every day and thinks about her brother. He sat next to her and said that his brother is still on trial. He will probably be sent there soon. Does she really think this place is hell? She answered him that maybe hell is even better, but this place is not meant for people to live. Every day she has nightmares about being in that place. She can't sleep without sleeping pills. But does he really care about his brother so much that he even came to her? He answered her with a smile that it was their mother's will. She asked him to definitely protect him, but in the end, he was unable to do so. So he came to her. Before it's too late, he wants to do something. Among those freed from the colonies, she's the only one who's okay. She smiled and offered to tell him about a way to survive in that colony, and he asked excitedly, is there really a way? How did she manage to get out of there unharmed? She made a stupid face and squinted. That's how she pretended to be stupid. He remained silent, not knowing what to say, and she said that it was true. He exclaimed that he was actually serious now. She shouldn't joke either and tell him everything. But she wasn't joking at all. She took off her wig, he saw a bunch of burns, and she said that that's where all the crazy people in this country gather. She lost her temper, and a fight broke out. There are so many idiots around, it's hard to even imagine. Who knew that they would pour oil on her head? He felt uneasy and apologized to her. He didn't know what happened to her. She doesn't have to talk about it anymore. She smiled and said that since she acted like an idiot, she was released early. It was easy, although it didn't help her much. He still felt uneasy about pestering her with questions, and she lightly nudged him with her foot, telling him to relax. If he feels sorry for her, she will kill him. He jerked his hand, telling her to take her foot away, and she called him an idiot. He asked her about the A mark, right? It seems he doesn't know anything, so she will explain everything to him. After the entrance ceremony at the correctional center, the guys and girls take a shower, eat, and are given rationed clothes. In case of escape, they are put on a leash with a built-in GPS. Right now, Minsu is putting on a prison uniform and thought that the clothes are baggy and that thing on his neck is in the way. The warden ordered them to follow him and not turn anywhere and led them to their cells. After everyone was assigned, they were taken to specially prepared cells. Juvenile offenders are classified depending on the crime, and the cell assigned to them depends on the class. For example, E is simple assault, D is illegal substances, C is theft and fraud. Seiman was in B, which is for special robberies, and Minsu was placed in A because it only holds criminals who committed murder-related crimes, like Minsu, who had committed murder. He entered the cell, and the guys sitting there looked him up and down. Their leader, Kasejun, was immediately visible among them. There was silence, and the MC immediately realized that this was a game of nerves and he couldn't lose. Baisoku called him an ignorant idiot and flexed his fists, asking if he didn't know that he should introduce himself first. Where was he from, and what had he done to be here? Minsu mentally noted, after the game of nerves comes the collection of information about weaknesses. He told them that he was from the Penguin Orphanage and went to Songrak High School. They all burst out laughing and noted that the orphanage graduate was among the colony's elite, apparently born after the 2000s. They knew someone from that school. A guy named Chu Chung-su studied there. Seijin ordered them all to shut up and asked why he was here. If he was in cell A, he must have done something really bad. MC immediately realized he was the cell leader and told them he had committed murder. Their faces grew surprised and they started whispering. Wang Hyuk noted that a murderer had finally arrived here, and Li Chen-hee asked if he was lying. Soku smiled nervously and told him that they would have found out anyway. He had no reason to lie. Minsu was even slightly surprised. Were there really no murderers here besides him? He thought he was in with similar guys, but it seemed murder was the worst thing here. Could even the severity of the crime really be a force to be reckoned with? Chang-hee turned to Sejun and asked Poppy what he was going to do now. It looked like his youngest wouldn't be able to get out. The MC was confused, thinking he was the leader, but it turned out he was the youngest. But it turned out Chang-hee wasn't talking to Sejun, but to the one he was sitting on, Moon Hyunjin, nicknamed Poppy. Minsu was surprised, so that wasn't a chair? He was the youngest here. Sejun stood up, saying he felt uncomfortable, and Hyunjin apologized to him, for which Chang-hee immediately hit him and said he wasn't allowed to speak like a human. The poor boy whined like a dog, after which the guy started beating him and asked. He thought he'd shed the label of the youngest, but he's the youngest again, and that makes him angry, right? He replied that that wasn't the case at all, causing the guy to get angry and exclaim that he was speaking like a human again. Looking at them, the MC realized everything is exactly the same. What's outside, what's inside. If you're weak, you're bullied. He'd rather be treated like a murderer than be bullied for being weak. At 7 p.m., it's time for repentance, and kids who end up in the colony have to write 10 pages of repentance every day. Minsu was racking his brain over what to write. He didn't even kill, so what should he say? Suddenly, a wad of paper landed on his desk. Hyuk and Soku were playing baseball, and Hyuk exclaimed that it was a violation. Sogu told him that it was actually a save, and he reminded him that he used to play on the baseball team. Soku exclaimed that he ended up in the colony because he beat up a younger comrade, so he didn't dare open his mouth here. The MC asked, "Aren't they going to write a repentance?" Hyuk hit the ball and asked, "Why write it at all? Poppy will write everything for them anyway." A paper ball flew at Hyunjin's head, who was currently working on the letters of repentance, and Soku told Minsu to give this work to Poppy too. Hyunjin stood up for some reason, and the guy asked, "What's wrong? Why hasn't he written the letters of repentance?" He grabbed his groin and whined, and the guys told him to speak so they could understand. He quietly uttered only one word, "toilet." And Auntie, annoyed, called him an idiot. Who gave him permission to speak like a human? Hyunjin whined again, and they allowed him to go to the toilet. And MC, observing their attitude towards him, realized that there are no human rights here. There are only wardens here who tame the cattle. Therefore, in places where there are no wardens, a struggle for survival among animals unfolds. No one will protect you, and if you are weak, you will be attacked. Because Hyunjin was peeing standing up, Soku roughly kicked him and cursed him, exclaiming, "Does he dare stand on 2 legs? He should act like a dog." Hyunjin burst into tears and whined, and they told him to comply if he understood everything. It's so funny that he wants to see it quickly. Poor Hyunjin was forced to become an obedient puppy and go to the toilet with his leg raised. To survive, you need to become stronger, or pretend to be strong. If you can't do that, then you will end up being a strong person's pet, just like Poppy. 8 p.m. is shower time. You are given only 3 minutes for bathing. Only water and 1 shared soap are used. Minsu looked puzzledly at the soap in his hand. It was covered in hair, and he thought, 50 people wash with this, so you can catch some kind of infection. Roll call begins at 9 o'clock. A guard entered their cell. They all counted off in order, and when it was Hyunjin's turn, he barked loudly, causing Soku to almost burst out laughing. The guard slowly approached Hyunjin, swung his arm, and then hit him on the head. Poor Hyunjin whined as he endured the blows, and when the guard finally finished, he looked up at him with a pitiful, tear-filled gaze. After the prisoner's bedtime check, it was lights out. The lights were turned off, and everyone went to bed. MC was lying next to Poppy, quietly crying and calling for his mother, which kept him from falling asleep. Then Soku asked, Who's crying like a human being? Hyunjin shuddered, immediately covering his mouth with his hand and whining, and Minsu closed his eyes and tried to sleep. That's how his first night in the penal colony passed. At 5:30 a.m., cleaning and morning roll call begin. Mornings in the columns start a little early, and at 6 o'clock breakfast is served in each cell. The portions are quite small. They laid the food out on the table, and the MC asked why they didn't eat in the dining room. To which Hyuk replied, during the day, training takes place outdoors, so everyone eats like that. Minsu was already glad that they at least got cutlery, and then he wondered where Poppy had gone. Why isn't he eating? Their gaze fell on the table and they said, there he is, below. Only now did the MC notice that Poppy was their table, and he was simply shocked that they made a table out of a person. Hyunjin flinched slightly. One of the guys cursed, saying that his soup had spilled. He can't stand straight, Hyunjin barked, afraid of punishment, and Minsu said that he needed to be fed too. The guys smiled and asked why he was so worried about him. They were friends, so they really valued Poppy. Where else can you find friends who personally cook your food? The MC was slightly surprised, and they demonstrated. One of them collected all the remaining food in one bowl, mixed it thoroughly, and threw it on the floor, saying that the dog food was ready. Now Poppy could eat. Minsu was speechless, and one of the guys said that this was good because there would be no waste. Poppy was probably drooling right now. Hyunjin stared at the plate of food in fascination. The guys asked why he wasn't eating, and without thinking twice, he reached for the plate, but suddenly the MC threw the countertop off his back and told him not to eat it. The guys were outraged that he scattered all the food, and he asked if he really was a dog. His name was Moon Hyunjin. Sejin discontentedly called him a murderer and said that this place has its own hierarchy and rules. If he came late, then he should follow these rules. If he's unhappy with something, he can become the boss by fighting. But according to the hierarchy, he needs to defeat Poppy first. If he fails, he'll become the new Poppy. Minsu sighed heavily, cursing this game of pecking order, and called them stupid kids, which made Hyunjin look strange. He told them to stop it already. Those who ended up in prison because of their mistakes can't get rid of their hooligan tendencies. Suddenly, Hyunjin pounced on him and hit him on the head, which the boys were very happy about and started cheering for him and laughing. They told the killer to defend himself, or he'll become Poppy. It was all so unexpected that Minsu didn't even have time to react. He cursed silently and thought, he knows that if he loses here, he'll be dragged through the mud. But how can he fight back when he's being hit in tears? Poor Hyunjin wanted to get rid of the Poppy stigma so much that with every hit he kept apologizing to him and cried even harder. Time passed, and Yusong came to the orphanage to talk to the director. She asked with a smile, was he enrolling tomorrow? Did he bring everything he needed? He looked at the toy in his hands and told her that he took everything because it was an important treasure for his brother. She noted that they were both the most problematic children in their orphanage, especially him. He beat up the neighboring children as if he were catching rats. Yusong laughed and asked, is that really how he was? The woman asked, doesn't he remember that the children were so afraid of him that they didn't even go near the orphanage? Yusong said that she was very much mistaken about that. Right now, Hyunjin continued to beat Minsu, apologizing to him, but he didn't want to be Poppy anymore. Watching him press himself to the floor and cover his head with his hands, the guys laughed, and Hyuk said that he was scared when he found out that he was a murderer, and it turns out that he's just a loser. That's why his parents abandoned him. Now, he's the new Poppy. Suddenly, the MC jumped up and punched him in the face with all his might, which surprised Hyunjin and everyone else, and couldn't even move as he dealt one blow after another. After his blows, Hyuk lay down and Minsu caught his breath, declaring that from now on he would turn them all into Poppy. The headmistress of the orphanage was right that Yusong fought with other children, but they weren't afraid of him at all, but of his younger brother, Minsu. Of course, he fought better, but they were afraid of Minsu because he was crazy. If he goes crazy, no one will be able to stop him. Changyi was next. The MC hit him in the face with all his might and said that they themselves would be Poppy now. He would make them like that. Suddenly Soku kicked him in the back and exclaimed that he was talking nonsense. He would make Poppy out of them? Is he crazy? What can he even do alone? This is Cell A, so he shouldn't show off too much. There are a lot of people here who were frostbitten on the outside. Did he take them for fools? They pitied him because he was an orphan, abandoned by his mother. Minsu immediately stuck a toilet brush in his mouth and told him to shut up. How dare he mention his mother? And then he hit him so hard that he broke the toilet brush in half, and the guys pounced on him, screaming that they would kill him. And the MC asked something that made them immediately freeze. They would kill him? Have they ever killed people themselves? He looked very furious, and the broken sharp part of the toilet brush made him very dangerous. Meanwhile, Yusong's adoptive father kept remembering the new president, Kon Monsu, and his words. This is a new era of juvenile protection law. If they disobey, then they must be punished. He angrily hit the ball with a stick and asked, do we need to punish? And why? Let him punish himself. Some idiot appeared out of nowhere and took his place. He needed to destroy this idiot. His subordinates applauded, praising him for a good hit and an excellent swing, and he, deciding not to think about this idiot anymore, turned to his adopted son and asked, what is he doing? Yusong fell to his knees in front of him and bowed his head, saying, of course, it is still early, but he would like to be drafted into the army. If his issue with the army is resolved quickly, He thinks it will benefit him in politics. The man noticed. He says he thinks about his father, but he even cancelled his application to medical school. And where was he hanging around all night? He came behind him and prepared a club, ordering him to speak directly. He swung and exclaimed that he knew he was doing this because of his little brother, and then hit the club with all his might. Thank God, not at him, but at the ball. After that, he said, even if he were drafted into the army right now, there is no guarantee that he will become a guard in the colony. He knows this. He answered him that he is right. That is why he is asking him for help. He is certainly capable of this. The man asked, his little brother made a mess and now he wants him to clean it up? Yusong called out to him excitedly and then looked down in disappointment, already thinking that he would not help him. But his father said, a favor for a favor. Will he be able to make his father president? He will help him, but he must make him president. Meanwhile, Minsu continued to threaten the guys, but suddenly Soku grabbed him and told the guys to attack him faster. Because of the toilet brush in his mouth, it was not very clear, but they understood him perfectly. Hyuk hit Minsu on the head. Because of this, his body immediately went limp, as if he lost consciousness, and Soku worriedly asked, he didn't kill him, did he? He confusedly answered him that this can't be. He himself told him to hit him. Soku was indignant. People can't be killed. And suddenly the MC sharply raised his head, hitting him on the chin with the top of his head, and then hit Hyuk between the legs, which caused him to howl pitifully. While they both suffered from pain, Minsu freed himself and Sejun approached him, asking, is his madness button his mother, or the fact that he was abandoned? Tears were almost welling up in his eyes. Does his mother know that the child she abandoned became a murderer? The MC immediately became enraged. He immediately brought the sharp end of a stick to his face and told him to apologize for those words if he didn't want to lose an eye. Sejun asked what he needed to apologize for, because his mother abandoned him, or for committing murder? He suggested that he leave it there, and then raised his hand and said that it wasn't him who did it. Minsu didn't understand what he was talking about. Then Sejun turned to the wall and put his hands behind his head, saying, that guy is the main culprit of the unrest. The MC didn't understand at all to whom he was saying this, and when he turned around, he saw 3 guards in front of him who had already pounced on him with batons, shouting all sorts of curses. With a blow to the head, they knocked him down on his head, and the rest quickly stood against the wall while they beat him. The guards were simply furious. They exclaimed that he was simply crazy. He had just arrived, and he was already causing a disturbance. Sejun said he took the weapon himself and attacked people in the room, resulting in injuries. He will provide more details in his statement. The guard asked if they were just sitting quietly, and he was the only one who started a riot. Sejun and the others confirmed this, as did Hyunjin, although it was difficult for him. The guards decided to teach Minsu a lesson and dragged him by the hair to a solitary confinement cell, having first tied his hands and feet, so that he would realize all his mistakes. Realizing the situation he found himself in, he cursed quietly. He was sentenced to 15 days of solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is also known as a punishment room. If you cause a disturbance in your cell, you will be isolated for a while, and the days spent here will not be counted as days of imprisonment. It was just a waste of time that his prison sentence was extended. MC gritted his teeth in irritation and tried to move, but then gave up and simply lay down, thinking, it's comfortable to be alone. He probably should have gotten here from the very beginning of the chaos, but it's not that simple. The guard looked into the cell and ordered him to sit up straight. For lying down, he was getting another day of solitary confinement. He knelt down, and the guard ordered him to bend his back and make a normal expression, and he cursed quietly and thought that there was no comfort at all in this colony. In the punishment room, you have to remain kneeling until you fall asleep, and they monitor this for the entire 24 hours. Even the movement of your arms and legs is restricted, but it's good that they untie him so he can go to the toilet. However, there was no toilet paper here. Because he sat for so long, the guard told him to stop thinking about all this nonsense and finish quickly, and he replied that there was no paper, so he couldn't finish. The guard said it was over there, in the back. Turning around, he saw a faucet, and when the guard told him to just wash himself with water, he shuddered. He looked at his hand and opened his mouth in shock. He never imagined he would ever have to do this. Food was brought soon, but this time his hands weren't untied, and he had to eat from the floor. Greedily swallowing the food, he vowed to kill them all when he returned. 7 p.m., time for repentance. Even in solitary confinement, you have to write this. Now he has to write twice as much, including the mistakes that landed him in solitary confinement. In his repentance, he even drew portraits of his cellmates, saying they did wrong. He signed Hyuk as a tall, huge glutton with wrinkles on his forehead, Chang-hee as skinny and mean, Soku as big and dumb, and Poppy just Poppy, who has surprisingly strong fists. Minsu was puzzled. It was clear that they were all problematic guys, but the biggest problem was him, Sejun. He definitely needed to get rid of this guy. Night fell. He finally fell asleep, and the very day of the fire came to his mind. He and his brother went outside, but they watched the fire as if they had started it themselves. He suddenly woke up, tears appeared in his eyes, and he sat on his knees, cursing loudly. Maybe because he was in this situation, he had bad memories in his dreams. It seemed to him that if he fell asleep, he would have the same dream. And in the end, he spent the whole night with his eyes open, sitting against the wall. 16 days passed like this, He was finally released from solitary confinement and returned to the company of those guys. They all stared at him puzzled, as if trying to understand what he was thinking, and he cursed irritably and asked what they wanted. They smiled and apologized, but apparently they'd gone too far. They'd decided that Poppy wouldn't be Poppy anymore. He's right, right? Hyunjin barked out of habit, then confirmed it in human words, and Chang-hee suggested they all live together peacefully. MC was surprised that everything had been resolved so easily, and said he'd accept their apologies, but he was more concerned about Seijin. Suddenly, he felt someone hit him on the head with a heel. It was Seijin. He called him a mama's boy and asked if he was looking for him. Because of that blow, he fell. The guys immediately grabbed his arms and stuffed a rag in his mouth, then dragged him to the toilet. Chang-ji laughed, saying that these were the underwear he had been wearing for a whole week. Seijin said that he was glad that he looked for him first, but there was someone who was waiting for him more impatiently than he was. Hyuk took off his pants and said that the place where he hit hurt a lot. It was so hard for him to endure all this time. He approached the toilet, and when Minsu saw what he took out of his pants, he screamed and started twitching, trying to break free from their hands. Just when Hyuk was about to get down to business, a guard entered the cell and ordered them to stop. Sejun said he must be new here. He should ignore it. They had permission to do this. The guys let Minsu go, he spat out his underwear, and the warden asked who gave them permission, and promised to punish them later, after which he extended his hand to Minsu. When he looked up at his face, he was very surprised and extended his hand in return. It was his brother. He whispered that they would soon go home, and then smiled. MC was very confused. He didn't even expect to see him here. Some time ago, Yusung's adoptive father sang war songs with the general at karaoke. He put his heart and soul into the song, and the general was so touched that he burst into tears and applauded him, saying that he was a true patriotic soldier. When the song ended, he sat down, and the man wiped away his tears, saying that, as expected, the general's song contained the aspirations of the spirit of defenders of the fatherland. He asked in response, "Which general? How much time has passed since then?" The soldier remarked that, even though he was a politician now, he would always remain a general at heart. Hyunjin sat hunched between them, squeezed in from both sides and used more as an armrest. The soldier said, he certainly understands that he's a patriot, but he's concerned about the fact that he wants to ignore all the procedures and force his son into a soldier. He smiled and asked, "It seems he's not getting older, but rather accumulating worries. Other politicians don't want to send their children to the army and manipulate documents, trying their best to foist non-existent illnesses on them. But this foolish child should be sent to the army as soon as possible. Then at least there will be fewer problems." The soldier agreed with him and shouted into the microphone that he would begin serving that very day. The other soldiers standing outside the karaoke bar were surprised why a 4-star general and a deputy had shown up in their unit. Had they really just come to sing karaoke? They immediately noticed his good vocal skills, and while the general was singing another song, the man told his son that the chief of staff said he could enlist right away. Is he ready? He confirmed it and declared that he would start serving right away. He had prepared everything to save his younger brother. While Minsu was in court, he met juvenile offenders and received information about the installation inside. He confirmed that the correctional center is hell, and when he came here, he decided that he had to get him out of this hell at least a day earlier. Now he is here, next to his brother. If he does as he said, he will be able to get out of here. The plan is simply perfect. If all goes well, he will easily get him out of here. But at that very moment, when he extended a helping hand to his brother, he remembered something. This little idiot does not listen to him at all. The MC ignored his hand and pounced on Hyuk from behind him, punching him in the jaw with all his might, exclaiming, "Did he just try to pee on him?" He was furious and ready to beat everyone up right then. So Yusung's perfect plan went awry from the start. After that, they pinned Yusung against the wall and started discussing him with puzzled expressions. Hyuk said, "He looks too young somehow. Could he really be his brother? Anyway, this room has its own rules. He's been here a while, so he doesn't know, but each room has its own discipline. Or maybe the older brother wants to follow this room's discipline too?" Yusung asked. "Is fighting their discipline? Apparently, he'll have to follow that." The guys laughed at him, saying there was no turning back, and he just looked at them with a condescending smirk. At this time, Minsu pounced on Seijin in a rage, cursing loudly, and he easily dodged his blow, calling him a psycho. He thinks that if he screams like a savage, he will be able to hit him? He fell, and Seijin noticed that he couldn't even keep his balance. He was only screaming. He turned a frowning glance at his brother and thought, has that warden already dealt with everyone by now? The guys were lying at Yusung's feet and begged him for forgiveness, and he said that he was only following discipline. While Seijin was looking at him, Minsu jumped and kicked him and exclaimed, "Why is he looking away?" He grinned widely, glad that he was able to hit him, and called him an idiot. "Why is he distracted during the fight?" Seijin got up and said that he tried to turn a blind eye and treat him nicely. But now, he is Poppy. The MC pounced on him in a rage, saying that he would be Poppy. Seijin quickly twisted him and hit him in the head, causing him to lose his bearings. Then he punched him in the stomach, and he thought, is this idiot really that strong? Seijin asked if he knew why he became Poppy. He swung his leg and exclaimed that he wasn't interested, and Seijin blocked his punch, saying that Poppy was originally the head of this room, but because he showed off like he did, he became like this. He punched him in the face, and Minsu knew he couldn't back down, so he grabbed the guy by the clothes and exclaimed that he was the one who showed off the most in this room. He couldn't lose like this, so he gathered his strength, but Seijun got ahead of him and punched him in the face with all his might, causing him to immediately fall over and couldn't move. He cursed in his mind. He lost to the idiot who slandered his mother, and he did it unilaterally, without even throwing a punch. He saw his brother's shoes in front of his eyes. Every time he got hit, that idiot was next to him. Yusong asked, "Is he still alive, right?" MC didn't answer him. He only thought about how bad everything was, and then closed his eyes. His brother sighed heavily, threw him over his shoulders, and was even surprised that he was so light, and asked, "Hasn't he eaten anything at all?" He went to the exit, and Seijun asked where he was taking him. He should think about his behavior again. He told him that he would take him to solitary confinement. He should be punished for his fuss. Seijun asked, "Does that mean he won't fight with him?" And then Yusong remembered something and said, "Please, don't fight." That's what his sister asked him to tell him. After these words, he left, leaving the guy confused. When Minsu woke up, he was already in solitary confinement. He quickly looked around and wondered how long he had been unconscious. He swore to rip out all of that idiot's hair, then decided to go to the toilet, but the whole time he had a strange feeling, like he had forgotten something important. After finishing his business, he turned on the faucet, but no water came out, and he thought, is the plumbing broken? In that case, he won't be able to wash his hand to wipe it all off. Yusong warned him that there was toilet paper there. He didn't need to wipe it with his bare hands. The plumbing was being repaired, so there would be water only in the evening. MC thanked him, tore off a piece of paper, and wondered, why weren't his hands tied in solitary confinement? And then he remembered what he had forgotten. He immediately ran to the door and slammed his fist on it with all his might, calling his brother a psycho. Is he completely crazy? What is he doing here? Yusong asked, did he wipe his butt? His brother exclaimed irritably that he had wiped everything there and continued to beat the door with his fists, asking with tears in his eyes, does he think he's a hero? Who did he come here to save? If he found a good adoptive father, he should have lived happily. Who asked to save him? Let him take off this uniform right now and get out of here. He was supposed to enter medical university. Let him just leave a murderer like him. Does he want his life to be ruined because of him? Minsu was so upset. He cried harder and slowly slid down the door to the floor, quietly saying that even if he were here, he would be terribly ashamed. Yusong said that he was not that crazy. However, who called him a murderer? He believed him. He knew that Minsu did not kill a person because he was his older brother. He remained silent and he asked, is he crying? He answered that he was not crying and he asked, did he wipe his butt? The MC exclaimed irritably that he had already told him that he had done everything. Then he asked if he would listen to him. Would he get out of here? He answered that if he didn't cause a fuss like this morning, then that was quite possible, and he clarified, so he had to obediently follow what he said, then he would listen to him, but he would fulfill one of his requests. He wanted to fight that long-haired guy again. Yusong said that he would lose anyway. Why should he fight him? He replied that it was because he said bad things about their mother. Even if he could tolerate everything else, he couldn't stand it when someone said something about his mother. Yusong couldn't tolerate that either. So he firmly told him to fight, and he would tell him a way to defeat him. And if he lost again to the one who said bad things about their mother, he would kill him with his own hands. There were 15 days left until the end of solitary confinement. It was impossible to increase physical strength in such a short period, so from now on he would study a method to defeat Seijun. When Minsu got out of solitary confinement, he asked his brother if this was really the way to defeat that idiot. He replied that according to his analysis, he would win. But if he lost, he would kill him with his own hands. He remembered everything well, right? The MC confirmed this and told him to believe in him, then went into the cell and the guys gave him dirty looks, saying, it must have been nice for him to sit in solitary confinement and skip practice. Seoku said that it really irritated him. Maybe they will beat him up and grind him into dust. The MC smirked and asked, didn't he say that he would make Poppy out of them? But after thinking about it, he decided otherwise. He did something that immediately made their faces become surprised, and they exclaimed, why did he suddenly become Poppy? Minsu lay on his back in a submissive pose and began to act like a dog, and then said, it seems it will be faster if he becomes Poppy. After that, he began to humbly fulfill Poppy's duties. He must be patient to win. He must withstand the enemy's advance. He must wait for the opportunity to arise. If he endures and waits, the opportunity will come to him. This is his divine move, but he simply couldn't stand the way these guys were drawing on his back and playing. Gritting his teeth, he suddenly jumped up and exclaimed that he couldn't stand it anymore, and the guys jumped back in surprise and fear. Chanji exclaimed in rage. Had he now decided that he didn't want to be Poppy? They were in the middle of a game, and he dared to rebel? Or maybe they should prioritize again. Seijun glanced at them. The MC noticed this and thought that he needed to be patient. Yusong told him to just be patient for 5 days, and he would take responsibility for the lessons in their room. During the lesson, Everything happens at the discretion of the supervisor. Just let him not fight. In 5 days, he will prepare everything properly for him. Minsu warmed up and cursed, suggesting that they play another game. The guys thought he wanted to fight, but he simply arched back into a bridge and suggested that they draw on his chest. Gritting his teeth, the MC began to endure. He only had to wait 5 days. The second day arrived, and he scrubbed the floor with all his might, his face and all his limbs, as if he were a robot vacuum cleaner, when he suddenly bumped into another poppy, with Hyuk sitting on its back and meowing. Minsu asked what he was doing, and he replied that he was imitating a cat at work, a vacuum cleaner. The third day was writing a letter of repentance. The MC put all his effort into writing and told Hyunjin to write properly. What the heck is sorry for being born into this world? The fourth day arrived, and the two of them were going to the bathroom like dogs, and Hyunjin asked if it wasn't fun being poppy together. Minsu responded with a simple growl, and then it was time for breakfast. The guys watched Minsu in surprise, and poor Hyunjin continued to act as a table. In contrast, the MC ate the leftovers with pleasure, saying that every bite melted in his mouth. It tasted wonderful. He asked for more and thought that tomorrow would be the 5th day, and this suffering would finally end. After such a heavy lunch, Minsu vomited, and while this was happening, Hyunjin was next to him, patting him on the back, worriedly asking if he ate too much. He could have left it. Wiping away his drool, the MC looked up at him with a tired look, and he smiled and handed him a chocolate bar, saying that he threw it all up, so it would be hard on an empty stomach. It was a secret from the others because he secretly bought it with his own money. Minsu was surprised by his generosity and kindness, and Hyunjin suggested that he continue to be a diligent poppy, but he had already refused this. It was too much. After that, they went out into the yard. The guys threw garbage can lids like frisbees for them to catch with their teeth. The MC diligently played the role of a dog, but Hyunjin was bad at it, for which everyone scolded him. On his last breath, already crying from exhaustion, Hyunjin ran after the frisbee, and Hyuk exclaimed, "What is he doing? Does he think he's going to catch it like that?" Chanji noted that the idiot was nauseous even during training. He still can't get used to it. Soku noted that this is why they play with him like this. He laughed and told the others to watch the idiot run, but all his joy immediately evaporated when he saw the guys from the kitchen ahead of him. Hyunjin ran straight into the cooks, which made them really angry and loomed over him, asking who he was and what cell he was from. What, is he declaring war on them? Poor Hyunjin was so afraid that he shyly offered to play frisbee together, while Sejin lay on the ground and thought, how did that idiot know his sister? Did she really send him here? The cooks came up to him and called him rudely, then threw Hyunjin on the ground and asked, is this dog from his house? Can't he train his dog properly? That idiot attacked them first. This is a declaration of war on the cooks, isn't it? Let them beg for mercy, then they won't touch them. The guys got angry. Chang-hee rolled up his sleeves, getting ready for a fight, and Hyuk and Soku exclaimed, are they so nervous because of some kind of confrontation? What do they want? Are they afraid that something will break? Sejun told them not to get involved in this, to let them not make a big deal out of it, and to let them beat up Poppy. And that's it? The cook asked with a smirk. So they can just beat him up, and that's it? He immediately hit poor Hyunjin on the head and exclaimed, how dare he order him around? Is this how he should be beaten? Hyunjin begged him for mercy. Even the boys were uneasy at the sight, but they chose not to interfere, as touching the kitchen boys would only lead to trouble. Minsu was pained to watch, and he asked if the guards would stop them. Chang-hee told him that the guards didn't pay attention to minor fights, so they handled them themselves. Poor Hyunjin continued to apologize and ask for help. The MC's face darkened, and he remembered the boy handing him a chocolate bar. He glanced at the wrapper in his hands, then remembered his brother's words. Classes would start right after lunch, and he absolutely had to wait for them. So Minsu simply turned away and walked away, and the cook laughed, exclaiming that he was having such a good time taking out his anger on him. They were renting him for a few days, dragging him around and beating him up. Suddenly a frisbee flew into his face, causing him to fall down immediately. The guys turned to Minsu in shock. Even Sejin stood up. The MC said that he knows they are a bunch of idiots who came here because they bullied people. That's why they do everything they did outside. Here they are treated like pigs. They have lost their pride, their dignity is trampled, and their spirit is broken. He walked up to Hyunjin, helped him up and asked, but even so, when their dog is beaten by other dogs, don't they feel ashamed? Sejin walked up to him and glared at him with irritation, telling him not to intervene. One of the chefs grabbed his shoulder and asked, is this really a war? He will tell the head chef about this. Is he sure he won't regret it? Sejin elbowed him in the face and asked, do they want a war? They will have a war, but first he needs to deal with the riot. Minsu knew a fight was brewing right now, so he apologized to his brother in his mind. It was a well-thought-out plan, but he'd broken his promise again. The other prisoners had come to the noise and crowded around them, discussing the upcoming fight between Sejun and the killer. MC knew he couldn't avoid this fight, but he would definitely keep his other promise. Sejun pulled his hair back and noticed that it had gotten quiet, and he'd started fighting again because he wanted to get punched in the face again. Minsu responded by flexing his fists and offering him a bet. Whoever won this fight would be the head of the cell. MC vowed to win this time. Meanwhile, Yusong was waiting for him and the others in the classroom. Children in the re-education facility are minors, so they should receive basic education here. The guards have full control during class. That means, no matter what happens, it all depends on Yusong. The first stage of the plan is to make Minsu the cell leader. Today, he will defeat Seijun here and become the leader. And for Minsu to defeat him, he has prepared the perfect environment. The stage is ready, meaning it's time for the actors to appear. But the time has already passed, and they still haven't arrived. Then Yusong heard a noise outside, looked out the window, and saw the guys huddled in a circle, with his younger brother and Seijun inside. The MC lunged, his opponent easily dodged, and the prisoners began calling him a weakling and wondering how he could even kill a human being. Yusong chuckled. He expected this to happen, but he was still so angry, really angry, and shouted his brother's name out the window and called him an idiot. But his scream was drowned out by the noise of the crowd. Some time ago, while he was in solitary confinement, he showed him different techniques. He made the first step a hook, then a punch to the liver, the third step an uppercut, the fourth a mid-kick, the fifth a low kick, the sixth a front kick, the seventh a reverse spinning kick, the eighth a roundhouse kick, and finally a straight punch. After that, he asked his brother if he even remembered all of this. He hadn't seen this for a long time. He asked in shock in response. He learned these techniques a little as a child. How can he remember everything? He didn't even train as hard as him. Will he be able to win with just a few moves? Seijun is very strong, Yusong remarked. For someone who hasn't trained, he hits well. Minsu was indignant and asked if he really thought so. He replied that his actions look impressive, but in reality they have no substance. His movements are disjointed, so his punches are weak. That is, he doesn't have a normal combination. In the end, he's just a guy who fights well, but he can never beat someone who is trained. MC noted that he was right, and he lost to someone like him. He lost to him without ever laying a fist on him. Even if he remembers what he showed, will he be able to use it? Yusong replied that this is exactly why he wants to make them fight in the room where he will teach the lesson. If the opponent constantly dodges attacks, then he needs to corner him so that he can't dodge. There will be many corners in the classroom where it is possible to corner him, and if he uses the terrain well, then his combination will definitely work on him. But now the stage is different. There were no corners where he could be cornered. Minsu took another hit from Seijun, and the other guys were starting to get annoyed why the killer couldn't fight properly. The MC wiped the blood from his nose and thought, "It's bad, there are no walls here." Yusong quickly went down to the first floor, ran into the courtyard, and yelled that this idiot really never listens to him. There are too many people, so you can't really see what's going on. Plan or not, first he needs to stop this fight. He just started yelling at them to stop, but suddenly popcorn flew into his face, and the supervisor asked what he was doing. Did he really want to stop his fun? Yusong was very surprised. He immediately stood at attention and saluted him, saying he was the new supervisor. The kids were fighting, so he was trying to stop them. The supervisor asked why they needed to be stopped, which confused the guy, and he asked if he liked the animal kingdom. He didn't understand what he was talking about at all, and he asked, "Do you remember that episode on the TV program where a rat appears in an alien environment? But a hungry snake is trying to eat this rat. So what did the crew filming it do? They didn't do anything because snakes catch and eat rats. It's the laws of nature. In other words, they shouldn't interfere with this fight. It's all according to the laws of nature." Besides, he himself was very interested in watching this fight. Seeing his wide smile, Yusong immediately realized that this man was out of his mind. They began to watch this interesting spectacle together. The MC meanwhile decided to get closer to his opponent, make the first move, but he easily dodged and hit him in the face, asking what he was doing. Minsu cursed in his mind. If the combination worked, this guy would be finished. He needed to hit him at least once. He lunged forward again and exclaimed that this was the second strike. And Seijun hit him on the head and asked, "Is this math time? Why is he always counting his punches? Should I teach him?" MC tried to strike again and exclaimed that this was the third strike, and Seijun deftly dodged and said, "That's right. After the second comes the third, and then the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh." Yusong was very worried about his brother. He couldn't reach his opponent. He had no strategy. Besides, his stamina had already run out, and there wasn't even a wall to finish the combo. In his position, he could do practically nothing. At that very moment, Seijun kicked Minsu and was thrown back into the guys, and they exclaimed in irritation, "Why here of all places? Can't he aim properly?" Sighing heavily, Yusong closed his eyes and thought that everything was futile. He just needed to give up. There was no way. Now he needed a new plan. The MC leaned on those guys, unable to stand on his feet, and thought, if this continues, the result will be the same as last time. He will still lose. It is better for him to give up so that he gets hit less. But suddenly, someone pushed him forward and asked how long he was going to rest. He turned to them in confusion, and the guys irritably told him to fight. If he chickened out and gave up, then he was done for. He wants them to beat him up. Why is he even looking at them? Seijun called him a mama's boy again and asked what he was doing there. Is he looking for his mother? Wiping away the blood, Minsu grinned, and the guy asked why he was laughing. He apologized to him and answered with a smile that he just figured out how to use a combination on him. The prisoners had already started swearing, saying that walk time was over. Are they lovers or something? Are they having a fight or a stare battle? Seijin yawned widely and suggested that the mama's boy finish since the walk time was over. Minsu stretched and agreed with him, as he was already bored too. He found a way to use a combination, but how could he lure him? While he was in solitary confinement, he constantly thought that it would be impossible to back him into a corner so easily. Is there a way? Yusong said that after he himself went into the corner, he would only have to lure his opponent, and MC said that even so, he might not approach, then the whole operation would be useless. Yusong said that in that case, there was nothing to be done. Then he would tell him a magic word that would definitely attract him. Hearing this, Minsu immediately jumped up from his seat and exclaimed, "Is such a thing even possible?" He should have told him this from the very beginning. Yusong adjusted his glasses and seriously said that after hearing these words, he would definitely lose his composure. And right then, the MC took his brother's advice and asked with a smirk, "Is Kasemin a hottie?" Seijun immediately pounced on him in a rage and punched him in the face, asking where he heard that name from. The magic word really worked. Seijun got really furious and shouted, "How does he know his sister?" Minsu asked. Was he the one calling him a mama's boy? A moment before the punch, he blocked his fist and now grabbed his hair and pulled it, exclaiming that he was chasing his sister himself. He turned him around to face the crowd and punched him in the face, saying that he was too dependent on her. Just let him not cry and call for her. Seijun grinned nervously and asked what this fight had to do with the fact that he knew his sister. He decided to step back before his short arms could reach him, but there were prisoners there, which is why everything behind him was now blocked. He didn't expect it. And then the MC struck first and then the second, and he, realizing that there was nowhere to dodge, decided to attack first. But when he swung, his elbow hit the chest of one of the prisoners, and Minsu took advantage of this to strike again, as his brother taught him. The blow landed right in the stomach. Seijun spat and realized that there was no room behind him, and his movements weren't working. A punch immediately landed in his face. Seijun realized that he had no time to think, and Yuseong, meanwhile, was surprised. He told him to use the tables and walls in the classroom, and here he was using the crowd as a wall. He pressed Seijun against the crowd again, continued to strike him, and he, blocking it, thought that he needed to get out of here. He couldn't dodge or attack here. He decided to move forward and try to get out of here. But then the MC hit him under the knee and then in the face. With one side blocked, Seijun rushed to the other, and Minsu kicked him in the side. Seijun didn't know how to get out, and for some reason this kid seemed so big to him now. The MC continued to punch him. His eyes were already swollen, and he thought that he shouldn't just let himself be beaten. He needed to swing his fists. He did it, but so clumsily, and Minsu struck back, asking, does he think he'll hit if he just swings his fists? He punched him in the face again and exclaimed, who asked him to slander someone else's mother? He remembered it again, and his anger surged. Calling him an idiot, he began to beat him even more furiously, and the inmates became worried about him. At that moment, he thought that he shouldn't give in anymore. The next attack would definitely work. But just as he was thinking about this, he got punched in the face again, and the MC exclaimed, what does he even know about his mother? He should apologize to him immediately. He struck again, and Seijun couldn't understand how this was possible and why he was losing to him. In the end, his punches caused him to fall on his back, which left the prisoners in shock. Minsu stopped and caught his breath, noting that he wasn't going to apologize until the very end. Now, he's Poppy. The prisoners were very surprised, because Minsu was now the head of the room. Could Seijun really be that weak? Is it really possible to win with a mother's strength? The prisoners finally arrived. They ordered everyone to disperse, and they immediately lined up, clearing the way for the colony's warden. He spread his arms out to the sides and approached Minsu, saying that he didn't know he would win. The animal world is still interesting, after all. The rat defeated the snake. Ever since he arrived, he's been acting like an idiot, and it turns out he likes fights. MC became slightly nervous and squealed like a rat, so as not to anger him, and his brother threw Seijun over his shoulder and asked what he should do with him. The warden simply waved his hand and told him to do whatever he wanted, to take him to solitary confinement. Yusong passed by his younger brother and whispered, who did he take after? He smiled and told him that he took after him. So now begins the second stage of the plan. Yusong met with Seimin in the studio on his day off, and while she was drawing, he told her everything. She asked, so, her brother ended up in solitary confinement? He told her that wasn't the plan, but because things went awry, it happened that way, and he was sorry. She squinted at him and asked him not to move. Because he was constantly moving, the picture was changing. He posed for her like a Greek god with an apple in his hand. He froze and asked when she would finish, as it was a difficult pose. Seimin said, that's right. Maybe he should have tried a different pose. She pointed to the sculpture and asked, how about that one? He immediately refused, because that man was completely naked, and she said it was much better this way, and let him stop complaining. She was already finished. He asked her to let him look at it, and she handed him the paper. Because he was moving constantly, it didn't turn out very well. At this level, it's easy to get a place in art school, right? Seeing her drawing, Yusung was stunned. He could barely contain his anger. How could she draw it so ugly? And why was she even calling it a painting? She told him not to make such a guilty expression. It couldn't be helped if the model was so-so. Or does he look guilty because of her brother? He did wrong himself. That's why he went to solitary confinement. He doesn't need to apologize. Yusong said that now she's the one who needs to apologize to him. She said, anyway, it seems he is in trouble. He asked, does she mean the painting? It really looks terrible. She said that she is talking about his brother, who was sent to the kitchen. He noticed that he hit one of them with a trash can lid, and she told him something. She was one of the cooks in the women's prison, so she interacted with the boy cooks from time to time. They are close to each other, but if you disturb one, they can turn into a crowd and bully his younger brother. Among them, there is one who needs to be especially careful, the head cook, Jang Dubo. Time passed. Minsu came to the dining room and was waiting for his portion. Dubo was serving and asked if he was Minsu. He confirmed it and asked what was wrong, and he said that he needed more food. MC perked up and inquired about the reason. But even when one compartment of the tray was completely full, he did not stop, and this mush of food filled everything. At first, he seems like a kind guy, but he is a little stupid and rude, which is why he is scary. Just because someone complained about the food, he almost beat 2 guards to death. Minsu looked up at the chef with a nervous and confused look, and he said, they say he offended his guys, that's why he gives him so much food. He will make him regret for disturbing the kitchen. But the MC kept a straight face and asked what he was talking about. Had he offended anyone? Dubo awkwardly scratched the back of his head and asked if he wasn't Lee Minsu. He told him that that was really his name, but maybe they have the same name. It's a very common one. Dubo felt uneasy. He apologized to him and told him to eat more. To which he replied that, since he apologized, he forgives him. After that, Dubo turned to his friends and said that it wasn't him. Why were they misleading him? Well, the chefs exclaimed that it really was him. He was the one who threw the trash lid, Lee Minsu, and right now he was running away. Dubo glanced at him again, but he was already running for the exit, laughing at his stupidity, while he angrily told him to stop. Meanwhile, a leaders' summit was taking place in the Blue House. The president was meeting with representatives of all parties. Kan Mansu came out to greet his guests and thanked them for traveling all the way to attend the summit. Under the flashing lights of cameras, 3 representatives from each party approached him, including Yusong's father. The president shook hands with one of the representatives and, smiling, said that his spirit had become clearer, to which he replied that it was all thanks to him. After that, he shook the hand of the next representative and invited him to put aside the hostility between the ruling and opposition parties and offer constructive advice concerning the lives of citizens. The man said that he too hoped for good advice, and now it was Yusong's father's turn. They shook hands and turned to the reporters with smiles so they could take pictures, after which the president said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. They were enemies during the elections. Since they are not competitors now, let him become his subordinate and work harder. He laughed and slapped him on the butt, which made him speechless and froze. He thought, is he really slapping him on the butt right in front of the citizens who came? He clenched his teeth in rage, pounced on this idiot Kan Mansu, and hit him in the face with all his might, exclaiming, how dare he embarrass him. He would have felt better if it was the real Mansu and not a punching bag. As soon as the meeting ended, he went home to let off some steam. After finishing beating Mansu, he straightened his tie and turned to Yusong, asking, his father endures such humiliation, and what is he even thinking? He said that crushing President Kan Mansu is easier than he thinks. He placed various photos on the board and said that his re-education center, which is his political base, needs to be destroyed. His father immediately calmed down and sat down on a chair, noting that he was thinking in the right direction. That's why he sent him there as a guard. So what's the plan? He pointed to the photos and told him that after seeing the correctional facility from the inside, he realized that it was not at all what he told the people about. They used children to force violence against other children, commit various rough acts, and deliberately encourage fights between children and use it as entertainment. It's not a center for troubled children at all, but a living hell. His father clapped his hands in joy and exclaimed that it was simply magnificent. What is the re-education center's weakness? They can take out Mansu with one blow. Yusong adjusted his glasses and said that they should give the photos to the reporters, but his father said that might not be enough. Juvenile delinquents end up being child criminals, right? Victims would want their abusers to suffer pain, so they might even enjoy it. It's a human rights issue. He'll just say things will get better in the future. And that's it. So let him pull out something bigger. Yusong hung his head in disappointment, and when he returned to work, he saw another training session and asked, is this not enough? Is even this environment not enough? The prisoners were currently standing in the crab pose, and if anyone moved, the guards immediately scolded them. The warden sat on a chair nearby and watched them, then thoughtfully looked up and said that it would be nice to have crab soup today, and his subordinate said he would tell the kitchen to prepare everything. The poor MC was already completely exhausted. They had been doing this for so many hours, so he was already at his limit. He swore loudly but saw the prisoner's shoes in front of him and immediately apologized to him, but it turned out to be his brother. He said with a smile, at ease, he will train with him separately. Hearing this, Minsu was very happy, but he did not expect that his brother would make him do something different. Now he was pretending to be a crayfish, and it was much more difficult than being a crab, and Yusong whispered his forgiveness. It would have been suspicious if only he hadn't been practicing. He asked, so he made him do something difficult? Was he completely crazy? Yusong was offended that he was calling him names and offered him to go back to the crab, but he immediately refused. And then his brother decided to explain the second stage of the operation to him. The correctional facility has a system of penalty and incentive points. If he gets 100 points, he will be considered for parole and vice versa. The more penalty points, the longer he needs to stay here. And now he has minus 50 points. He'd been in solitary confinement twice and had been in one major fight, but he'd never received any bonus points. The MC asked him how he could get them, and he called him an insolent brat and said that the only way he could get good points now was to be a kitchen helper. Minsu immediately remembered the big guy and exclaimed that he couldn't go there. He'd die there. Those guys were targeting him. He started acting up and throwing tantrums on the floor, saying he'd stay there, and as soon as another guard walked by, he immediately returned to the crayfish position. The guard wished Yusong a good job, and he said goodbye, but the MC started acting up again. Another guard walked by, and he became obedient again. Afterward, he said he would do anything except the kitchen. Yusong, sighing heavily, promised to find out about something other than the kitchen. Minsu was overjoyed. His brother was the best. Time passed. The cool afternoon sun, the rustling leaves, the birds singing, the curtain fluttering in the wind. Perfect nap time. Since he had to sweat in the morning, he was now feeling sleepy. He would have been happy if this continued, but the constant beeping was really irritating him. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore and jumped up from the table, telling them to let him sleep. Right now, the boys were cleaning the classroom, and Hyunjin was now the cat sitting on the robot vacuum cleaner. The MC exclaimed in anger, "Do they really have to make a noise with their mouths to work?" And he had told them not to make a robot vacuum cleaner anymore. They told him that the efficiency increases when they make a noise with their mouths, and Soka whispered that if it was too noisy, it would switch to sleep mode. Hyunjin smiled and told the cell leader to sit quietly, saying that cleaning was almost finished. He exclaimed that he didn't mean to mock them. It was true. He cleared his throat and said, "By the way, you only get 1 point for cleaning the classroom. You need to get 100. The guards popped into the classroom and asked if they were done cleaning. They immediately stood at attention and told them that everything was almost done. And then one of the guards told Minsu that only he would be going to the next cleaning. He had just applied for additional volunteer work, right? The MC immediately realized that it was his brother's doing and was very happy, telling the guard that it was true. But when they brought him to the kitchen, he became very upset and silently told his brother that this wasn't it. Dubo flexed his fists and grinned as he called him a liar, saying that they met again. Minsu became nervous, but Yusong promised he wouldn't send him to the cooks. But in the end, here he was. Jang Dubo, a kid who dreams of becoming Korea's top chef, is serious about cooking. His right hand is trained to lift a 3-kilogram cast iron frying pan and flip 2-kilogram food. His left hand is optimized for delicate tasks. To humiliate his food is to humiliate Jang Dubo himself. The guys were sitting in the dining room and saying, "This is terrible, there's no taste. How long will they have to eat this?" Dubo turned around and said, "They're ungrateful idiots." He had to endure it, but what can you do? There's no real culinary talent here to follow him. A loud scream rang out, "The pasta's burning! Fire! Everything's on fire!" The guy screamed, "Dubo! He found out how to make oil. Now their country will become an oil country too. Is the soup really supposed to be that color?" Which idiot suggested adding red cabbage? Dubo, with tears in his eyes, asked him to stop. He frowned and thought he needed to endure it. The word chef etymologically means chief, the head of the tribe. He wants to tear them all apart, but how can he do that to his fellow tribesmen? But he is different. He offended their tribe, Lee Minsu. He will call this culinary training and tear him apart. Dubo came up behind MC, who was cooking, and swung the frying pan. His eyes widened in surprise and saw Minsu cooking. He screamed, "What an idiot!" He stretched out his hands to his neck and MC turned and asked, "What?" Dubo lifted him up and asked who he learned to cook from. Minsu answered he helped cook at the shelter. "But why is he crying?" Dubo said in a shaking voice, "He found it. He found it. He knew that someday he would appear." He started spinning him and shouted, "Since he came, that's enough. He loves him, his treasure, the treasure of the cooking class." He laughed joyfully and the MC called him crazy and asked him to let him go. After some time, the guys were sitting in the warehouse and talking. The guy said those people told them to do this to scold Dubo and Lee Minsu, but if this continues, they will end up in trouble. Another guy said, "Dubo cares about him so much, there is no other way. Is there no method to make him hate Minsu?" Kerchief said, "It is enough to make his food taste bad." The guy screamed, "He is a genius. He suggested putting garbage in his food." Kerchief shouted joyfully, "That's right, we need to put this into action right now. Lee Minsu, he is a corpse. You idiot." Suddenly a security guard came into the room and asked, "So it was them?" The guys froze in confusion, and Yusong said, "They say that food keeps disappearing. Since they committed theft, should they be punished?" The boys shouted, "Who is this supervisor? Doesn't the supervisor know that this place belongs to the cooking class? A moment later, Yushong said, first, he dealt with the guys causing trouble for Minsu. He came worried because he said he didn't want to go to the cooks, but it turns out he's adjusted quite well here. He thought, who sent Minsu to the cooking class? After all, he didn't enroll him there. In the chief's office, two supervisors shouted, Chief, in the kitchen today. The chief cried out happily, finally, is there a fight? The supervisor replied, no. His favorite dish, omelet with rice, is on the menu today. The chief said, what's so boring? That's strange, he thought there would be a fight. The supervisor asked, what? What is he talking about? The chief said, okay, they need to do that very thing. The boys happily made hearts with their hands and ordered it to become tastier in 1 and 2. They directed their hands to the food and cried out. The boss tried the food and said, so delicious. After a while, Dubo shouted in the dining room, are they all ready? It's a special day that only happens once a month, so they need to be careful when cooking. First, prepare clean new soap. MC asked again, soap? Cleaning day? Dubo ordered to grate the soap very finely. Add twice as much olive oil as grated soap and cook in a double boiler. Add a pinch of ground basil. The basil powder should be very fine. And finally, to replenish the vitamin E supply, squeeze in some tangerine juice. This will provide both moisture and aroma. Mix all the ingredients until everything is smooth. Cool a little. It's ready. Minsu asked, what the hell? How can you eat this? Dubo asked again, eat it? Of course not. You need to put this on your hair. It's natural hair wax from their cooking class. Someone said to be careful not to let it stick together. The guy asked someone from behind to apply it to him. Minsu said he thought it was some kind of dish, but it turned out to be wax. Dubo answered, because you can't find wax here. MC asked, but what day is it today since they're tidying up their hair? Dubo answered, today is the day the groceries arrive. MC asked again, so what difference does it make? Dubo turned around and said, because on the day the groceries arrive, they can also meet the girls. Mimi smiled and said, Dubo, hi. Grace asked, why so late? They'll take everything like that. So Yeon asked, is there a guy here they haven't seen before? Hi. Dubo said the delivery comes once a month, and they have to share it with the girls from the women's colony. It's the only perk of cooking class. Grace picked up the box and said, it's heavy. She asked her sister to help her with this, when suddenly a guy took the box and with a stupid smile on his face shouted, girls are not allowed to carry heavy things. Guys should be entrusted with such things. Grace said, no problem. The guy shouted, it is not a gentleman's business to make a lady do everything herself. Dubo picked up many boxes and asked, is that enough? A man is one who can lift that much. Mimi said coquettishly, Dubo, he is so strong. He asked to put more on top. Mimi screamed, he is cool. The guys started asking for a box for them too, and they were also arguing. MC asked, what's wrong with them? Besides, they will strain their backs. A voice was heard from the side, and who was he? He looked away and asked, what? Zara said, he looks cute so small. The girl said, he is even cute when he is angry. Another girl said, since he is strong, his older sisters will carry it for him. Minsu asked again, what sisters? But is he serious? Dubo frowned and said, that idiot doesn't do his job but has fun with girls? Suddenly, Soyeon came up behind him and poked him in the back. She asked Dubo to listen. He turned around and she handed him a letter and said, before the boss sees, let him take this. Dubo took it in his hands and embarrassedly thought, could this really be a love letter? Soyeon left and smiled at him. Dubo was already imagining their wedding when suddenly vegetables flew into his face. He imagined Soyeon asking, what will they name their child? Yeji, you need to look here. The girl answered, yes. At the family photo shoot, he asked, Yechan, Yekwon, Yewon, Yesob, are they all ready? The children screamed, yes. He screamed, kimchi. Dubo thought, finally, such a day has come for him too. So, he'll see what kind of love serenade she wrote. He opened the letter and saw the inscription, for the head of room A. He widened his eyes and burst into tears. After a while, the MC was sitting in the warehouse and saying that the idiot cooks are helping the girls and their supplies weren't even brought. Dubo entered the room and said, the head of room A, Lee Minsu. MC looked up questioningly and asked, what's wrong, Dubo? Does he want to assign him something? Dubo asked, isn't he the head? MC answered, yes, that's right. Dubo asked, does he know what day it is? November 22nd? He turned around and said he doesn't know. Is it his birthday? Dubo said, in 3 years that's his wedding date. MC asked again, what? Dubo asked, in that case he knows who Yeji is? He doesn't know, right? Right? MC asked fearfully, Dubo, why is he scaring him so? Dubo said, Yeji, that's the name of his 5th child, who never came into this beautiful world because of his affair. She was a daughter with cute pigtails. He'll kill him for taking his wife. He clenched his fist and screamed, he'll kill him, Lee Minsu. The MC ordered him to wait, and Dubo slammed his fist on the shelf, causing Minsu to dodge. He crouched down in fear and asked, you idiot, are you trying to kill him? If he hadn't dodged, he would have punched his head in. Dubo turned around and ordered Lee Minsu to die. He was his child's enemy. He was kind to him, and he caught him off guard and hit him in the back. The MC kicked him in the face and screamed, what other child is his? He challenged him to a fight and called him a stupid idiot. Dubo grabbed his leg and screamed, Soyeon and him. He knows how much they loved each other. This is only his imaginary future. Minsu hit his head on the floor, and Dubo screamed. But did he take it away? MC thought if it hit him, it would definitely make a hole in his head. Dubo punched the wall, and MC rushed at him from the side and screamed, without his right arm, he is nothing. Stupid. Dubo punched him in the face, which surprised Minsu. He thought, his arms are so long that he can't even get close, and even his left fist is strong. It's like he's hitting him with a stone. Dubo threw MC aside and he thought, good thing at least his right hand is sealed. Dubo ordered him to give it back, and Minsu saw that he tore the box off his hand. He screamed, the date with So-yeon will be on Bukan Mountain. MC dodged and screamed, and Dubo screamed, they will hold hands for the first time in the computer club. Minsu looked around in fear and thought, no, he's trapped in a corner. A corner? A wall? Dubo swung his fist and screamed, the first kiss will be on Myeongdong Street. He looked ahead carefully, and the MC put a frying pan where his fist had landed and said, he doesn't know who So-yeon is, but his dating plan is terrible. No, not even a girl will want to date him. So, how then? If he changes positions, he can use the combination. He grabbed Dubo and thought, he's not even moving? Dubo grabbed his face and said, he took away his pure love and took away his child's future. The MC sobbed and thought, no. Dubo clenched his fist and said, his punishment is the death penalty. Minsu thought he won't be able to dodge. At that moment, he grabbed a package of flour and tore it right in front of Dubo's face. At that time, a girl outside said, hard. Another girl folded her arms across her chest and said that she didn't even wash the dishes at home, but now she's here and has to cook. She misses her sister, Semin. The girl looked at the list and asked, is this not on the list? It probably belongs to the guys. Did all the guys go to the freezers? So Yeon asked, should I take it? Mimi said that if they need it, they'll come and pick it up. Zara folded her arms across her chest and said, she's not going. Dubo scares her. Grace said, they say he beat up some guy named Chang-soo and they sent him home? If Dubo hits you, they send him home? Should she ask her to hit him? Sarah stepped forward and said, she'll go, she'll take it. The girls told her to be careful so that Dubo doesn't hit her. She asked, why? She thought he was cute. At that moment, he was running after MC, who asked not to chase him. He turned around the table and ordered them not to run after him. Dubo screamed, death penalty. Lee Min-soo, death penalty. He was slightly out of breath and said, Lee Min-soo, it has already been decided to execute him. Immediately, MC looked at him questioningly, and Dubo ordered him to come to him to the execution. He will execute him carefully. MC thought, he is big, so he gets tired quickly. Dubo looked up when suddenly an egg flew into his face and broke. MC screamed, his face is the death penalty. It stinks of chicken droppings, so let him get lost. Dubo got even more angry and said, Lee Min-soo, he will kill him. He threw a crumpled metal teapot at him and screamed, he will definitely kill him. MC screamed, if he keeps throwing things like that, he will definitely kill someone. Psycho, Dubo screamed. So let him die. There's no need to dodge. Why doesn't he want to die? MC ordered him to wait and think again. Dubo. He grabbed the frying pan with oil from the stove and Minsu screamed, it's oil. Sarah went to the kitchen and said, she found it. She asked for forgiveness and opened the door. She said the boys left it, so she brought it. Oil flew on her and Dubo said in fear, no, careful. MC ran and covered Sarah with his body. All the oil spilled on him and he screamed loudly in pain. Yusung ran down the hallway and thought, no, Minsu, he came here to protect him. We can't let him get hurt. He ran into the infirmary and screamed, from A3, Lee Minsu, is he here? The nurse turned around and said, quiet, he's there, in the bed. Yusung looked behind the curtain and screamed, Minsu, he said in fear, Min. He saw a skeleton in the bed and asked again, Minsu? The skeleton asked him to forgive him. This happened to him. MC peeked out from behind the bed and asked, would he have become a skeleton even with all this? Luckily, there wasn't hot oil there. Otherwise, he would have definitely become a skeleton. Yusung clenched his fist and said, Minsu, it's him. MC asked to forgive him. Bro, he was just joking. Yusung hugged him, and MC asked in surprise, bro? Yusung said, thank goodness, he was worried. Minsu, slightly embarrassed, asked to forgive him for making him worry. The nurse picked up the skeleton and said displeasedly, she asked him not to touch it. Why did he take it? Yusung screamed, even after this situation, is he going to stay in cooking class? MC replied, to get points faster. It's the fastest way. Even though he's a little scared, he'll help him. Won't he? Yusung asked again. What? MC asked. Will he tell him how to defeat Dubo? Yusung chuckled and said, asshole. He adjusted his hair and asked, is he ready? After a while, the chief asked in surprise, Warden Kang, did he come up with this? He replied, yes, chief. He asked, what kind of training is this? Yusung adjusted his glasses and replied, raising children who fearlessly snap back at adults like the sky. This is training to encourage them to realize their place in the world. The name for it is a dung beetle. The chief exclaimed joyfully, amazing. Warden Kang, 100 points for his ingenuity. Yusung thanked him, and the chief asked, but where did he find these stones? Yusung replied, we brought them from the mountains behind us. MC was standing on his hands at that moment, holding the stone with his feet. He thought discontentedly, Kan Yusung, you terrible idiot. He couldn't just explain it to him. Yusung came closer and asked, are they doing well? He thought, do you think they can stop? MC came down and happily asked, in that case, can he fight Dubo now? Yusung replied, no, he will roll it alone now. Minsu screamed, bug Yusung, bug, what a bug. He was rolling this huge stone and Yusung said he pushes quite well. Now that's enough. MC screamed, really? So now he will fight Dubo. Yusung interrupted him and said, no, and then this. Minsu screamed loudly with anger, nightmare. This is a nightmare. Yusung asked, was he able to push a little? Is that amazing? MC spoke with the last of his strength. Can we fight now? He screamed, maybe that's enough. He'll die like this. Yusung said, Minsu, does he think it's easy to defeat a guy from a completely different weight class than him? If he pushes it a little more, he can win. Minsu asked again, really? Yusung said, however, can a human move something like that? Behind him stood a huge stone, which MC looked at in surprise. At this time, Seijin was sitting in solitary confinement. A week had passed since he was put in solitary confinement. He still can't believe he lost, and his fists couldn't even reach him. Well, in the end, it's the result of his letting down his guard. If they fight again, he will definitely win. So now he needs to think about something else. He sat on the toilet and thought, there is no paper. The water isn't coming out either. He had already used one sleeve. In that case, there is only one way. He tore a piece of fabric from his jacket and thought, if he uses this, then what should he tear off next time? Suddenly, toilet paper was thrown into the cell. Yusong said, no need to wipe himself with something strange. Let him use this. They still have something to talk about, right? Did he wipe everything? He comes in. Yusong entered the cell and Seijin moved behind him and asked how he knew his sister. Yusong grabbed his hand and Seijin thought, did he dodge? What's wrong with this warden? He assumed, but he was too strong. Yusong dropped it on the floor and said he was sad that he was planning a surprise attack. Seijin thought, here we go. Yusong clenched his fist and swung it. Seijin thought, no. He frowned in anticipation of the blow, but nothing followed. He opened his eyes, and Yusong asked if he was so curious, then maybe he should ask her personally? He handed him the phone that was ringing. Seimin answered and asked, Kan Yusong? Did he meet with Seijin? Seijin asked in surprise. Sister? She asked. Seijin? Is it him? Seijin asked. What? Where did she get the phone? Did she really get out of the women's prison? Is she unharmed? Is everything okay? Seimin said, Kan Yusong, she has something secret to tell. Could he please cover his ears? He covered his ears and said yes. Seimin asked Seijin, did he cover his ears? He answered, he did. Seimin asked again, really? She screamed, he's a disgusting idiot. Yusong turned around at the screamed, and Seimin screamed, he's a terrible idiot. Does his head turn into noodles instead of brains? He's acting like a complete idiot. Who does he even take her for? Because of a terrible brother like him, she ended up in prison, suffered, lived through every nightmare and suffering, and after getting out, she was still looking for a way to get him out. He could at least sit quietly, but he starts fights in prison. Let him listen. She said a lot more curses, which made him widen his eyes and freeze. At this time, the MC was practicing with a huge stone. He screamed from the strain, and someone asked if he moved it. The guy answered no. He didn't even move it a little. They say Pollock is for dinner today? Are they going to have dinner tonight? The MC screamed. Did he move it? Hyunjin replied, no, Minsu, that's enough. He needs to surrender. Hyuk asked, but when will Seijin come out? Sogu replied, maybe there's a week left. Will these two fight again? He doesn't want to fight. Hyuk asked, why would he even move that boulder? Sogu said he's saying that if he moves it, he can fight Dubo. Changji replied, he didn't want to fight Dubo. There are many strong guys in the colony, but he chose the strongest one, Dubo. If he hits with his right hand, will anyone die? Changji said, they themselves saw that Cho Chang-soo became an idiot after Dubo's hit. Soku said, maybe Minsu will suffer the same fate as a fool. The MC screamed loudly. He'll move it. Seimin's scream could be heard from the cell. She raised him with such difficulty, and he turned into an idiot. He doesn't even recognize the people who help him, and does all sorts of nonsense. His sister thought about him, found someone who can help. And he's fighting with his brother? He doesn't even have to leave there if he doesn't want to, idiot. If he goes out and catches her eye, she'll tear him to pieces. Let him just die if he's not going to listen to her. Is he listening to her? She's asking, is he listening to her? Why isn't he answering? He bit his tongue. Why isn't he answering his sister? Seijun hung up with shaking hands, and Seimin said, what the hell? He hung up, and she hadn't even had time to tell him to take care of himself. A nurse came into the room and said, she's there, the swearing patient. The doctor heard everything. That is, he's waiting for her. Yuseong opened his ears and asked, is he finished talking? What's wrong with him? Seijun looked at one spot, puzzled, and said, no, he's just feeling a little down. Anyway, he and his sister are in cahoots, right? And he's Minsu's older brother. Yuseong answered, that's right. Seijun asked, and did he teach that idiot to fight? He will listen to him, so let him teach him how to fight too. After a while, a scream was heard in the cafeteria. What to do? They're still getting mad at them because they're burning food. If this keeps up, they'll be kicked out of cooking class. The guy said, I wish Minsu were here at a time like this. Another guy screamed, why did he give in to him? They're in this situation because of Minsu. That's right. Ever since the day Dubo fought with Minsu, Dubo has become a jerk. Dubo was sitting on the floor and saying, he made a mistake. It's the end for him now. The girls were talking among themselves. What? He threw oil at the girl? Dubo is total trash. He should die. She didn't think he was like that. It's so infuriating. Dubo covered his face with his hands and thought, no, he didn't throw it at them at all. He screamed loudly, and the guy said, he's trash, but they still won't abandon him. Even if he can't get married, they will hang out with him forever. The guys turned around and asked, who's there? What the? The MC entered the kitchen and said, the assistant cook appeared in front of them. The guys screamed, Lee Minsu, did he come to die? Because of him, Dubo became trash. Dubo looked up and asked, what? Lee Minsu? He repeated his name several times and laughed. The guy asked, Dubo, what's wrong with him? Dubo ran forward and screamed, Lee Minsu, because of him. The MC asked, does he know why he's not popular with girls? Dubo asked again, why isn't he popular? The MC replied, it's because he looks like a jerk. Dubo got angry and said, Lee Minsu, he'll kill him. Kerchief asked, that crazy guy, instead of forgiving, is he provoking him? The guy grabbed his head and said, what a nightmare, he'll definitely see a corpse today. Dubo ran after the MC and screamed, he'll kill him, Lee Minsu. It's all his fault. Minsu asked with a smirk, why is it his fault that he's ugly? The guys asked, aren't his punches a joke? Aren't he scared? Why is that idiot just running away? Dubo ordered Minsu to come here. The MC replied, he doesn't want to. The guys asked. He won't fight? Minsu is fast. Dubo ran after him and ordered him to come here. He'll finish him off. Minsu laughed and started mimicking him. Dubo screamed, Minsu, he'll kill him. He'll crush him. He clenched his fist and tried to hit the MC, who blocked his punch. He laughed and said, he's crazy. He has no brains. How could he fall for the same thing? He's nothing without his right arm. Dubo punched MC in the face and asked, does he seem to be thinking at all? How can such a short guy attack like that? MC grabbed his hand and screamed. No. He acted thoughtfully. He fell into his trap. He clenched his fist and screamed, dung beetle. After a while, there were some drinks in front of the principal. Yusong said, they prepared this for the director, who works tirelessly for the reform school. The principal said, it's not bad. Yusong said, today he will personally cook for him, principal. It's a stew made from dried Alaskan lamprey. It was a regular lamprey stew. The principal screamed happily. He can't believe he was lucky enough to try such a delicacy. Yusong asked, would he like a special drink? The principal replied, yes, please. He made a drink and said it was a special drink called Hybrid Taste Star. The boss screamed, does such a divine drink really exist? Yusong said, a combination of the refreshing taste of peach and the sweetness of grapes. And now he suggested enjoying the show over dinner. They were watching the MC and Dubo fight through the window. Dubo asked, did he finally stop running? With his right hand, he'd execute him on the spot. He asked for it. The MC held his hand back and Dubo asked, what? His hand got stuck. Minsu punched him in the face and screamed, that's it. Dubo asked, where did he learn fighting techniques? Does he really think he can defeat him with strength? He screamed loudly and the MC started punching him. A while ago, the MC asked, why does he have to do this? Can't they just corner him, like they did with Seijin? Yusong ordered him to think before he speaks. Seijin is at most one weight class above him, so he can be cornered. But the difference in weight classes between him and Dubo is 2, no, even 3 levels. He needs to pray that he doesn't get cornered himself. Minsu sat up and asked, so he wants to bring his weight class closer to Dubo's? Yusong asked, idiot, do you think this is possible in such a short time? MC replied, horrible. Yusong said, okay, they are using a scientific approach. How was he able to move those rocks? They are heavier than him. The answer is the principle of leverage. He does know what that is, student, right? Minsu replied, of course. Who does he take him for? Yusong said, anyway, human limbs also move using the principle of leverage. So if he becomes a lever capable of moving that rock, then he can move Dubo too. Currently, Dubo screamed, why isn't that little idiot moving? MC punched him in the face, and then again. Dubo screamed, yes he even knows how hard. Yusong bowed and asked if he liked the show. The boss replied, it was funny, of course, but the outcome of the battle was predetermined. Yusong asked again, what did he mean? The boss ordered to look at Dubo's face. It didn't even hurt him. With such tiny hands, he would never defeat that big guy. Minsu was already running out of steam. Nothing can be done about the difference in weight classes. Yusong asked, then maybe they should make a bet? He was betting on that guy, Lee Minsu. The boss asked again, a bet? He loves betting, and he seems to enjoy reckless games. Yusong replied, you could say that. He thought about it. Did he think attacks to the head don't work because of the weight difference? They'll see. In a fist fight, the basic stance includes movements that protect the head and face. And the reason is that the face and head are the most vulnerable points on the human body. The head is especially vulnerable. After all, there are many weak points, such as the eyes, forehead, nose, bridge of the nose, ears, temples. But the weakest of them is the jaw. Minsu punched Dubo in the jaw. A punch to the jaw shakes the brain and vestibular system, instantly losing a person's balance. In amateur fights, weight class plays a role. But ultimately, no one can defeat professional technique. Minsu swung his fist and rushed at Dubo. He hit him in the face and said goodbye. Dubo imagined Soyeon and mentally said goodbye to his love. He screamed his love. No need to go, darling. He cried out when suddenly the MC pushed him to the floor. Dubo imagined his future with Soyeon and thought, his future, his children. No need to leave. He lay on the floor and Minsu stood next to him. The guys screamed, this is impossible. How could he lose? The boss clenched his fist and screamed, Dubo lost? Was he wrong? How did he know that this idiot would win? Yusong told him to stop. How would he know that? It's just a premonition. The boss asked again. A premonition, right? Okay. He stood up from his seat, threw down a napkin and told him to think about what prize he wants. Minsu sat on Dubo's body and said, he did it. The hellish training is over. Finally, he reached for the letter near Dubo's face and asked, what is this? For the leader of Class A? Is this about Seijin? Kerchief leaned towards him and asked, is this? It's not for him, it's Seijin. The guy said. Dubo seemed to think it was for him and turned against him. MC asked, are they trying to say that all that torment happened because of a misunderstanding, because of a letter addressed to Seijin, not him? MC started screaming loudly and went to fight Dubo again. He screamed. Why did he fight him? Why was he moving those horrible rocks? The guy asked him to stop. Don't kick a man when he's down. After a while, the guards were standing near the door with a sign that said, restricted area, no entry. The man said there had been a hitch in the selection of new participants. First Seijin, now Dubo. They asked him, is Lee Minsu really that strong? Dubo was the strongest in the reform school. The man replied, if 2 candidates were eliminated at once, what should they do? Who do they have left? The first one. He probably already heard of him. The leader of the MZ gang in the Daehyun district. the foreman of the construction team, Lee Kang-min, and another one, Ha Sung-chul, from the maintenance team. Lee Kang-min makes sense, but why Ha Sung-chul? He's not even the foreman. Jisoo, he doesn't want to participate? The guy said, the more candidates, the more interesting the battles. What will he say? Jisoo replied, he was about to skip this tournament again, but after everything he heard, he became curious. Jisoo looked up and said, he is nominating Lee Min-soo as a candidate. He is the first in the reform school, Im Jisoo. As punishment for the fight, Dubo was sent to solitary confinement and MC got a chance to collect the reward. But while Dubo is in solitary confinement, he is forced to work in the kitchen brigade. MC screamed, is this a reward? Horrible. The guys from the kitchen screamed, Minsu, let him see. They are finished. The rice is multiplying. How much did he put in? All of it. What the hell is this? He did it. This is cool. Let him tell? MC looked to the side and screamed, what kind of nonsense is this? The guy replied, he himself ordered the kettle to boil. Minsu loudly screamed, stop, Dubo. Let him come back faster. After a while, Mimi said, guys, did she hear Dubo was sent alone? Grace greeted Minsu. The guys started showing off their strength in front of the girls again, and they happily shouted, wow. MC said, those idiots are at it again. Someone called him from behind and he turned around questioningly. Sarah thanked him a little shyly for that time when he protected her from boiling oil. Minsu smiled and said, oh nonsense, it wasn't boiling. Sarah said, but still, here. She handed him the letter, and MC asked, what the hell? He needs to give this to Seijin again. Sarah started to leave and shouted, it's for him, you idiot. MC asked again, what? She ordered him to open it since he'll be alone. Minsu turned the envelope over and saw the inscription, to dear Minsu. He felt a little embarrassed and thought, is this really it? On that blue meadow he will build a house like in a picture, where he and his beloved will live happily ever after. A paradise for two, where you want to stay with all your heart. He turned red and thought, really? Dear Minsu, a couple of days ago, when oil almost spilled on her and she already thought that it was all over, he appeared and saved her, although she knew who he was before. The first time she saw him was when she was walking after eating. It was the day when he fought with Seijin. She fell in love with his crazy look, like a fearless honey badger. She stood near the bars and looked at him in surprise. Someone asked her to wait and asked, isn't this Lee Minsu? She said, Lee Minsu, so that's his name. From that day on, her love dive began. He knows, to give him this letter, she went through a lot. Some time ago, Grace curled her hair with hot kitchen tongs and said, okay, that's it with the hair. The next step is makeup. Sarah asked again, makeup? But they don't have any makeup. Grace said, if not, they'll make some. They'll wet a toothbrush with soapy water and rub the desired color in a magazine. She applied the color to her lips and said, it's done. Sarah asked, is she serious? The girl said, now I'm not ashamed to admit it. Zara said, Sarah, she looks great. Maybe she should do it too? Grace said, she's so beautiful. She didn't even notice. Sarah, a little embarrassed, asked them not to tease her. Was she beautiful today? What did he think? She asked him to be sure to answer her next time. The guys leaned over him and shouted, he's a traitor. Execute him. How could he get a girlfriend before them? What, does he enjoy receiving recognition? MC looked up and replied, well, yeah, it's nice, but that's it. Hyunjin asked, is something wrong? The guy said, you idiot. Only his mom writes to him. Hyuk asked, what if it's Seijin again? MC told them to read it themselves. He opened the letter and the boys leaned over it. At that time, Yusung knocked on the door and said, Chief, Sergeant Kang has a report. The chief told him to come in. Yusung entered and said, he heard that he was looking for him, sir. The chief said, Sergeant Kang, it has been 3 months since his appointment, right? Yusung answered, yes, sir. The chief asked. He entered the best medical university in Korea, passed the officer's exam in record time and also with the highest score. What talent do they have in the rehabilitation center? He must admit, he is impressed with his luck. After all, he works for him. Yusung replied, he will continue to work hard for the country and for him, sir. The chief put his hands on his shoulders and said, excellent, excellent. He has a lot of hope for him. Yusung thought, now he needs to find a way to win the chief's trust and raise Minsu's rating. The chief smirked and asked him to tell him this, Sergeant. He recently saw something very interesting on the surveillance cameras. He and Lee Minsu are somehow too close. Yusung's eyes widened in surprise, and the boss leaned towards him and asked what kind of relationship they had. At that time, the MC was washing himself in the shower and thinking, this is a nightmare. How is he even supposed to wash here? Suddenly, he was handed a can of shampoo and he asked, what is this? Shampoo? He turned around and asked, how did the shampoo get here? Jisoo turned around and looked at him. Yusung thought, in order to get Minsu out of here, he needs to hide the fact that they are brothers. Since he was adopted, no one will guess that they are related, right? The boss asked what kind of relationship they had. Yusung thought, did this man really suspect something? He asked again. What? He thought, they can't be exposed. He needs to come up with an excuse quickly. The boss asked, maybe they? Yusung thought, no. He guessed. The boss asked, teacher and student? Yusung looked at him questioningly, and the boss said, he saw everything. He taught him to fight, and he made a bet because he knew his student would win. Isn't that right? He started jumping around him and asking, is he good at fighting? Yusung looked down and said, the guy wanted to get stronger, so the boss interrupted him and shouted, he's a real man, just like in Shounen. Yusung exhaled and thought, he didn't understand. He got away with it. The boss ordered him not to get close to those idiots. Yusung replied, yes, sir. Then he's going to get ready for the mission outside. He turned around and left, and the boss asked, he wants to become a real man. right? This Minsu is very interesting. He pressed the button on the phone and a voice came from it. Yes, sir. The boss ordered him to find out about Sergeant Kang. There's definitely something there. He's getting more and more interested. After a while, Seijin was sitting on the floor and remembering his sister's screams on the phone. His sister was able to get out. He heard sobs from the other cell and looked away questioningly. Dubo was lying on the floor, crying. He pulled his knees up and said, "This isn't fair. It's all because of Lee Minsu." Yu Seong entered the cell and said, "No, it's not his fault." Dubo screamed. "What does he even know, Warden? His life is ruined because of Minsu. He took his wife and child from him." Yu Sung said the leader of Block A, who was mentioned in his letter, was not Minsu but Seijin. He just didn't know that the leader had changed. Dubo screamed loudly, "Minsu!" He asked to forgive him. He got him mixed up. Seijin, he's an idiot. He's finished. Yu Sung showed him the phone screen and said, "It's too early to jump to conclusions." Dubo screamed, "This woman, she's the goddess of feminine cuisine, Seimin Nuna. But why is she standing next to that idiot Seijin? A world where only appearance matters is disgusting. Seijin, he's even taking the goddess away from him? He'll definitely kill him." Yu Sung asked him to wait. They're brother and sister. Kaseiman and Kaseijin. Seijin's younger brother. Dubo shouted happily. "Seijin, dear brother-in-law. He loves him." Seijin shouted in irritation. "Who's his brother-in-law? You idiot?" He ordered him to shut up, and Dubo said, "Come on, brother-in-law. He'll cook him lots of delicious food. After all, they'll be family soon." Seijin ordered him to shut up. He has no chance. Dubo said, "At least for the sake of his future nephew, he needs to speak more politely to him. Brother-in-law." Seijin ordered him to come here. He told him to come here, you idiot. Yu Sung said, "Okay, the situation is settled." He thought Minsu just needs to keep accumulating points, but he still needs to find out something. The dirty secrets of the correctional facility that their warden is hiding. He peeked around the corner and looked at the door of the restricted area and thought that in order to overthrow the current president, a much larger scandal related to this place would be needed. There is a restricted area where even he, a prison guard, cannot enter. There is clearly something there. He widened his eyes and saw a guy being carried out on a stretcher by the guards. Yu Sung wondered what really happened inside. The doors closed and he thought, a red prison uniform? He needed to know more about this. Meanwhile, in the shower, the MC thanked the guy for the shampoo. For the first time in a long time, he washed his hair properly. But where did the red uniform come from? And also, why doesn't he have a rank badge? After a while, Seijin asked why he let him win. He couldn't lose to Minsu. Dubo asked, and why did he let him go? Seijin answered that he had let his guard down. He had prepared carefully. Dubo said that he had too. At first, he was just playing with him and didn't notice how he fell into his trap. Seijin said that it looks like all the attention will be on Lee Minsu now. Dubo said it already is. They even tried to turn the kitchen crew against him. Maybe they'll rip Minsu off instead of them. Suddenly, Seijin interrupted him and ordered him to tell them not to talk nonsense. He's the candidate. He'll prove it and get up. He clenched his fists and said, that humiliation, he'll definitely pay for it. Meanwhile, in the shower, Im Ji-soo introduced himself and asked, "He's Lee Minsu, right?" MC asked again, "How did he know? Did he see his badge?" Ji-soo grabbed him by the hair, and he asked why he was touching his head. Ji-soo said he's such a baby. How did he win? Minsu screamed, "He's not a baby. He's still growing." "Okay, the shampoo is forgiven," Ji-soo said. This time, he came to him himself. MC looked at him questioningly, and Ji-soo said, next time he should come to him. It won't be easy, but he will wait. MC grabbed his head and asked, "What's wrong with him?" After a while, Minsu looked at the contents of the pot and asked, "Who put the fish in the sacred noodles?" The guy said, slightly embarrassed, "Him. If you put meat, it will be richer, dude." MC sighed and said, "They will just eat in silence." What did he even expect? Everyone looked at him attentively, and Minsu asked, "Why are they looking at him like that? Is there something wrong?" He froze, and then he felt someone's presence from behind. Dubo waved his hands, and Minsu turned around and widened his eyes in fear. Dubo fell to his knees and asked Minsu to forgive him. He didn't know the letter wasn't for him, but he bullied him. He's so sorry, but now Seijin is his brother-in-law, and he can't even take revenge. He asked to forgive him. Minsu asked again, "What are you talking about?" He forgives him, so he needs to get up and eat noodles with them. Dubo asked them to wait and asked with tears in his eyes, "Is he really forgiving him? Even treating him to noodles?" Kerchief screamed, "Dubo, everything's fine. Minsu already received a love letter from another lady." Dubo frowned and asked, "What? Minsu him? He wanted a second wife?" MC screamed, "He's crazy. Who cares? He'll answer Sir's letter tomorrow." He froze and thought, but why did everything turn out like this? After a while, he fell to the ground and screamed, he doesn't want to volunteer. He has to meet Sarah. He has to give her his letter. The guy asked, "Why were they suddenly assigned work?" Hyuk replied, "They say they'll give bonus points for them." Taezon came out to them and asked, "Don't they want to become his subordinates? He could open a chicken restaurant for them." Hyuk asked with displeasure, "What kind of nonsense is he talking about?" The guy said, "Hyunjin, that guy, he sounds exactly like him before." The guy screamed, "Does he dare doubt their boss? Does he even know how much money he's made from his business?" He grabbed the MC by the shirt and asked, "Did that guy really beat Seijin and Dubo? He looks weak." Shin ordered them to stop. "Are they fighting again? Can't they even sit still on volunteer day? Haven't they become any smarter yet?" Taeseon said, "They weren't bothering anyone. They were the ones picking on them." Hyuk asked again with displeasure. "What?" He started it himself. Suddenly Shin punched him in the face and screamed, Idiot. He ordered to make his face simpler. He's nothing but trouble. Everything is immediately clear from his face. MC's eyes widened in surprise and thought, what the hell? He's beating him up without evidence. Just because of his face? Did he really stand up for them? Hyuk screamed with tears in his eyes. He didn't do anything. No need to hit him. Yusong grabbed Shin's hand and said, enough. It's time for them to move already. Shin said in surprise, and he's strong. He admits he lost his temper. They drove him crazy with their antics. He screamed, okay, everyone on the bus. Yusong asked, is he okay, Wang Hyuk? Will he be able to work? Hyuk replied, he's fine. Yusong exhaled and asked to listen. He wasn't just going to attack the security guard, was he? MC turned around and asked, come on, bro. He doesn't trust him? Everyone got on the bus and sat down, and Hyunjin said happily, they're sitting there like they're going on a school field trip. Minsu said thoughtfully, that security guard. He smelled strange. Hyunjin asked again, did he smell? Exactly. The MC asked, does he know something? Suddenly, a foot was thrust in his face, and he asked, what's that smell? The guys yelled in displeasure when they saw the smelly foot. The MC turned around and ordered the guys to remove their smelly feet. Taeseon said, if he doesn't like it, he can go one-on-one with their guys, although even Seijin can't handle them. The MC looked ahead questioningly, and Taeseon fell silent when he saw Seijin. He ordered everyone to remove their feet, and the guys agreed. The MC said, Seijin, he got out of solitary confinement today, right? Seijin looked at him silently and sat down next to him, and Minsu thought, this volunteer work promises to be interesting. After a while, the bus stopped, and the man happily said, thank you for coming. He hoped that through volunteer work, the lives of children in Gangyo would change for the better. Yusong shook his hand and said, it's good when young people help the elderly. Shin said he would take some pictures for the report. Women approached the guys with disposable cups and said, guys, you're great for coming such a long way. There are still drinks. They can drink and take their time. The guys cried out happily. They hadn't drunk Coke in ages. Now that's a taste of capitalism. Woman? Where? What the hell? There are only old ladies here. Well, an old lady is also a woman. Not a single young man here, only old people. No women, no fun. Soku pointed forward and shouted, no, there's a young woman over there. Is she a nanny? She's very beautiful. Seimin approached the old woman and asked, isn't she cold? Should I bring her a blanket? Sejun saw her and widened his eyes in surprise. He squeezed the cup and asked, what is she doing here, sister? The guys were washing the old lady's feet and telling them to live long. The old woman looked at Hyuk and said, he looks so much like her husband in his youth. Hyuk said, he must have been handsome. She told him not to flatter himself. Shin took a photo of the guys washing their feet. The MC wiped his forehead, when suddenly he heard a voice from the side, let him wash his feet too. Minsu looked at this and thought, terrible, old man. Life was hard for him. His feet were just rotten. The old man told him to rub well between his toes. The MC asked, is that right? Like this? So much hardened skin. He raised his head and asked, old man, does he like it? Taesung said, of course. He said mockingly. He scratched his fungus. It immediately felt better. He pressed his foot to the MC's face and asked, can he wipe it? Doesn't he want to work for him as a foot towel? The MC screamed loudly, he's an idiot. Hyunjin grabbed him and whispered to be patient. They're filming there. Shin came out from around the corner and asked, are they fighting again? Taesun laughed and said, he's so stupid, he's going to die. Seijin and Dubo, it seems to him, are no better. The MC thought, don't make trouble, don't make trouble. After a while, Seimin was pushing an old woman in a wheelchair and said, the flowers are so beautiful. Doesn't she want to sit and admire them? She saw Seijun and asked, is everyone volunteering there and he's slacking off? He asked, does she really still want to work with the elderly after what happened in Gangyo? Seimin replied, yeah, her mistake. She should have just reported the harassment, and they sorted it out themselves and ended up in Gangyo. But not all old people are like that. That one was just crazy. They too will become old someday. Seijin asked what she wanted to say. Seimin told him to forget it. It's cold, right? She suggested that the old woman go inside. She told her brother to think about what he will become when he gets old. At this time, the cooks told everyone to take one plate. The guys were handing out food and telling them to eat. Eat more and chew well. The MC told the old woman to open her mouth and took the spoon. Shouts were heard from behind, give it to him too, and to him too. He wants to eat. Minsu turned around and said, yes, now, we need to wait. He saw Taesung, who was taking food from the old woman and shouting, should he give it or not? He wants to eat, right? The old woman burst into tears and ordered him to give her some food. Minsu got angry and shouted, he's an idiot. What is he doing to the old woman? Suddenly, a guy spilled food from the tray on his head and told him to forgive him. He accidentally spilled it. The MC screamed loudly, idiots, should he accidentally do something too once? The cellmates grabbed him and ordered him to be patient. Hyunjin asked him to be patient. Shin ran out from around the corner again and shouted, what's going on? Another fight? Lee Minsu. The MC said that idiot knocked a tray over his head. Shin said he said it was an accident. Is he trying to start a fight out of nowhere? The MC shook himself and said discontentedly, what a nightmare. The guys laughed and said they hated those guys from Block A. And they were even afraid of them. Taesung asked, what's there to be afraid of the idiots from Block A? Whether outside or inside, the one with the money wins. And Gangyo is assigned to blocks not by strength, but by the severity of the crime. The more serious the crime, the higher the likelihood that the criminal is strong. And since they are swindlers from Block C, it's no wonder they can't fight. So what are they left to do? He looked towards the TV and ordered to watch that businessman on the news. He doesn't need to fight, right? He's protected by bodyguards, the police, even the law is on his side, simply because he has money. If others have power, they can buy it with money. And they have money, they're scammers. The guys from Block A will also fall before the power of money, and eventually become its dogs. The guys shouted, "Brother, he's the best." Hyunjin was feeding the old lady and looking at them. After a while, there was smoke in the shower. The guys from Block C were smoking and talking. How many years has it been since he smoked? Where did he get cigarettes? He just pulled it out of this old man's pocket. The guy asked, "Nightmare, why do they have to clean up old people's dirt?" The cellmate replied, "Oh come on, you can just smoke on the sly. Just pour boiling water on them and enjoy it." The old man was lying on the floor and screaming, "It's hot! It's hot! Enough! Enough!" Hyuk said, "The toilets are cleaned. Now the bathhouse? Maybe cleaning is his calling?" He opened the door to the bathhouse and saw guys smoking and an old man lying on the floor. He got angry and rushed to the old man and screamed, "Is he okay?" The guys laughed and said they thought he was the warden. "He'll smoke with them, bro?" Hyuk grabbed the old man and screamed, "Are they crazy? What if his heart stops? This is too much." The guy hit him in the face and screamed, and who is he to tell them what to do? The cellmates started teasing him. "No need to hit so hard. The kid's going to cry." Hyuk hit the guy in the jaw and knocked the cigarette out of his lips. The guys looked at him in surprise, and he ordered the idiots to attack. After a while, the MC and Hyunjin entered the shower room and screamed, "Hyuk." After a while, Minsu screamed, "Bro, please. Will he help them?" He grabbed Yusong and asked him to separate these idiots. Yusong grabbed his head and asked, "Is there a fight again?" Even while volunteering, he just needs to be patient. If he causes chaos here, they will be finished. The MC turned away and said, "Terrible, he shouldn't have trusted him." Yusong said, "Minsu." Suddenly a voice came from around the corner. "Bro?" Shin came out and asked, "Did he hear right? Did he call him brother?" Yusong turned around in fear and said, "Well," Shin said, and he suspected from the very beginning. He always protected the guy. Kind Yusong, what is his connection with Lee Minsu? It's like they've known each other for a long time. Yusong answered, "No, that's all." He thought, will they really catch him like this? A voice came from the side. "Bro." Shin turned around and asked, "Again?" Sejin said, "Brother, he's been looking for him everywhere. Those guys have done something wrong again." Shin asked angrily, "Are they all on first-name terms with the warden?" Yusong asked for forgiveness. He had been too kind to them. He thought they had gotten used to it. Shin said irritably, "They've completely lost their minds in prison. Kan Yusong, he'll turn a blind eye this time, but he'll warn you. If he sees him hanging out with idiots again, he'll report it to the authorities." Yusong replied, "He'll be careful." He grabbed his head and exhaled, saying, "Somehow he got away with it, but if this keeps up, he'll be exposed quickly." The MC punched Sejin in the chest and thanked him. Sejin repeated the gesture and told him not to misunderstand. "Mama's boy, he didn't help him out of love." Minsu asked, "Aren't you being too cheeky with the warden?" Sejin grabbed him and asked, "Do you want to fight again?" The MC agreed, and Yusong grabbed them by the neck and said, "That's enough, both of them." Minsu asked to let go, but he really can't help? These idiots are going too far. Yusong screamed in irritation. He almost got caught, but he still wanted to talk about his own stuff. Does he really want to rot here? He pointed his finger at Sejin and ordered him to keep an eye on him. Sejin said, "He's out. It's a pain in the ass." Yusong said, "He'll have to. If he doesn't listen, he'll double his training." After a while, the nurse told everyone to take one. They put it on the old men's feet and turned them over. And then they fastened the diapers on them. The nurse asked, "Is he feeling better?" The old man smiled and said, "Thank you. He feels great." The girl turned around and said, "Now they can try it too." The MC exhaled and said, "It's not getting any better by the hour." The old man asked him to help, and he said yes, just a sec. He opened the package and wondered, where did all the diapers go? The old man asked, "How long will it take?" There was a loud cry for help. Minsu turned around and saw prisoners dressed in diapers and shouted, "Diaper Rangers!" Taeshon frowned and shouted, "No! The monster from Block A, you have to beat him." MC shouted, "Idiots, why did they put on diapers?" He got angry and Sejin came forward and told him to stay back. He was told to sit quietly. MC exhaled and said, "Okay, but he didn't do that." Taeshon said, "They're not just having fun, they're saving the world by killing monsters." MC asked again, "What?" He turned around and shouted, "Wang Hyuk." He got angry and screamed, "What are they doing with a wounded man?" Sejin hit him on the head and told him to be patient. Minsu shouted, "Don't bother him, or he wants to fight him, you idiot." Sejin pointed to the side and said, "We can fight, but he better look over there." Taesung stood next to Shin and said, "Warden, those idiots are provoking them again." Shin said, "If they continue causing trouble, they'll face disciplinary action. No need to complicate things and expose Yusong." MC frowned and said, "Damn." After a while, outside, the guy asked, "Taeho, but how long will they obey them? This idiot pisses him off. He could knock his teeth out. They're hanging out with him for money, and he really thinks he's a king." Taeho said, "It won't be long. They're temporarily helping the idiots from Block C to get an opportunity to move up." The guy asked again, "Higher?" Taeho replied, "To the red prisoners, where only the strongest are, and there are lots of privileges. They say they're looking for a new candidate, and one of them is here." The guy asked, "Kasejin lost to Lee Minsu, right?" Taeho said, "That sounds like a rumor. Lee Minsu looks weak. He will beat this idiot and prove himself worthy." The MC walked down the hallway and thought, Sejin is right. He needs to be patient now. He can't bring trouble onto his brother. But what can he do? A guy passed by and tripped him. Minsu fell, and the guy screamed loudly. Did this idiot trip himself or something? Minsu turned around and screamed, he doesn't know, he doesn't want to think. Idiots, today he got them. Seimin came up to him and handed him some napkins. She asked, is he okay? It's good that he wasn't badly hurt. Minsu asked again, were you sitting down? Seimin wiped his face and said, he, like his brother, is strong. He didn't even cry. The MC asked again, does she know his brother? Seimin asked, is it a secret? Got it. Minsu looked at her name tag and read, Volunteer Kasaiman? She stood up and asked him to take care of her brother, Minsu. MC looked up and thought, Kasaiman, brother, her brother, Kasaiman, Kaseijin? MC came into the room where Seijin was sitting and said he had an idea on how to deal with the idiots from Block C. Seijin turned around and Minsu hit him on the back of the head and ordered him to get it. He said, well, he got revenge for the hit on the back of the head. It's annoying, right? He offered to fight him. Seijin replied, it's annoying. He would gladly beat him up. After a while, Seimin stood by the car and asked, what's wrong? Why are they taking so long? A tin can of drink was placed on her head. Seimin turned around, and Yusong smiled and asked to forgive him. Did she wait long? Seimin asked, does he think he can get away with this? Yusong asked, but why did she call him? Seimin replied, she wanted to thank him. Thanks to him, she met Seijin. She should thank him. Yusong asked if she was helping him. So what? He did it because it benefited him. Seimin punched him in the arm and said he had a talent for making people angry. Yusong asked why she was fighting. They smiled, and Yusong turned away. He asked if she had heard of red prisoners. Seimin asked again, red prisoners? Yusong asked if she was hearing about it for the first time too. The other guards were avoiding the answer. How could he find out more? Okay. He'll go. He doesn't know what kind of trouble his brother will cause next. Although he assigned someone to keep an eye on him. Seimin said he was still holding up today. It's even strange. Yusong asked again, right? Well, he's his brother. He tries. Even if he disobeys, he does everything right. He's a good man. He trusts Sejun. That's why he asked him to keep an eye on his brother. At that moment, MC and Seijin were fighting. Seimin said she also has a reliable brother. She told him not to worry. Yusong said, really? They haven't fought there yet, have they? There was a scream in the yard. A fight. Minsu and Seijin are fighting. They say Seijin lost to Minsu. Will they check? The guys told them to fight already. They're annoying. Minsu asked, isn't he offended at all? That idiot is not only waiting for them, but also making fun of the elderly. Seijin asked, so what does he get out of it? Stop talking nonsense and let him fight. MC chuckled and said, he even felt sorry for him. He heard their next victim is a volunteer. Kaseijin, that's his sister, right? He wonders what they'll do to her. The guy asked, are they going to fight or just gossip? He's scared, right? Did Minsu really intimidate him? Seijin asked. Why should he worry about his sister? He hit the guy on the head and the prisoner screamed. What? Did that idiot attack them? Seijin said he didn't give a damn. Yes, his sister is pretty. So what? The guy clenched his fist and said he's an idiot. Seijin said the more he thought about it, the angrier he got. For his sister, no. They'll answer for their entire block. After a while, Shin asked, so what? Does he like the fresh air? They barely managed to forge documents to get out. Taesung replied, he's very pleased, officer. Thanks. At least he can smoke here. He deserves a bonus. Shin shouted happily. He so appreciated his concern. Taesung said, if he takes over Block A and rakes in the diggers, he'll reward him even more generously. Officer Shin, let him find a way to contact those from the isolation ward. He'd like to look there himself. Shin shouted, no, that's impossible. That place is strictly under the warden's control. If he gets caught, he's done for. A prisoner ran into the room and shouted, urgent matter. Shin asked, didn't they teach him to knock? The guy said, now's not the time. Kaseijin is beating them up right now. Shin asked, what? He shouted in irritation. Have these idiots lost their minds? He said not to fight. Are their words empty words to them? Taesung said, okay. He was just about to deal with them. Park Tae-ho. They left the room and Taesung ordered the guy to lead the way. The guy pointed to the side and said, yes, they're there. Seimin stood behind the wall and heard everything. She folded her arms thoughtfully across her chest. At that moment, the MC shouted, piss. He was supporting Seijin, who was beating the guys. Minsu thought that since his brother put Seijin under surveillance, he was using his weaknesses against him. The guy shouted, what an idiot. They're attacking, not hesitating. Seijin shouted, how dare he attack his sister? No, drive them all over the block? Minsu said, that's it. The guy grabbed Seijin and shouted, he's caught. Now is the time to attack. The MC shouted, God knows, he didn't want to interfere, but when they ask you to, he ran up to the guy and kicked him between the legs. Someone asked, who's asking here? Minsu answered, yes, he's asking, but with his heart. Seijin screamed, he can handle it himself. He turned around and said, wall. The guy rushed at him with his fists and screamed, he's dead. He's not getting away now. Seijin blocked his attack and said, the wall won't save him anymore. He quickly punched the guy and MC thought, wow, he hits. After training with his brother, he's even stronger. But him. MC hit the guy and screamed, he's not far behind either. Seijin just told him to stay out of the way. Minsu told him not to get in the way. Minsu was hitting the guys and screaming, what kind of nonsense is this? He was giving in to such weaklings? Seijin asked, who was giving in here? A whiner. Minsu turned around and screamed, is he a whiner? Then what is he? A walking sister complex. Seijin screamed, what did he say? Is he asking for trouble? He grabbed Minsu by the shirt, and he smirked and said, he's not old enough to open his mouth at the head of a block. Seijin said, since they swept away this trash, they might as well fight. Taeho appeared behind him and ordered them to stop. He threw the MC aside and said, this idiot is not as weak as he thought. They say he was a candidate for the post of the head of the block. He offered to fight him. Seijun kicked him and screamed, "Who is he?" Taeho smirked and said, "The rumors are true. He's Slen." Seijun thought, "Did he endure it?" Taeho said, "Okay, he'll see how long he lasts." The MC started to get up and asked, "Who is this idiot?" Taeho said, "He's the head of Block A, Minsu." The MC looked at him questioningly, and Taeho told him to listen here. His block is coming under his control. Does he understand? And he'll look great in a red uniform too. Minsu thought, a red uniform? Like the one who gave him shampoo back then? What does the red uniform mean? He grinned and sent him away. He said he won't forgive him for the old men and for their block. Tyson quickly put a bag over his head and the MC shouted, "What's so dark?" Tyson hit him on the head and shouted, "That's why he's saying that. He should have agreed the easy way. That's it. He's fired. He's interested in stronger guys like Seijun. Of course, his Taeho is much stronger. He's a D rank, but his strength is at A level." Seijun thought, what kind of idiot is he? Is he deliberately taking hits just to attack him? This is not right. At this rate, history will repeat itself. He should attack too. But oh my god, he's both stronger and tougher. He's ahead in everything. Seijun flew back and thought, what should he do? Some time ago, in solitary confinement, he asked Yusong to teach him how to fight. Why did he lose to Minsu? Yusong ordered him to just learn to use his advantage, his long arms. Seijun asked, and he will win? Yusong answered, well, yes, because for now that is his only advantage. If Minsu had long arms, strength and endurance, he would know what to do then. Now Taeho asked, was he trying to copy him? Seijun thought, okay, he will teach him how to fight for real. Taeho ordered Seijun to lie down and rest. He is no match for him. Seijun asked, really? He offered to show him his level. Fight on a different level. Taeho asked, Seijun, is he serious? He will show? That's how it should be. Then at least it will be nice to trample. But, he calls this show? He went on the defensive. Boring. He's a coward. Seijun, let him move more actively. How much longer is he going to endure? Seijun thought, yes, he is enduring because, at that moment, Yusong appeared in front of him and ordered him to watch his fist. He can't slow down. He remembered training with Yusong, who screamed, left hand. He dropped it, right? Is he tired? He lowered his hand and got punched in the face. Seijun asked, so what's the point of just defending yourself? Is it really possible to get stronger that way? Yusong replied, of course you can. He adjusted his glasses and told him to think carefully. Why did he lose to Minsu? Was it because he was pinned against the wall? Or was it because he was angry? He doesn't pay attention to his opponent's movements at all. He only thinks about how he'll hit him, but in vain. This training will teach him to see his opponent's attacks. Now Seijun thought, he sees. He's starting to see his movements. Taeho asked, he's used to it already, right? How about this then? Seijun thought, deep breath. A powerful attack always follows after that, and that's death. But there's a chance for a counterattack. He dodged and thought, the wider the swing, the more vulnerabilities. Taeho screamed. Is he defending himself so he can strike from behind? Seijun thought. He watched for a long time, and now he sees the pattern of punches, the speed and the moment of hesitation. He punched Taeho in the face. He got angry and screamed. Is that all he can do? He's as far behind him as the moon. Seijun thought, if he swings his fists so mindlessly, he'll only get tired faster. What an idiot. Although he himself didn't realize it recently. Seijun punched Taeho in the face and thought, just by watching, he became so much stronger. Now he understood why he lost to Minsu back then. How strong is the one who trained both of them? Seijun punched Taeho in the face again and threw him back. He looked around and said, he had to sweat. Looks like he's still far from Imjisu. By the way, how is Minsu? He saw Taesun, who was sitting on the MC and screaming, he won't give up even after this. Let him give up. It hurts, right? Idiot. The MC sat and thought, it hurts. It hurts. It hurts so much. You idiot. It's a nightmare. Where does he get so much energy from? He's experienced something like this before. Taesun was running around Minsu and hitting him, and he thought, that's right. It's like he's being hit with inflatable sticks. It hurts so much. Is it because of that training? Or because of those he's fought with so far? Taesun screamed, does it hurt? Well, let him cry and call for his mom. He laughed and said, yeah, he doesn't have a mom. Suddenly, the MC squeezed his fist and took the bag off his head. Taesun asked, what? Minsu hit him in the face and yelled, what did he say about his mom, you idiot? This is for him, for his guys, and for the grandparents. Seijun asked, what is he doing? Shin screamed loudly, what is he doing, idiot? Who gave him the right to fight outside? Yusong grabbed his head and thought, well, he asked. Minsu replied, no, he wasn't the one who started it. He just stood up for Kasejin. Yusong kicked him in the head and said, this still counts as a fight. He walked up to Seijun and said, his word. Was he provoked? Seijun stood with his head down and replied, no, he started it. After all, those idiots started bullying his sister. Yusong asked again, what? Seijun said, and they even bullied the elderly. Shin screamed. That's why he told him not to mess with them. Now they're getting insolent because of him. Kan Yusong, when he gets back, he'll write him an explanatory note. Seiman stepped forward and asked again, an explanatory note? He himself should be brought to trial. Shin turned around and asked, what? Who the hell is she? Civilians weren't allowed to speak. Seiman asked again, really? She showed her phone screen and said, they'll see if he's as confident when he sees this. She pressed play on the video, and Shin asked, what? A voice came from the phone. So, does he like the fresh air? They had a hard time forging documents to get out. He's very pleased, officer. Shin turned pale with fright, and his eyes widened. He asked her to stop, and Seiman asked, He takes bribes, right? And even falsification? Is that an article? Shin rushed forward and ordered her to give it to him right now. Yuseong grabbed his arm and slammed him on the ground. Shin screamed, "Hand, hand! He's going to break it right now." Yuseong grinned and thought, just in time. Otherwise he sensed a big problem would have surfaced. Saemin thought, she hoped she helped. Yuseong dialed the number on the phone and asked, "Control? Sergeant Kang Yuseong is calling. He needs to convey information urgently." Shin screamed, "No. It's not just him. The guys in red rags get even more." Yuseong asked again. "What?" he thought. "Red rags?" A voice came from the phone. "Sergeant Kang?" "Yes, sir. They'll be here soon. They're honored." Yuseong said, "This time they'll close their eyes." Shin shouted, "Thank you, Sergeant. He won't forget." Yuseong grabbed him by the jacket and said, "One question. How much does he know about the guys in red rags?" The protagonist walked across the courtyard next to Yuseong and asked, "If he gets another 50 points, can he apply for a retrial?" Yuseong nodded and replied, "Yes, that's right." The MC thought, a week has passed since he returned from community service, and everything is the same here. He noticed that the guards were still being harsh, and the youngsters were picking fights with each other out of habit. But after he and Sejun had thoroughly taught the ringleaders a lesson, they no longer bothered them. They passed the bars, and as they did, several guys huddled in a tight circle. One of them quietly but insistently said, "Tonight, right? This time without any mistakes. He has to be ready." The protagonist thought, now that little brat from Block C won't come anywhere near them. Oh yeah, he still hadn't answered Sarah. He discreetly waved to the girl on the other side of the bars and decided he'd have to give her a note when the new supplies arrived. They then turned toward the utility rooms. The MC glanced back and noticed they were supposed to be in the kitchen working. Where were they going? Yuseong calmly replied, "To the warehouse, to clean." The protagonist glanced toward the kitchen, and Yuseong immediately added, "He's already made arrangements with the kitchen crew. Just follow me." Along the way, the MC suddenly froze, noticing Sejun. He was doing a handstand, his muscles bulging under his skin. The protagonist thought, this idiot does nothing but work out lately. Does he really want to surpass him? Yuseong placed his hand on the doorknob and said, "Here we go." The protagonist entered the small room and immediately frowned. "Cleaning here, huh? What the hell? Everything is clean here, isn't it?" Yuseong closed the door behind them and calmly said he'd already cleaned up. The MC frowned and asked, what should he do now? At that moment, Yuseong took out handcuffs. The protagonist turned around sharply and exclaimed, "Why handcuffs?" Yuseong stepped forward and briefly ordered, "Stay there." The protagonist froze, and a thought flashed through his mind. What is he thinking? Yuseong picked up a tennis ball and grinned. He had figured out how to train it. Now he would dodge the ball with his hands immobilized. He took a stance, clearly preparing for a powerful throw. The MC thought, what? Seriously? The ball flew at him and he managed to think, it's slow. The next second, he easily dodged to the side and chuckled to himself. Easy peasy. But then another ball caught his attention. This one was flying straight at his face. The protagonist thought, another one right away? And faster too. Yuseong twirled 2 more balls in his fingers and calmly threw them. What he lacked was reaction speed. The protagonist roared, to hell with it. He beat both Sejun and Dubo. Why did he even do that? Yuseong responded calmly. Well yeah, he beat them. But could that really be called a victory? The 3 of them had very one-sided fighting styles. He simply found their weak points. If Sejun had acted tactically, would he have been able to defeat him? Or, say, if he had better footwork, would he have defeated Dubo? What did he think? Sejun was currently learning basic strategy from him. If they fought right now, he would most likely lose. MC stubbornly muttered. His trump card was instinct. With that, he wouldn't lose to Sejun. But hadn't he insisted that they not fight? Yuseong nodded. That's right, he mentally added, but still, fights are inevitable here. Yuseong swung and threw the ball. He thought, this re-education zone is much more dangerous than it seems. Not long before, in a small eatery outside the colony, a guard was pouring drinks. Shin put his shot glass on the bar and called out loudly, "Commander, please." He was so grateful that he had turned a blind eye. Yuseong tilted his head slightly and asked, "Will he tell you straight? Who are these guys in red?" Shin shrugged and answered, "I don't know exactly. There are many mysteries around them." Yuseong insisted, "But he must understand the danger to avoid it." He nodded. "That makes sense. The red uniform is issued to those personally selected by the commander. These guys do dirty deeds for the prison guards in exchange for special privileges." Yuseong clarified, his voice becoming quieter. "Dirty deeds for the prison guards?" Shin grinned and answered, "For example, preventing someone from leaving here. The re-education zone is supposedly designed to reform minors, but naturally some are simply impossible to reform. Releasing them back into society would immediately cause a political scandal. That's what the Reds are for, to do what the guards can't. They turn those who have achieved a review or earned points for release into vegetables. Essentially, it's impossible to get out." Yuseong quietly said, "Impossible," but then firmly added, "But we still have to. We need to make Minsu strong, so that he can get out." Meanwhile, in one of the rooms of the building, the leader of the construction team, Lee Kangmin, sat across from the leader of Block C2, Oh Daesung. Daesung bowed his head and said, "Nice to meet you." Kangmin tapped his finger on the table and calmly said, "They say he united Block C and is gathering strong guys. I wonder who he really is. Is it true that their block beat Block A last week?" Daesung dismissively waved it off. They weren't fighting at full strength, so a little warm-up, he would say. He passed a folder of documents across the table. "Okay, time to talk business." Kangmin took the papers and asked, "Does he run his own business here, in prison?" Daesung calmly replied, "Money decides a lot. Look, there are plenty of people outside who will manage the bets. Kangmin began leafing through the documents. Dae-sun continued. It's like in the real world. Whoever has money can control both prisoners and prison guards. Kangmin raised an eyebrow slightly. Money turns into power. Yes, he thinks differently too. Dae-sun nodded as if confirming his own words. He thinks quickly, Kangmin. How about teaming up? He has money and his own people. Together with him and his team, they can even take on the Reds. If he helps, he will give him 20% of the profits. That's about 4,000 a month. He wants to join the Reds himself, right? He can help. Kangmin decisively shook his head. He refuses. Dae-sun raised an eyebrow in surprise. Huh? Kangmin calmly explained. As tempting as it sounded, working under someone else was beneath his status. Dae-sun narrowed his eyes, as if assessing what he had heard, and said slowly, Huh? Think about it. Why, do you think? Did he call him without security and without his men? At that moment, he snapped his fingers. An Childu stepped into the room from the darkness, and hoarsely asked, Is he Kangmin? His name is already spreading throughout the zone. Have you heard of Childu from Changdaedong? He's from Block C2. The next second, Block D3 leader Jang Sanyun stepped forward and snapped, Don't interfere, this is his. Block D1 leader Park Taeho and Block C6 leader Seo Sungjin stood nearby. They surrounded Kangmin in a tight semicircle. Dae-sun put his hands on his hips and asked, How does he like his army? These are the bosses of different zones. Still haven't changed his mind? Kangmin took off his glasses, slowly looked around at the people standing around him, and smirked. Impressive. He really bought up some strong guys. But does he really think that's enough? He turned slightly, looking straight at Dae-sun, and his gaze was filled with calm disdain. Meanwhile, the protagonist took a stance next to the shelves. Yushong swung his arm, as if he were about to throw not a ball but a blade, and threw, Okay, give me another one. Dodge. The ball flew straight at his chest. The MC watched tensely, and at the last second, he dove sharply to the side, almost hitting the shelf with his shoulder. The thought flashed through his mind. This will be faster. The next ball whistled past his face, then two more, one after another. The protagonist was moving away from this, no longer panicked, but by inertia, as if his body knew where to step. Yusong, raising his hand for another throw, chuckled. At first, he hadn't found the rhythm at all, but now it seemed to be fine. He threw another ball and thought, no one showed him this. He moves precisely without unnecessary movements, on his own, on instinct. After a while, MC, breathing heavily, rested his hands on his knees and croaked. So, is this going to work? Yusong smiled slightly and mentally noted, he has talent after all. Not just strength, a sense of distance. He raised his hand again. All right, leveling up. The protagonist was surprised. Where? The next second, the ball flew between his legs. A thought flashed through his mind. What the hell? Is it hitting my legs? If so, then. And then another ball whistled right past his head. MC collapsed to the floor, rolled over, and sitting up barked, Idiot. Who does that? What kind of teleportation is that? Yusong calmly adjusted his glasses and explained. He said we were leveling up. At first, the attacks were straight. You quickly get used to it and dodging becomes easy. Now we're working with indirect trajectories, much more difficult. He knows it himself. A side hook, a low strike, an attack into a blind spot. Even pros get caught doing this. With these words, he briefly demonstrated a few moves. The protagonist crouched down, frowning at him. Yeah, he gets it. But why tie his hands, huh? That's too much. Yusong calmly said, Hands are both offense and defense. You should use them when you're at your wit's end. MC winced but nodded. Okay, training him, but why? Sejun was nearby at that moment. Rubber bands were tied to his arms and legs, and he strained them with every step, shouting, Are they both crazy? What's going on here? Yusong chuckled, watching his jerky, strained movements. Unexpected. He's making progress, although he's still far from perfect. Sejun croaked. Just a little more, just a little more. His fist froze a few centimeters from Yusong's face. He was straining to reach it. His arms trembled with tension. The veins in his neck bulged, but the next second, the tension in the harness snapped, throwing him back. Sejun collapsed to the floor, breathing heavily. Yusong approached them both, looking calmly down. They themselves said they wanted to get stronger. He was simply setting the course. It was up to them to turn them into monsters. This training was a kind of purification. If you pass, you'll unlock your potential. If not, it's wasted. He bowed his head slightly, as if weighing his words, and added, he was just curious, which of them would ultimately be the tougher. At that moment, the MC and Sejun exchanged glances. Meanwhile, Shin flung open the office door and, peering inside, said, Everything's under control now, right? He froze, taking in the scene. Guys were lying on the floor, all jumbled together, as if they had been knocked down by a single wave. And in the middle of this chaos stood Kangmin, bare-chested, one foot braced against the chest of one of the fallen. Dae-sun lunged at Shin, holding out his hand and shouted, Shin, he has to help. He grabbed Shin's leg as if looking for support, and Shin, without looking, reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and muttered, He did it again. Dae-sun's eyes widened. What? Chief Shin, are they in cahoots now? The next second, Shin kicked him sharply, short and hard, and barked, Damn it! This idiot is worse than a cockroach. Because of him, Yusong is following him around now. Give me the password to the safe. Dae-sun grabbed his head, shielding himself from the blows, and yelled, What is he talking about? What password? Kangmin, ignoring them, glanced at his phone screen and calmly said, His people are about to privatize his business. He answered the call and asked, Everything's going well, huh? The subordinate nodded briefly. Yes, almost ready. Kangmin snapped his fingers. Dictate the password. We'll open the safe. A little later, Kangmin looked up and asked, how much is there? The subordinate, without taking his eyes off the screen, replied, cash and crypto wallets, about 200 million in total. Kangmin drawled, 200 million. Shin nodded briefly. It'll be deposited today. Kangmin didn't take his eyes off the screen. He paused for a second and then said, the main thing is, tell all the guys that he wants to meet them. With these words, he calmly put on his glasses and added, more quietly, but loud enough for everyone to hear, he had prepared the ransom money. After a while in the cafeteria, the MC suddenly jerked his head up and shouted, what the hell is he talking about? Like he's not allowed to go into the kitchen anymore? Dubo scratched his head and awkwardly replied, yeah, that's how it happened, Minsu. The protagonist frowned. Why him? He's not the only one here. Shin approached them and calmly explained, there were a lot of people there. They decided to lay off some, but a spot opened up on the construction crew. Do you want to go there? The protagonist looked down at the community service application in his hands and asked again, to the construction crew? It flashed through his mind. It's better not to make any moves without asking. What if he ruins the whole scheme? Shin bowed his head slightly. If you don't want to, just say so. The next second, the protagonist suddenly smiled, abruptly snatched the documents from Shin's hand and exclaimed, he wants to. He never said he didn't want to. He scratched his head again and thought, they'll give points anyway. What difference does it make? Taking a few steps forward, he turned around and said, if a spot in the kitchen opens up in a month, be sure to invite him. Dubo, watching him go, quietly said, Minsu, take care. That he was thrown out of the kitchen, that he was transferred to the construction site, it was all someone's idea. After a while, MC approached the right building and froze at the entrance. Thoughts were spinning in his head. What? These are definitely not school children. Their faces are kind of worn out. I hope there's no one like Dubo here. At that moment, Kangmin stepped forward and, looking around the team, said, okay. Why are they looking at the new assistant like that? He took a few steps towards the protagonist and held out his gloves. Hello, Minsu. He'd heard a lot about him. Take the gloves. He'll only hurt himself with his bare hands. Then he added, he is Kangmin, the team leader. Putting his hand on the MC's shoulder, he calmly continued. This is his first time using the machines. They should help as best they can. The others responded in unison, yes. Kangmin smiled and, looking straight at the protagonist, said, if anything happens, call us immediately. We'll help. He replied, okay. He looked down at the gloves in his hands and thought, lucky. At least this leader is normal. He did the right thing by coming here. And not long before this, in the Park Correctional Colony, Hyoshin, barely moving his legs, quietly asked, how much further is it? My legs hurt. The warden said curtly, they're already here. And wincing, Hyoshin added, it's unclear how the guys live here. It stinks of dampness and hazing. The warden reached for the door handle and muttered, he'll give him 5 minutes. Come on, hurry up. Hyoshin stepped into the room and shouted, hi. Hyoshin froze in a deliberately dramatic pose and added, he's looking for a certain person here. He's from a special brigade, in a red uniform. One of the guys from the construction crew drawled, looking sideways incredulously. What? A girl? Where did a girl come from in a men's colony? Maybe she's not a girl at all? Kangmin barked. Head down. And shut up. The subordinates fell face down and froze. Hyoshin broke into a smile and said, role-playing thieves games? Fun. Obedient boys. Kangmin rose slightly, not taking his eyes off Hyoshin, and said, until he gives the signal, they will neither see nor hear anything. Hyoshin calmly asked, is he Kangmin? Kangmin answered evenly. He was promised a meeting not with him. Hyoshin answered, but with Kim Hwyryum. Well, he doesn't like him? Is he disappointed? Kangmin adjusted his glasses and said, not exactly. He just didn't expect to see an unfamiliar face. Hyoshin immediately covered himself with his hands and muttered, don't look at him like that. You're embarrassing. Kangmin quit, frowning at Hyoshin. What the hell brought him to this hole? Hyoshin caught himself and blurted out, oh yeah, right, now they have 3 candidates again. Kangmin frowned and asked, who are the 3? Hyoshin energetically listed. The first is him, Kangmin. The second is Ha Sung-chol from the Techies, and the third is the head of the A4 squad, Minsu. Im Jisoo chose him. He proved he wasn't a pushover. Kangmin scratched the back of his head and muttered, but why is he the last candidate? What the hell did he prove? Hyoshin shrugged easily and replied, he barely did anything. His achievements are essentially because of his brother, Lee Kang-won. Isn't that right? Kangmin thought in surprise. Does he know his brother? Hyoshin said, there may be a tiger behind the rabbit, but a rabbit is still a rabbit. Hyoshin stepped close, leaned close to Kangmin's ear and drawled, the cutie rabbit will try to prove that he can handle it without a tiger? Kangmin abruptly took off his glasses and narrowed his eyes. Rabbit? Proof? If he beats him now, will it count? Hyoshin put his hand to his forehead, sighed and said, how passionate. He fell for a simple provocation. Still weak, he thought. The kid looks like nothing special, but why does he give him goosebumps? Hyoshin leaned almost to Kangmin's shoulder and asked, does he really think he's stronger? Kangmin thought, he's not inferior to him. Hyoshin said, relax. He bit his finger and added, he's still a top candidate. He just wanted to see him in person. Understand, he just needs to defeat at least one of the other 2 and consider it proven. Kangmin looked at him silently, as if trying to read his mind. Hyoshin headed for the exit, blew a kiss and tossed it over his shoulder. Then he and Hwyryum will vouch for him. Time's up. See you later. The door slammed behind him. Kangmin clenched his fists and thought, what? Was he really that tense? Fine. He needs to defeat at least one of the 2. Minsu, I can't believe he beat Dubo and Seijin. Let's test this guy. He looked up at his subordinates. Meanwhile, the protagonist swung a hammer and drove a nail into the board. He nodded. Listen, he really has talent. The next second, the The top of the hammer broke off and whistled centimeters from the protagonist's head. He jerked back. What? A hammer? The guy next to him smiled awkwardly and blurted out, "Sorry." The hammer wobbled. MC barked. "What the hell is he swinging at, you idiot?" Then he folded his arms and muttered, "Okay, it wasn't on purpose. There are enough dangerous things here without that. You have to be careful." The protagonist stepped forward, but tripped over the taut wire and fell, almost slamming his face into a board with protruding sharp nails. His face froze a few centimeters away. The worker holding the wire threw up his hands. "Sorry." He was removing the cable. Didn't know it was here. A thought flashed through MC's mind. What the hell is going on? After a while, he went to the saw and picked up a block of wood. His thoughts were spinning. This is the second time. An accident or a setup? If the second, then for what purpose? It began. At that very second, someone grabbed his arm tightly. He jerked. Again, the guy holding him said quietly but firmly, "Quiet. It wouldn't take long to break your arm like that." The protagonist froze, then nodded briefly. He wanted to help, right? Wasn't he imagining things? Several more guys approached from behind. One of them clapped him on the shoulder. "Let me show you how to use a circular saw." They gently grabbed his shoulders and arms, guiding him. "Relax here. Apply a little pressure here." The protagonist exhaled nervously. "Guys, can you not press so hard?" One of them chuckled. "Hey, or you'll lose your fingers, kid." The next moment, he grabbed MC's hand and began to guide his palm to the working saw. The next second, someone flipped the switch, and the lights in the room went out. A murmur immediately arose around them. What? A power outage? The lights are acting up again. Did someone touch the switch? Kangmin glanced at his defeated subordinates in surprise and muttered, "They can't just go to sleep here." At that moment, the protagonist barked. He wasn't the one who touched them, and pointed a finger at himself, frozen in the middle of a circle of defeated guys. It flashed through his mind. It really does look like a trap. Childu stepped closer, flexing his fists, and exploded. He tried to help, and now they're saying he beat up the guys. MC gritted his teeth. Maybe he should just fight back? But he couldn't risk penalty points. There was no choice. He froze in an awkward pose, and Childu goggled. What kind of pose was that? The MC suddenly burst into a scream. "Overseer!" He shouted it over and over until the nearby guard turned around and muttered, "What?" The protagonist's chest tightened. They weren't even looking, no matter how much he shouted. The guard glanced at his colleague and, suddenly breaking into a smile, sang, "What a wonderful weather today." He chuckled in response. Yeah, right. The MC's stomach went cold. Why were they pretending they didn't hear anything? At that very moment, Childu raised his fist and barked at him to shout louder. The guy next to him also tensed up, ready to pounce, and shouted over the noise. The guards here are on their side after all. It clicked in the protagonist's head. The guards are on their side too. Meanwhile, Seijin started practicing with rubber bands. He took in ragged breaths, trying to maintain his rhythm. Yusong glanced at his wristwatch and raised an eyebrow. Was it that late? Time to go back. If they were late cleaning the warehouse, trouble would be inevitable. Seijin stubbornly shook his head. One more round. Yusong glanced at him in surprise, and he blurted out, as if challenging himself, this time he would definitely pass. The thought burned inside him. He was still at level 1, and the guy had already beaten level 2. He couldn't fall behind. There was no way he would lose to Minsu. And in the present, MC dodged every blow with frightening ease, as if the space itself was adjusting to his movements. Kangmin, not taking his eyes off the fight, frowned, his mind spinning. The guy was better than he expected, but why wasn't he attacking? The next moment, the protagonist slid to the side, dodging another fist, and shouted, as if trying to get through to everyone around him. He really doesn't want to get into trouble. He'll just earn merit points and quietly leave. He can't afford to get demerit points. That would be disastrous. Kangmin adjusted his glasses and narrowed his eyes, as if re-evaluating the protagonist. Was he really holding back so the warden wouldn't give him demerit points? Then he waved his hand. Let's go have a quick smoke. They'll clean up here without them. The warden chuckled, as if thinking out loud. Well, if that's the case, just let him give the signal when they're done cleaning. His colleague nodded, pursing his lips. Yes, let him call when he's done. MC, continuing to dodge the blows, flashed a thought. The warden's finally gone. Childu raised his fist and roared, fuming. In that case, they really need a beating. At the same moment, the MC punched him square in the cheekbone. Sangyun howled and raised his fist, his eyes dark with anger. This bastard wants to die, huh? But the protagonist had already dove, his gaze sliding to the floor, and dodged so quickly that it seemed the air parted before him. The next moment, he pressed his palm into the ground and, sharply throwing out his leg, slammed the kick right into the opponent's head. Kangmin slowly nodded. I see. So he didn't just defeat Seijin and Dubo by chance, huh? The MC, breathing heavily, looked up at him and blurted out, not hiding his irritation. Was it his idea for this childish performance? What did he even do to deserve such attention? Kangmin grinned wryly. He was as much a candidate as he was. The protagonist frowned. A candidate? A candidate for what? He just needs to earn points for volunteering. Kangmin closed his eyes for a second and said, because of a guy who doesn't even know what a candidate is, he has to prove his strength. He took off his glasses and ran a hand over his face. He added quietly, he was going to sort this out through his subordinates. They just wanted to eliminate one candidate. But comparing him to those who don't know anything at all is infuriating. To hell with it. He'll deal with him himself. He adjusted his hair with a sharp movement. The protagonist suddenly chuckled. Exactly. Kangmin raised his head, staring at him in surprise, and the protagonist wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand and barked, his eyes flashing. If he wanted a fight, he should have just said so. There would have been no need to waste his energy. Stop showing off. Damn it. Come here, if you're so brave. With these words, he gave him the middle fingers. After a while, a tense silence fell over the construction classroom. The guys stood frozen against the wall, staring at the platform. One of them pointed a finger at the fight and whispered, "Chenhee, isn't that the guy from his room?" In the center of the room, Kangmin lunged forward, throwing his fist with terrifying precision. The MC slid to the side, almost blending into the shadows, and his chest tightened. He was fast, too fast. He barely had time to dodge. Kangmin was advancing, mercilessly, calculatedly, without a single wasted movement. Fragments of thoughts raced through the protagonist's head. Was he attacking as if he knew his every move? Had he trained in boxing? But he couldn't just dodge forever. Sooner or later, his breath would break, and then he pushed off the floor, feeling the ground lift him toward the blow, and raised his fist, seizing that very moment. Now he would get him. But at that very moment, Kangmin instantly grabbed his hand, clamping his fist tightly. MC froze, and it clicked in his head. "What?" Kangmin muttered. "You're dodging well? It seems you still haven't learned how to attack." Without waiting for an answer, he unleashed a powerful blow, and at the same moment hurled a short question. Had he fought others like this? The fist crashed into the air near the protagonist's head, almost grazing his hair, and a second blow followed immediately. Kangmin narrowed his eyes. Maybe Sejin and Dubo weren't so strong after all? Another thrust, sharp and heavy, forced MC to take a step back. A desperate spark flared in his chest. This is it, his chance. Now at this very second. He raised his fist again, but Kangmin, as if reading this impulse, jerked his elbow out. The protagonist cried out, feeling a sharp wave of pain roll through his ribs, and a thought flashed through his mind. What the hell? An elbow. He continued to circle the court, dodging punches like they were flames, and his thoughts raced at a frantic pace. No chance. He would have to keep dodging. His attacks couldn't be blocked, couldn't be countered with a counterpunch. The only option was to stall, to wait for him to run out of breath. But now his chest was exposed. Here it was, the opening. He had to strike. The next moment, Kangmin lunged forward with his foot. MC raised his arms, setting a hard block, and everything inside him collapsed. Was this really a trap? But why was he kicking in a boxing match? It couldn't be. He was a kickboxer. He was done for. The next second, the opponent's knee shot forward, cutting through the air. Another moment, and the blow would have landed squarely on the body. But at the very last moment, Yusong lunged forward and grabbed Kangmin's knee hard, cutting him off. Kangmin jumped back, a brief moment of confusion flashing in his eyes, and the thought flashed through his mind. What the hell? Yusong firmly cut him off. The fight was over. A thought crossed Kangmin's mind. Who was this guard? Where did he even come from? And Yusong was already looking at them both in a way that made arguing undesirable. If they continued fighting, they would both be sent to solitary confinement. A pang of annoyance swelled in Kangmin's chest. He was definitely not in charge of the construction class. When had he even appeared? Yusong raised an eyebrow slightly, as if reading his thoughts. What? Are there problems? Kangmin's insides clenched with dull anger. What the hell were the other guards doing while all this was happening? Without taking his eyes off the other guards, Yusong said dryly, "They didn't give them room to fight here on purpose, did they?" They exchanged awkward glances. One waved his hand. "Oh well, they just wanted to have a secret smoke." Yusong thought, how could they even let this happen? Then he said, "We're letting it slide today, but only today. It's late. We're finishing up." Kangmin gritted his teeth, his head pounding. Damn, he was so close to winning. Next time, he'll definitely deal with him, Minsu. Sometime later in the infirmary, the MC touched the cut on his face, as if checking if it was real, and quietly asked, why isn't he angry? He thought he would be angry, because he got into a fight. Yusong, sitting opposite him, bowed his head slightly. He doesn't know the whole reason yet. You should tell him why he joined the construction team in the first place. The protagonist shrugged. They said they were cutting staff from the culinary team. He'd heard that you could earn merit points in the construction team. Yusong's gaze became sharp and piercing for a second. It clicked in his head. Cutting staff from the culinary team? There had been no such order. Come to think of it, something similar had happened before. When Minsu was transferred to the culinary team. Was someone deliberately pushing Minsu toward these transfers? MC seemed to sense their gaze and added, as if justifying himself. It was just like with Seijin. He couldn't land a single blow either, only dodging. It was no surprise that this guy clearly had martial arts training, most likely kickboxing. Unlike Seijin or Dubo, it wasn't about cunning or strategy, but honed reflexes. Yusong nodded slowly. He needed to hone his skills. There was no other way. They were moving on to the next stage, Phase 3 training. He would accompany him to the construction group until the training was over. He paused, then thought. He didn't know who had set Minsu up, but for now, the most important thing was to focus on strengthening him. The protagonist clenched his fists, and a stubborn, bitter understanding stirred in his chest. He couldn't keep dodging punches forever. Sooner or later, he'd have to face his enemy face to face, and withstand that gaze, and never back down. Meanwhile, in the construction classroom, Kangmin, frozen by the window, glanced at the rows of workbenches and chuckled quietly to himself. It was a good thing that the guy in the red prison uniform had transferred Minsu to the construction team. That alone was already a plus. But Yusong hadn't let that team out of his sight for a week now, and it was because of him that Kangmin couldn't deal with Minsu. He cast a heavy gaze at Yusong's file, as if hoping the dry lines would suddenly reveal a weakness. A frustrating thought swirled in his head. Even with the stolen personal data, He couldn't find a single flaw. If only for one day, just one day, that Yusong wasn't here. Kangmin folded his hands thoughtfully in front of him, then abruptly uncrossed his fingers and, as if making a decision, opened his desk drawer. He took out his phone, dialed a number, and when someone answered, he said quietly, without wasting words on greetings, "Hey, it's him. Just don't tell Hung about this. He needs them to do something for him." Sometime later, Yusong was walking down a busy street, his gaze flicking to the face of his wristwatch and muttering under his breath, "It's about time she showed up." At that very moment, Seimin emerged from around the corner, slightly out of breath, her hair tousled by the wind. She quickly adjusted her hair and exhaled, smiling apologetically. "Sorry, she's a little late." Yusong gently hugged her, shaking his head slightly. No big deal. He thought so himself, which is why he left 30 minutes late. She raised her eyebrows, squinting with a playful threat. Does he want to die? Next time she'll be an hour late. He chuckled, the corners of his lips twitching into a slight smile. Then he'll be 2 hours late. And at that very moment, out of sight, one of Kangmin's subordinates silently clicked the camera shutter. Looking at the screen, he nodded contentedly and muttered, "Yes, sir, it seems they found him." Yusong's weaknesses, as he'd asked. The guy in the car raised an eyebrow in surprise, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. What were they even talking about? Laughing as if the whole world could wait. His partner chuckled, not taking his eyes off the couple on the sidewalk. He doesn't want to say goodbye. He wants to stay with her just a little longer. It's just a love game. Damn, how he envied them. While some were forced to watch, sniff, and notice every little detail all day, others could just stand next to a girl and smile, as if there were no rules, no fines, no guards. Seimin took out her phone and dialed a number. The guys in the car immediately exchanged glances and, unable to contain themselves, began to mimic her. He'll call her, she'll call him. She must see him in her dreams. Damn, how envious. A couple of minutes later, Seimin turned into a less busy alley. The car rolled silently behind them, the doors clicked, and the guys got out. One of them chuckled contentedly. "Thank goodness for coming into this alley yourself. They didn't even have to try." Seimin turned sharply, her eyes widening in surprise. "What the?" There were a bit too many people here for just one stalker. The second guy flicked a lighter, lighting a cigarette, and lazily muttered, "She will have to take a little walk with them." She crossed her arms over her chest. Okay, but could they put out their cigarettes first? She was trying to quit. Meanwhile, the boss's office smelled of freshly brewed coffee. He leisurely stirred sugar, glancing at Shin over the cup. "How is Yusong doing?" Shin tilted his head slightly, choosing his words. It seemed he was overly obsessed with Minsu. The boss nodded as if confirming his own thoughts. Spot on. He transferred Minsu to the construction group. Yusong's expression then was abnormal. Lately, he had been appearing regularly in this group. He paused, put down his spoon, and asked calmly, "Anything else?" Shin paused, gathering his thoughts. He had also been asking about the Red Rehabilitation class. Initially, transferring Minsu to the cooking group was partly a test, but mostly to observe Yusong's reaction. That's why they sent him to volunteer with him. The boss tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the table. The reasons for transferring Minsu to the construction group were partly due to the special group's request, but ultimately, it all came down to suspicions surrounding Yusong. At the moment, all they knew was information from documents, but there was clearly something behind this guy. They'd ordered an external background check. Something would come out soon. Shin took his cup, took a sip, and, smiling slightly, said he'd be keeping a close eye on him. But he was also worried about something. Let's say they were keeping an eye on him. Fine. But why were the director and the guys from the special group so interested in Minsu? He paused briefly, as if letting the words settle in the air. Because he resembled one person. That one. Meanwhile, the MC stood under the streams of the shower, feeling the warm water wash away his fatigue but not his anxiety. The same thought kept running through his head. 2 weeks had passed since that fight with Kangmin. He continued to train to the point of exhaustion, replaying punch combinations, practicing dodges, trying to find that rhythm that would one day save his life. Would it be enough? The old tricks no longer worked on Kangmin. He was the kind of opponent who couldn't be defeated by cunning or chance, only by pure skill. Only by strength, forged over hundreds of repetitions. To have any chance, he needed to master at least the 3rd level, and there was almost no time left to think. Then one of the prisoners barked, over the sound of the water. "If you're done with the soap, pass it." Hyunjin squeezed the slippery bar in his fingers and muttered, "Here, take it." At the same second, the soap tore from his hand, slipping between his fingers, and a thought flashed through Hyunjin's head. Damn, it's flying straight at Van Hyuk. This is dangerous. The protagonist darted forward, catching the bar in midair with such precision, as if the movement had been rehearsed 100 times, and threw it briefly, preventing panic from growing. Careful. Don't drop it. Hyunjin awkwardly rubbed the back of his head, embarrassedly muttering a thank you, and then narrowed his eyes, as if examining something new. Listen, how did he do that? And his body seemed to have gotten stronger? As if over these 2 weeks he hadn't just been training, but reshaping himself from scratch. The locker room echoed with the slamming of lockers, the rustling of towels, and the boys hurriedly pulling on their uniforms. Seijin, pulling his hair into a loose ponytail, said over his shoulder, "Looks like Supervisor Kang still hasn't shown up today." So what happened to their training then? The MC ran a towel through his hair, squeezing out the last drops of water, and calmly replied, "They were told to clean out the warehouse instead. The order had come that morning." At that moment, Chun-hee approached him, quietly, without making any unnecessary noise, as if he didn't want anyone else to hear. He touched Minsu on the elbow and asked in a lowered voice, "Hey Minsu, can we talk alone?" They went to a quiet corner of the locker room, where the words wouldn't echo throughout the room. The MC glanced at him, feeling a bad feeling stirring inside. Why such a serious tone? Chang-hee paused, choosing his words. It was about the construction crew. Minsu immediately perked up, as if he'd been hit where it hurt most. Exactly. He's in it too. He was the one who put out the fire back then. He got me out of that lousy situation. Chang-hee slowly shook his head, his gaze growing heavy, almost tired. He still doesn't understand how scary Kangmin is, huh? With these words, he suddenly started taking off his pants. The MC turned pale, recoiling, and cried out, not hiding his panic. What? What is he doing? Why are you taking your pants down? Then the protagonist noticed a huge scar, and Chang-hee said, "Look, this is what happens when you just cross him once." Minsu froze, feeling a chill creep up his spine. What is this? Where did it come from? Chang-hee lowered his gaze, his voice becoming muffled, devoid of emotion. He was his friend and subordinate. Kangmin was a gangster from MZ who ran the Taehyung-dong district. He'd worked under him, and then he'd only gone against him once. And this was the result. He paused, as if letting the words sink in, and then added harshly, "If he'd just been a good fighter, he would have stopped him. But this guy was truly cruel. Anyone who challenges him always gets what they deserve." He looked up at Minsu, and there was neither pity nor condescension in that look. Therefore, he shouldn't go to the construction team anymore. He might leave with more than just demerit points. He might end up crippled, or never make it out of the rehabilitation class at all. And then, no points would help. The protagonist awkwardly scratched the back of his head and muttered, "Fine. He won't go to the construction team if there's no supervisor. He'll find another volunteer job." Chang-hee narrowed his eyes. "Promise? You won't go if there's no supervisor?" Minsu nodded firmly. "I promise." And in his mind, a thought crossed his mind. But if it has to be done, for the sake of his plan with his brother, he might have to fight again. After a while, Kangmin abruptly snapped into the phone. "How did it go?" The subordinate responded dully. "They caught her. Now they're heading for cover." Kangmin gritted his teeth. As soon as they arrive, he'll tell Yusung where they are. The main thing is to make sure he doesn't return to the rehabilitation class today. One of his subordinates glanced at Seimin, lying limply in the back seat, and asked, "What about the girl next? What to do?" Kangmin shrugged. "Decide for yourself." The guy next to him chuckled. "Yeah. They're going to have a fun party today." Seimin's eyes widened, and her chest tightened. The rehabilitation class. This was completely different from what she expected. Are they henchmen of someone from the rehabilitation class? Are they trying to buy time, distract Yusung? Maybe the real culprit who framed Minsu? Or someone from the red rehabilitation class was hiding behind the rehabilitation class. Not long before, they had stood opposite each other. Yusung was clenching his fists. Was she going to be bait? It's too dangerous. Seimin shook her head calmly. They were watching them the whole time. Their target was either him or her. Maybe this way they would find out what they were hiding behind the rehabilitation class. The real culprit, or someone connected to the red rehabilitation class. She stepped closer. Whatever it was, this was their chance to uncover who was behind all of this. Would he really miss such an opportunity? Yusung exhaled hollowly. If the target was him, he didn't care. But if it was her, Seimin smiled slightly and handed him the key. If the target was her, he would come to save her, right? He froze, then slowly took the key, never taking his eyes off her. The car dived into a dark tunnel. Yusung raced after him on his motorcycle, the wind whipping his face, and one thing pounded in his head. Hold on, Seimin. He will come. He will definitely come. After a while, Kangmin exhaled heavily, as if the words were difficult to come by. He didn't think it would come to this. He asks to meet alone, Chang-hee. Chang-hee stood opposite him, not looking away. Just ignore Minsu. He doesn't know why he's targeting him. He's just one of many who want to get his hands on the store. Kangmin's head snapped up. Why should he listen to this? Chang-hee bowed his head slightly. Because, although he was on the construction team, he was no longer his subordinate. I ask not as a fighter, but as a childhood friend. Images popped into his mind. Elementary school, he and Kangmin, an inseparable couple. And then everything fell apart. Kangmin followed in his brother's footsteps, and Chang-hee stayed by his ailing mother's side. Because of these circumstances, the connection was severed. As soon as Chang-hee entered high school, he immediately got his driver's license and got a job as a courier. Having learned of his situation, his employers even gave him a motorcycle, a generous, almost unbelievable amount. That day, he mounted the bike, waved it, and said, "I'll be careful, thank you." It was this motorcycle and these orders that allowed him to pay for his mother's hospital bills. Sometime later, he stopped at the factory premises, opened a container of food, and muttered, "They even order here." He opened the door slightly, tossed it into the semi-darkness. "Where should I put it? About delivery?" Someone inside turned around in surprise. Chang-hee waved his hand awkwardly. "Fine, I'll leave it here." He put the bag on the table, glanced at the faces, and thought, time to get out of here before they catch me. And at that moment, a familiar voice rang out from behind him. "Chang-hee?" He turned sharply. "Kangmin?" One of Kangmin's assistants glanced at him sideways. "Does he know him?" Kangmin said dryly. "From elementary school." Chang-hee froze, looking at his old friend, but didn't recognize him. His face was completely different, and the clothes are luxury, expensive. Where does he get all that money? And all this time, he's just been delivering food. He scratched the back of his head awkwardly. "I work part-time as a courier." Kangmin narrowed his eyes. "Is mom still sick?" Chang-hee nodded briefly. Then Kangmin stepped closer, his gaze sharp and searching. "Do you want to make easy money?" And he smiled, a smile that sent a chill down your spine. A little while later, Chang Yi stuck a cockroach in a food container, snapped a photo with his phone camera, and sent it. Then, he left a scathing review. Kangmin came over, glanced at the screen, and chuckled. He has a talent for this. Chang Yi asked awkwardly, really? Can this really be monetized? Kangmin tilted his head slightly. One review like this isn't enough, but if you do it systematically, there will be money. Soon, the owner of the delivery service was on his knees, clasping his hands. Please delete the comments. His business is collapsing because of this. Kangmin sat opposite him, calmly tapping his finger on the table. Bring me 3,000 today. I'll delete everything. The man nodded frantically. Got it. I'll transfer it now. After a while, Chun-hee stared blankly at the transfer amount and exhaled. Was this his first salary? After all, he'd only left a couple of reviews. A bitter hope stirred in his chest. If he kept earning like this, he'd be able to pay for his mother's hospital bills. He nodded, as if convincing himself. Yes, this is it. Well then. And then he accidentally stumbled upon a short note about someone's death, and everything inside him sank. That guy from the Chinese takeaway? A quiet, heavy whisper hummed at the funeral. They say he ended his life with his own hands. They say they found bugs in the food. Someone launched an attack through the reviews, and then they demanded money for deletion. But where could Uncle Kim have gotten the money? After the shop went bankrupt, he was barely making ends meet. Chang-hee's head was all in a jumble. Bugs, reviews, blackmail. This was what he'd been doing under Kangmin's guise. It was as if he'd killed that guy with his own hands. Chang-ji collapsed into a chair, his shoulders shaking, and he began gulping down soju straight from the bottle, trying to drown out the grief that was eating away at him. After a while, Kangmin took a sharp step toward him and hissed, "What? Do you want to repent?" Chang-hee jumped up, his voice breaking into a scream. A man who was completely innocent died because of them. Did he even feel a shred of guilt? The next second, Kangmin grabbed him by the neck, his fingers digging in hard, cracking. Guilt? He didn't remember ever having such a useless thing. He'd moved him to pity, given him a chance to make money, and now he dares to whine? Do you want to confess? He knows perfectly well. He doesn't forgive betrayal, right? He brought the tip of the pen right up to Chang-hee's face. Chang-hee gasped, "Wait, please, wait a second." But Kangmin wasn't listening. The next moment, he abruptly thrust the pen into Chang-hee's leg. He screamed, the sound bursting from his chest, burning his throat. Kangmin leaned close to his ear, his voice turning icy. If he continued to spout this nonsense, he wouldn't just make a laughingstock of him, he would crush him to dust. Be sure you don't regret your words. Then Kangwon emerged from the darkness, broad, heavy, as if the air itself was parting before him. He chuckled, looking at Chang-hee with pain and confusion. Still such a kind person, little brother? And he thought he already understood how everything worked here. Or rather, he didn't think so. He knew that sooner or later he would fall apart. Kangwon, the head of the Taeyangdong crime syndicate, glanced at his brother and said, "Close up your business immediately. The police are already on their way." Kangmin turned pale, as if the support had been pulled out from under his feet. What did he say? The police? Did he tip them off? It's all his fault. He should have kept his mouth shut. And now a man is dead. What is he doing? Kangwon slowly sat down on the edge of his chair and calmly said, looking at Chang-hee, "Lucky. They'll take this guy instead." Kangmin froze. Something like emptiness flashed in his eyes. Will it really end like this? Kangwon bowed his head slightly. Do you think you can get by with just one subordinate? Kangmin, he has to go too. Wasn't it logical that he, a minor, would go, and not he, an adult? That's how they ended up joining the gang. In the present, Kangmin stood opposite Chang-hee, for the first time in a long time, face to face, without the cover of orders and henchmen. He muttered quietly. After all, he was looking for him because of Minsu. He had the same thought. He was also going to call him because of him. He hadn't let Yu-seong in. He couldn't find a way to contact Minsu. Chang-hee frowned, his voice hoarse. What did he mean? But Kangmin didn't have time to answer. One of his subordinates grabbed Chang-hee's head and slammed it on the table, and Kangmin grabbed a tool and asked, does he know why he was given this problematic role as the leader of the construction team? If he gets hurt or simply disappears, no one will suspect the boss. But Minsu will definitely come. With these words, he pressed Chang-hee's finger sharply against the sharp edge of the instrument, causing the skin to turn white. Meanwhile, the other subordinates were whispering near the warehouse. They had arrived. The girl was safe, waiting. One glanced sideways at the other. She was acting strange, too calm. Wasn't he imagining it? The other chuckled. He had just sent Yu-sung a message. Now he can't stay away. The text was simple. If you're worried about your girlfriend, come to this address at 11. He knows what will happen if he's late. And at that moment, Yu-sung stopped at the edge of the alley, adjusted his glasses and said quietly, almost without emotion, "Don't provoke me. He's already here." At that moment, people inside the room were talking. Right? That guy, Yu-sung, is coming? If he's a real man, he'll rush here as soon as he finds out his girlfriend was kidnapped. Even at full throttle, it's 2 or 3 hours, so they have time to have fun. Then one of the guys looked at Seimin and asked, "What's wrong with her? Isn't she even shaking from being kidnapped?" He extended his hand to her and added, "Does she like it or something? She looks even more beautiful with her hands tied. Does she want to have fun with them until her boyfriend gets there? She has to be good, and they won't touch her." Before he could finish speaking, a helmet flew into his face, sending him flying backwards. Another guy cried out in surprise, trying to understand. What kind of helmet? Flying away from the man, his whole body trembled and he screamed loudly. At that moment, Yusung entered the room. One of the people present shouted, "Damn, how did that idiot get here so fast? Had he been following them from the very beginning?" He arrived quickly, but first he needed to assess the situation. What could he do alone? Yusung replied, "That would be enough, he would show." He adjusted the gloves on his hands, and then, looking around, thought, too many enemies. If this dragged on, he would be the first to run out of steam. So, without restraint, blitzkrieg. A man rushed at him from the front with a blow. Then he swung his arms haphazardly in different directions, striking all the opponents surrounding him. One of the injured thought, "He can't breathe." Yusung said, "Even if it's hard, he shouldn't lower his head." With these words, a blow to the chin followed. At that moment, one of the bandits approached Yusung from behind and, swinging his leg, shouted, "He left his back exposed, idiot." The next second, Yusung sharply turned around and bent over, dodging. He grabbed the man's leg and he shouted, "Let go! He has to let him go, damn it." The next second, Yusung twisted his leg and he screamed loudly in pain. Watching what was happening, the guy said in surprise, "What the hell? This guy." He thought most people in his place would have already panicked and he was fighting. The next second, Yusung delivered another blow and then turned around and added a kick. The guy thought, he's playing with them. Usually techniques don't work on him. Then there's only one way. With these words, he took a knife out of his pocket and swung at Yusung. The next second, he grabbed his arm and, turning sharply, punched him in the face. At that moment, Seimin was watching what was happening and thought, she was worried about their numbers, but he can handle this alone? Yusung is a real monster. I have to admit, it's impressive. Bonus, 10 points. Meanwhile, the MC was lying on the floor breathing loudly and said, "Damn, this is exhausting." Next to him was a ball, and then the protagonist looked away and said, "Hey, he's tired too. Stop pretending." Sejin, lying next to him, replied, "He's not tired. Let them leave him alone." He replied, "How funny. He can hear him suffocating." Sejin said, "If he has enough strength for chatter, they should keep fighting." He replied, "As he wants. He'll just pretend like he passed the 3rd level today." Sejin asked, "He says he passed? You're welcome. At least he should lie believably." The MC put his hand to his chest and asked, "What does he, an idiot, know about the 3rd level?" He asked, "Will he climb up on his own? Why are you standing there?" At that moment, Shin entered the room and asked, "Didn't they have to clean out the warehouse?" Sejin replied, "He's resting. He's tired." The protagonist added in surprise, "What is he even for?" The next second, Shin handed him a package, and the MC asked, "What is this?" Shin replied, "A gift from Chang He." The protagonist began to unwrap it and asked, "A gift? This?" Sejin wiped himself with his shirt and asked, "What's wrong?" The MC thought, if he doesn't come within an hour, he'll prepare the next gift. A message from Kangmin. He held a severed finger in his hand. Meanwhile, Yusung cut the rope on Seimin's hands. She turned around, hitting him in the stomach, and was indignant. "He's late," he replied. "He tried to finish as quickly as possible. He apologizes." She said, "He certainly looks very diligent. Had he forgotten about her?" He scratched the back of his head and replied, "No. He really tried to hurry." She replied, "Okay, she will believe it. They underestimated them. Their goal is to prevent him from returning to the colony." Yusung was surprised. "What?" Seimin showed him the correspondence. He asked, "Kangmin?" She said, "They can only attack Minsu if he is not in the colony. That's why they detained him." He thought, he warned him in advance not to approach the construction team until the 3rd level. Everything seems to be in order. At that moment, Kangwon began to come down from the 2nd floor of the building and said, he suspected that they were up to something. So he just watched silently, but now his fists are itching. It's rare to meet someone at his level. It's the same with him, right? How often does one come across a worthy opponent? Now it doesn't matter why they are here. So, will they start? Meanwhile, Chun-hee was trying to catch his breath and crawled forward. The next second, Kangmin stepped on his injured arm and he screamed loudly. The protagonist entered the building. Kangmin waved his hand. "Is it hard to hold on against him, Minsu?" And the protagonist told him to move away and angrily shouted, "Move your foot." He swung his fist and shouted, "Idiot." And Kangmin easily dodged and thought he learned something, but the punches are still slow and he can finish this quickly. At that moment, his fist headed for the MC's face, but he blocked the punch with his hand, and Kangmin thought, what the hell? He just blocked his punch at the last moment, but even so, it was a trap if he hits with his elbow. At that moment, he performed the action and then thought in surprise, cheating? This guy, did he study his move? At that moment, the protagonist swung his fist, screaming loudly. And Kangmin thought, there's no way to dodge. Then, he spun around sharply and kicked, knocking the MC back. He thought, looks like he's trained well. He blocked his kick before he even threw it. He noticed how the protagonist stopped his leg, grabbing it with his hands in front of him, and then jumped back. The audience was amazed. Wow, this idiot has gotten stronger since last time. He didn't expect Kangmin's kick to be so fast, but it still didn't land a single hit. Apparently, this is not what he was going for. Kangmin frowned and asked, what? He was trying to tear Changji out of Kangmin's grip. At that moment, Changji put his hand to his chest and said, thank you, Minsu. Kangmin looked at him and thought, so he planned it this way from the start? The protagonist asked, then let's do it for real now? Meanwhile, Kangwon said, the reason is no longer important. What will he say? Yusung looked at him and thought he was strong. He stood in front of him and thought, he's on a completely different level compared to the previous weaklings. Kangwon smirked and said, what's with that face? He doesn't want to fight? And Kangmin thought, what does he have to do with Kangmin? He would rather avoid this fight. Then he said, in that case, he should let her go. Kangwon said, he will pay for making a mess here. The next second, Yusung kicked and thought, the feel of his fingers is completely different. He missed. He blocked. He noticed how the hand blocked his kick, and Kangwon said, not bad. The next second, Yusong pushed off the ground and thought, he is stronger than he expected. He swung his leg and Kangwon noticed. He thinks quickly. Yusong kicked his opponent's neck and thought that he would hit harder. The next second, he screamed loudly when Kangwon punched him in the forehead. He thought in surprise, when did he manage to do that? Yusong flew back, then skidded to a stop on the ground, clutching his chest. Kangwon adjusted his hair and asked, how are the punches? He sees that he's even still in one piece. And Yusong thought, damn, it looks like he broke all his ribs. If we don't do something about it now, it's only going to get worse. Then we need to finish this guy as quickly as possible. He caught his breath a little, then lunged for the attack. He threw a punch, but Kangwon punched him with his own. Yusong thought, a block with a fist. They punched each other. And again he thought, is he just parrying his punches? Is he playing with him? Then Kangwon asked, is that all he can do? He's going to fall asleep. Then Yusong turned around and, swinging his leg, thought. Songwon replied, legible. He stepped on his foot, and Yusong screamed loudly. Kangwon said, he gave him a chance to open up, but he won't show him anything new. People like him clearly lack variety. With these words, he hit him on the head, causing Yusong to fall to the ground. He opened his mouth and thought, did he read him like that? How many fights under his belt? Kangwon didn't fight for the good life. His mother was a woman who couldn't live without alcohol and men. He was born to a mother who didn't have an ounce of maternal love. He had no choice but to grow up fighting. To avoid hunger, he had to steal and fight. Being beaten was less painful than starving. At one point, one of the bandits asked, was that him, the one who stole from his brothers? Those who learned to fight were strong, hard to defeat. But the satisfaction of victory was just as great. Dozens, hundreds of times. With each victory, Kangwon became stronger. From the alleys to the streets, from the streets to the neighborhood. He became part of a gang that ruled the entire neighborhood. In the present, he sat down next to Yusong and said, he admits, he fought well. Not bad for someone who studied, but he was too straightforward. Bookworms like him are all the same. It's already killing the mood. After that, he stepped over Yusong and heading towards Saemin asked, maybe he should look for another entertainment. Her look was not bad, although it was not his taste. Yes. It was exactly that look that makes everything interesting. Saemin looked at him fearfully, and Kangwon smirked. But what was she looking at? At that moment, Yusong stood up behind him, wiped his face, and said, he admits his attacks were simple, but he shouldn't be too strict. That was the teacher's order. Against ordinary people, they should stick to the basics. But he was no ordinary person, right? Now he would show him everything he was capable of. Sometime later, while fishing, Philip was holding a huge fish and smiling said, a monster. Yes, it's a monster. And Mark, looking at the fishing rod in his hand, said, well done, boy. He had never seen such a catch pulled out of the sea in his life. He sighed and told him not to try to just play along. He himself caught a tuna later. At that moment, Mark really was hauling a huge fish onto the boat. Then Philip said, although sitting like this calmly fishing is just heaven, honestly, he hoped that he would give up halfway. And so he sent him not as an ordinary sergeant, but as a special forces officer. Mark said, a real man should be able to handle this. 2 out of 5 drop out of special forces training. Parachute training, night infiltration, mountain treks, survival. That's why those who are seriously into sports usually go there. And this guy not only didn't give up, he placed first in every subject. He broke all the records of existing special forces officers. Who the hell is this? Mark said, to become his son, you need to be not only smart, but also tough. That's why he assigned him the strongest warrior he knew. Philip was surprised. Could it really be Yoon Seokjun, a former northern saboteur? Yusong personally trained this monster. Meanwhile, Yusong said, he should fight ordinary people only according to the rules. But he's not considered an ordinary person, right? He stepped forward. Kangwon thought, what the hell? This guy's aura has completely changed. These were Taishan Tongyun's orders. Then he swung his fist, pushed off the ground, and leaped forward. And he thought, I wonder what changed. The next second, his fist flew past, and Yusong started throwing punches. He thought, fast. And he thought, this is funny. His reaction speed has changed. But at this close range, this punch shouldn't have. He swung his fist, and then he thought in surprise, this guy didn't even intend to dodge from the start. At that moment, his fist slammed into Yusong's face, and he grabbed his arm and punched it, causing Kangwon's bones to bend in half. He screamed loudly, and swinging his other arm screamed, does he think he can stop him with one hand? Then he punched forward, but Yusong put his elbow in front of his hand, and Kangwon thought, block a fist with his elbow? He screamed loudly, and his fingers curled. He thought, no way. Yusong grabbed his arm and continued to punch, and Kangwon thought, he's fought fighters all the time. He's never seen anything like this. The blows came from all directions, and Yusong twisted his limbs again and again. Kangwon thought, what did he study? This isn't a martial art. At that moment, Saemin, watching what was happening, thought, even she, who doesn't understand fighting, understands this. Fighting is when you try to defeat your opponent. But what Yusong is demonstrating is maximum incapacitation of the opponent in minimum time. Meanwhile, at the construction site, one of the people present asked, Kongmin's feet are so fast. Another construction worker said, Minsu is no slouch either. He's the headman for a reason. At that moment, Chung-hee, continuing to press his hand to his chest, said, Minsu. Kangmin threw punches, and the protagonist dodged. He thought, his kicks are still razor sharp, but it's still possible to dodge. The problem is those legs. He noticed the approaching leg and thought, I blocked it. But the next second, a fist slammed into his face, and he thought, this idiot is not letting him dodge or block. He sharply moved to the side, and then, noticing the kick, he put his hands out to the side. He screamed loudly and thought, he is being attacked from both sides at once. Then Kangmin grinned, laughed, and shouted, finish! He raised his leg again to kick, and the protagonist noticed it. Those present began to mutter among themselves, that's it! No one will get up after Kangmin's high kick. Then someone exclaimed in surprise, what? Kangmin looked in surprise at the protagonist's hand, which grabbed his leg. The MC said he thought he would not see this anymore. But he began to worry. He was waiting for his high kick. Not long before, during training, a huge number of balls were flying at the protagonist again and again. He dodged them all using his arms, and Yusung said, 5 balls, no problem. Then add 5 more? MC shouted indignantly. 10 then? He has to listen. He has a question. In professional matches, even the pros don't always dodge, right? You see how they take hits and get hit back regardless of the outcome. Yusung said, pros also calculate where the hit will land. Sometimes they even take a hit on purpose. The protagonist was surprised. On purpose, Yusong raised his index finger and answered, for example, when they are confident that by taking this attack, they will be able to deliver an even stronger blow. They sacrifice flesh to take bone. If you increase the number of hits, you can eventually reach the point where it is impossible to dodge. That's when you have to choose what to dodge, what to block, what to take. By now, Kangmin was looking at his leg in surprise, which the protagonist had grabbed with his hand. The MC raised his fist to attack and shouted, sacrifice the flesh, take the bone. With these words, he punched the opponent's leg with all his might, and Kangmin screamed loudly, he's a bastard. The protagonist continued, sacrifice the flesh, take the bone. He struck again, and at that moment, it felt like Kangmin's bones were falling apart. He dropped to one knee and, grabbing his leg, screamed loudly, idiot, he broke his kneecap. Then he was surprised to notice a fist approaching his face, and the MC shouted, don't stop, he has to attack. Meanwhile, Saemin put her hands to Yuseong's face and said, what is this? His already battered face is now completely trashed. He noticed that she was being too rough and then wondered, is she crying? She pressed his head to her chest and told him not to look. He could have ended it quickly, but he had to get to this point. In response, he hugged her tightly and apologized. And he thought, but this was a difficult opponent. If he hadn't let his guard down, if he hadn't broken his arm at the beginning, maybe he would have lost. The next second, they looked to the side in surprise, in the direction from which someone had entered. The door opened and several bandits walked inside. Yusong started covering Saemin with his hand and asked, how did he know and come? The guy showed him his phone and said, while they were having fun here, he called it. They think that by touching his people, they will get away unharmed. Before he could finish speaking, Kangwon grabbed the guy by the head and slammed him to the ground with all his might. The newcomers cried out in surprise. Big brother, Kangwon barked. Damn, this is incredibly inconvenient. This is his fight with this guy. Who invited them to pry? If they interfere with him, he, Kangwon, will be disgraced forever. Understood. The others answered in unison, yes sir, big brother. Several men grabbed him by the arms and one of them asked, big brother, is he okay? He doesn't look well. Kangwon said, let him wait. He turned around, looked at his opponent and smiled. Then he said, he lost this time, but next time they will see what he's capable of. He will challenge him 100, 1,000 times, and let him wait. Yuseong calmly replied, no, it's better that they don't meet again. After that, the bandits headed for the exit. Meanwhile, at the construction site, one of the people present folded his arms and said, they've left. Is Kangmin losing now? The fight continued. Those present were talking among themselves. His legs were simply knocking him down. The protagonist struck again and again. At some point, Kangmin fell to the ground, covering himself with his hands. He started shaking and the MC barked, get up. It's not over yet. Kangmin glanced to the side and noticed a screwdriver. Grabbing it, he rose to his feet and screamed, oh, he's an idiot. He swung, but the next second, Chang-hee grabbed his arm. Kangmin stared at him in surprise. The protagonist punched him in the face and shouted, he's going to beat him to death. Kangmin, taking the blows, thought, I can't believe it. How could this guy have grown so much in such a short time? There was no way he could defeat him. The next second, another blow sent him flying, spinning in the air. Everyone present gasped in surprise, and Kangmin, raising himself slightly, thought, what should I do? He should become a candidate like Chang-hee. Then he began to laugh loudly, falling to the ground, and screamed. They saw everything, right? Chang-hee, the idiot, interfered in his fight. One of the people present muttered, that's true, of course, but Kangmin howled. He thought he was supposed to just stand and watch. If he's not chosen as a candidate, they'll all rot here for sure, right? They're finished. His organization is also power. He's an idiot. What can he do alone? The next second, those present began to surround the protagonist, but he began to punch them. The protagonist looked at his hand and thought, the back of his hand is swollen. Did his arm crack then too? The next second, a fist hit him in the face. He was grabbed from different sides and they shouted, he's got you. He's an idiot. Hold him tight. The MC cringed and thought, there are too many of them. The bone cracked. is this really the end? But the next second, a punch hit the attacker's face. It was Seijun. The protagonist looked at him in surprise. Seijun asked, didn't he ask for help? Mentally, the protagonist thought in surprise. Seijun? He started beating up his opponent. Consider yourself repaid for volunteering at the shelter. The MC thought, how did Seijun even get here? At that moment, Kangmin thought, damn, how did Seijun get here? Because of one Seijun, all the spirit in the middle of the fight evaporated. But this is not the end. And then Kim Young-won stepped forward and, wiping his face, asked, does he really have to interfere himself? Today they will lay down 5 heads. He was the vice leader of the construction team. Kangmin muttered. Since he was the guy who gave him his first taste of fighting here in the correctional center, he should be more than capable of handling Seijun, right? Then Youngwon swung and shouted, it's been a while since he's earned a decent living. The next second, he was surprised and thought, is he blocking his view with his hand? He punched in front of him, but not noticing anyone. He frowned and thought, where did he go? He quickly glanced to the side and shouted. From the side, at that moment, Seijun punched him, and Youngwon flew back. Kangmin was stunned. What? Youngwon was knocked out with one punch. Then he noticed Seijun coming toward him and said, stop. He doesn't know why he's trying to save Minsu, but now he has to listen to him. His men have taken his sister hostage. The protagonist jumped. What? Seijun said. Talk nonsense when his back is against the wall? Kangmin showed him a photo of a tied-up Seimin and said, is it nonsense or not? He should see it for himself. His sister's name is Seimin, right? Warden Yu-sung kept interfering. It seems he had a pretty close relationship with his sister, right? That's why they took her hostage. He noticed that Warden Kang didn't show up today, right? At that moment, the protagonist asked, so where is he now? Kangmin replied, he probably tried to save Seimin, and now he's getting it from his guys like a dog. The next second, the protagonist's punch slammed into his face. Kangmin flew to the ground and dropped his phone. The MC screamed. At first he pretended to be a gentleman, but turned out to be just an idiot. He really thought that he and his pathetic henchmen could stop Yu-sung? Kangmin indignantly shouted, he's an idiot. Seijun, if he wants to save his sister, he has to kill this guy. At that moment, the protagonist and Seijun stood opposite each other, smiled and high-fived. The protagonist muttered, he touched his family. Now let him sort it out himself. Seijun glanced sideways at him and muttered. This was the first time he'd heard him say anything sensible. Then he stepped toward Kangmin. He jumped. What, didn't he hear him? If he wanted to save his sister, he'd have to kill Minsu. Seijun calmly replied, his sister was certainly pretty, but why should he worry about her? Kangmin was perplexed. What kind of nonsense was he talking? Did he even understand the situation? Seijun responded coldly. Even so, he'd get his sister, or rather the price they'd pay for their boys, out of them. Kangmin stepped forward, held out his hand and shouted in fear. Wait. At that moment, the MC picked up the phone, dialed a number, and said, hey. Yusong answered, Minsu? How did he call? The protagonist answered, it's Kangmin's phone. Yusong chuckled. He told me not to go to the construction team in his absence. Since he was calling, it meant he had won. Meanwhile, Seijun grabbed Kangmin by the clothes and delivering powerful blows shouted, why should he worry about his sister? Are you okay? The MC snapped. Did Seijun's sister get saved? Answer. Yusong barked. Don't talk for too long or you'll end up in the isolation ward. Hang up. The protagonist responded, okay, they'll see each other tomorrow at the center. After that, he hung up. Seimin turned around and quietly said, what a relief. It seemed like everything had worked out between them there. She heard both his voice and his brother's voice. Yusong said thoughtfully, he must have been really angry that she was kidnapped. By the way, where are they going? Seimin answered, to the hospital. He calmly said, everything is fine, this will pass in a day or two. She was indignant, his ribs are damaged. He asked, well, it will heal on its own, no? She sighed irritably. Yu-seong. He held her from behind. She quietly said, in that case, maybe they should go to her and look at her kitty cat? After some time, the ginger cat meowed pleasantly. Yu-seong picked it up and said, so this is the cat she picked up that time. At that moment, Seimin was preparing dinner, and Yu-seong added, he was grateful that she both bandaged his wounds and cooked the food. She stood by the stove and replied, it's just because she was hungry herself. Then Yu-sung continued to cuddle the cat and asked, huh? He looked to the side and noticed a photo on the dresser. Then he asked, isn't this her childhood photo? Seimin, did she play the piano? Is this her family? She answered, Mom is on the left and Uncle is on the right. Then she clenched her fist and added irritably, Dad went to the left. Then she moved the frying pan and said, done. Turning around she added, eat, even if it doesn't taste good. He should eat it with the appearance that he likes it. Yu-seong slept on the floor while the cat meowed, sitting on his chest. Seimin got up and asked, she spent her energy cooking, and he fell asleep? After that, the cat settled comfortably on Yu-seong's chest, and Seimin covered them with a blanket and said, he suffered all night. She looked at him, then lay down next to him and hugged him from behind. Meanwhile, Kangmin and several other defeated prisoners lay on the floor. Seijun turned to the protagonist and asked, more or less? And the protagonist asked in response, Seijun, how did he even get here? He put his hand to his head and said, Warden Shinju-sup said that if he wants, he can go. The protagonist asked, that nasty guy? Then he looked at Chang-hee and said, that's right, his hands. He removed the bandage from his hand. After that, the protagonist was surprised. What is going on? His finger is intact. Chang-hee replied, they almost cut it off, but... Shortly before, when Kangmin held the instrument to Chang-hee's finger, Shin entered the room and told him to stop. He grabbed Kangmin's hand. At that moment, Kangmin asked, what's the matter? Shouldn't he help? Shin replied. He would call Minsu himself, so he shouldn't make the situation worse. In the present tense, the protagonist asked, then what was that? The finger he saw? The next second, Changji cried out in fear. Minsu, a hand, someone asked, but he said there was something wrong with his hand. They answered, no, his hand. The protagonist looked worriedly at his hand and cried out, what is that? Earlier, Shin cut off a mannequin's finger in the medical office and asked, is that enough to fool him? Maybe add a little paint? He hopes the director won't guess that he helped. Then he looked at finger and thought, until the deputy director returns, he should prevent incidents whenever possible. After some time, the caretaker entered the medical office and opening the suitcase was indignant. What is this? Someone cut off a finger. He'll have to buy it again. After some time, the doctor bandaged the protagonist's hand and said, just a small crack and slight inflammation. If he takes the medicine and takes care of his hand, it will soon be over. In response, the protagonist thanked him and said, after all, it's still too early for him to try to repeat the technique. At that moment, the protagonist heard a voice behind the screen. Someone like him could easily become a red prisoner. The MC abruptly pulled the screen aside and asked, who's here? He was surprised to notice Daesung and said, it's him, the Snaggletooth. And Daesung, whose entire body was bandaged, waved his healthy hand and said that they haven't seen each other for a long time. Minsu? The protagonist asked, what happened to him? Daesung replied, he unsuccessfully attacked that Kangmin guy. That's the result. In any case, he's grateful for getting his revenge. The MC replied that he wasn't taking revenge because of him. He came closer and asked, after all, who the red prisoners were. Daesung only replied, if he became his subordinate, he'd find out, and the main character took out a feather and began to tickle his leg. Daesung started laughing hysterically and shouted, stop it, he'll tell everything. He explained that the red prisoners are especially dangerous criminals who can't be released into society. These are prisoners personally managed by the director. They aren't just kept separately, they are given special tasks, and these tasks are related to managing their release. Those who accumulate positive points are put in situations where they inevitably receive penalties. If that doesn't work, other methods are used. The MC asked, other methods? Daesung replied, he must have heard the rumors. They say that no one leaves the correctional center normally. Those who have accumulated all the points or are about to be released are crippled. If they have to be released, they are made to be unable to commit crimes. These are the red prisoners, and he is the main candidate for the next time. Meanwhile, in a separate room, Hyoshin was playing the slot machine and said, it's funny, he didn't think Kangmin would actually lose. The guy was sitting on the couch and adjusting his hair asked, is the task difficult? Maybe just pit them against each other? Jisoo was sitting opposite and said, they're temporarily canceling the candidate election. A major obstacle appeared. Yoo Sung-gil returned. 2 weeks had passed since the incident on the construction team. Kangmin was sent to the punishment cell for a fight on the construction team. Perhaps because of rumors that the protagonist had defeated Kangmin, the other prisoners' attitudes towards him had recently changed. After some time, he coughed into his fist and turning to the others said, so, they'll start work. Today, too, no incidents. The others shouted, yes, sir, chief. He became the new chief of the construction team. After some time, they were walking down the corridor and the prisoners were discussing the protagonist. One of them said, he didn't think Minsu would become the chief of the construction team. It's more fun to work with him as chief, and sitting in the cell is boring. But is it true that he defeated Kangmin? Rumor has it that Seijin did it. Seijin just finished him off, that's all. Seijin asked, what? One of them asked, did he say something wrong? He replied, he helped him, and he. At that moment, Sung-gil appeared in front of them and said, stop moving. They stopped in surprise and turned around. He shouted, violation of regulations, disobeying a warden's order, talking in formation. At that moment, Yoo-sung laughed awkwardly and said, he apologizes, they just returned from volunteer work. Sung-gil asked, where is the greeting? Yoo-sung immediately corrected himself, saluted him and shouted, excuse me, this is Sergeant Yoo-sung. But the next second, a baton hit him in the face. MC looked at it perplexed and Sung-gil said, back to square one. Yoo-sung on all fours thought, is that the warden? Just like that, for no reason. Sung-gil shouted, back to square one. Sergeant Yoo-sung, can't he hear him? Sung-gil was the deputy director of the correctional center. The prisoners present looked at him, perplexed. Then Sung-gil frowned and said, he wanted to train the new sergeant a little, and he apparently has a good look. He turned around in surprise and asked, huh. At that moment, he heard the protagonist shout, hey, idiot. Another prisoner covered his mouth and Seijin said, he apologizes, he's completely out of his mind. The protagonist tried to shout something, but was held back. The next second, another guard shouted, Deputy Director, the director is still waiting for him. Sung-gil calmly replied, that's right, he's been too late, they should go right away. At that moment, Yoo-sung adjusted his glasses and thought, Deputy Director? But the deputy director's seat had been empty all this time. Damn it, another problem had appeared. After some time, Sung-gil entered the office and, saluting, said, Lieutenant Colonel Sung-gil, effective immediately, he returns to duty at the Correctional and Rehabilitation Center. The director was sitting at his desk and, smiling, said, excellent, Lieutenant Colonel. Has the problem been successfully resolved? Sung-gil replied, the problem has been successfully resolved. However, while he was gone, it seemed discipline here had seriously weakened. That's where he would start. The director exclaimed, no, he just got back. Back to work already? Maybe he should slow down? Maybe he should give him another vacation. Sung-gil began tapping his hand with his baton and said, it's fine. His only reward is turning trash back into people. At that moment, the principal thought, this is going to be tough. That nerd is back. Sometime later, Sungul was giving a lecture. He explained that intertextual context can be understood through the mutual influence of literary works or by comparing works related in content or form through another aspect. Therefore, works included in the minimum exam should not be studied in isolation, but rather, based on the studied context, one should apply knowledge to solve problems. He began drawing on the board, and at that moment, Changji began to doze off from boredom. Sungul said, just now, in the first stanza, they saw lines 1 or 2. The lines are similar. Thus, by adopting the original sentence structure, rhythm is formed and poetic meaning is enhanced. The next second, a computer chair flew across the classroom and landed right in front of Changji's face. Sungul, enraged, said, if he doesn't want to continue being trash, he shouldn't sleep in class. Changji, frightened, apologized. After a while, the MC stood at the stove and thought, the more he thinks, the harder everything becomes. Why should he and the others have to go through this? At that moment, he heard a voice, stay out of this. The protagonist turned around and asked, what's wrong? At that moment, Sungil dipped Dubo's head into the boiling mixture and asked, who gave him permission to distribute food without permission? The protagonist thought, the vice principal? Sungil lifted Dubo's head and said, if he does that again, next time they'll find his head in the soup. Dubo apologized. After that, Sungil headed for the exit. After the vice principal's arrival, life in the correctional center began to change little by little. The prisoners were indignant. Damn, why do you have to stand at attention? In the cell, they always stand at attention until lights out. They have to march in a strict line down the hallway, as precise as a ruler. But for them, the problem was far more serious. If the previous training sessions had been just fun for the director, then the training from the deputy director was pure hellish torment. They were all taken outside in rainy weather. Sungil put his foot on the lower back of one of the prisoners and shouted, he has to keep his head down correctly. Don't arch his back. MC, whose head began to sink into the dirty water, thought, damn, the water is going to come out of his nose. He has to breathe through his mouth. The water has been out for a long time. The next second, Hyunjin spat out the dirty water and said, he apologizes. Dirty water got in his nose. Before he could finish speaking, the guard hit him on the back with his baton and shouted, who gave him permission to raise his head? He has to keep his head down again. He has to keep his head down, he told you, you idiot. If he can't, he'll help. The protagonist looked away. The warden grabbed Hyunjin by the head and started pressing it into the dirt. He stomped on him with his foot and shouted, that's why he has to hold on, he said. The next second, Hyunjin spat out dirty water again. Then the protagonist jumped on the warden in an attack and shouted, stop it. He lifted Hyunjin up and asked, is he okay? The next second, Sungil hit his hand with his baton and said, disobeying orders and attacking the warden, it's unlikely to go away so easily. The MC lifted Hyunjin up and shouted, even so, this is too much. He almost died after all. At that moment, Yusong stood in front of him and said, he apologizes, sir. In fact, he will personally teach him a good lesson so that he doesn't dare again. The vice principal shouted, yes, that's right. Then he will rely on him. Yusong replied, yes, sir. He is grateful. At that moment he thought, he got away with it. It seems he managed to wriggle out of it. The next second, Sungil handed him a baton and said, take this, sergeant. He always wondered how he usually deals with the guys. Let him show. The next second, Yusong stood in front of the protagonist, who was kneeling, and Sungil added, right here. Yusong said with fear, beat Minsu right here. He looked at him. Then the protagonist looked seriously at Yusong. Yusong was surprised. Minsu, him? The next second, Sungil asked, what? Since they ask, he can't show it in front of everyone? Yusong adjusted his glasses and answered, that's not true. He just thought of the best way to conduct educational work. Now, he will show everything in his own way. The next second, Yusong grabbed the baton and hit the protagonist. The protagonist flew to the side. The warden said, get up, and immediately added, does he really fall after such pokes? The MC, with trembling hands, sat up and muttered, he was about to. But the next second, Yusong kicked him in the face. Not long before this, Yusong was standing near the entrance to the shower and said, after work and a shower, quickly to the cell. Then he went inside and, looking at the protagonist sitting on the bench, asked, how long will he hang around here? The protagonist answered, he needs to say something. Yusong clarified. Say? The protagonist admitted he thought it all over. Because Yusong covers for him, he often gets into dangerous situations, and recently the vice principal brutally beat him. Yusong smiled and said, what is he talking about? What nonsense. He shouldn't worry about such things. He will somehow prevent the guys from going through such a thing. Then the MC approached him and shouted, that's the problem. Why should he cover for them? He's a supervisor, not a nanny to take care of him like a child. The protagonist slapped his chest and added, he promised to get him out of here. Yusong was surprised. What? The protagonist continued, to do that, they must completely hide the fact that they are brothers, and he is obliged to strictly fulfill his role as a supervisor. So he must promise him, if a situation arises again where he needs to be punished, he will play his part. He extended his little finger to Yusong, and the supervisor thought, when did this guy grow so big? After that, they crossed their little fingers. In the present tense, Yusong shouted, is he really falling from this? Get up, he thought to himself. Don't get up. Then he shouted, come on, and mentally added, Minsu, just lie down. Don't get up, he's asking. The next second, the MC rose to his feet and noticed. The instructor tried it on himself, and it wasn't that painful. Yusong thought, don't get up. He said it. The next second, The guard swung his leg and delivered a powerful blow. He asked, "Doesn't it hurt?" Then he swung his baton and barked, "Doesn't it hurt either?" But the next second, Sungil grabbed his hand and firmly said, "Enough, enough." Yusong muttered, "We need to discipline him properly so that he doesn't even think of disobeying again." Sungil replied, "He understands his intention. But what's the point of teaching someone who is already unconscious?" Yusong asked. "Maybe we should throw this idiot in the punishment cell?" He grabbed the protagonist by the hair, but Sungil objected. "No, first we need to provide medical attention. If he dies, he will have a headache." Yusong responded, "Yes, sir. After the procedure, he will be right back." After that, Yusong pulled the protagonist by the hair and headed for the exit. After some time, the director looked out the window and said, "The vice director does not understand the aesthetics of bullying. If they torture his rat like this, he will not be able to play with it later." He was surprised to hear the supervisor enter his room. The director asked, "What is it?" A subordinate ran in and handed him a folder with documents. "Here is Sergeant Yusong's personal file and the results of the additional inspection, Mr. Director." The director took the folder and noted, "The work was completed faster than expected. You will take a look." Then he frowned and exclaimed, "What? Is this true?" A childhood dream surfaced in the protagonist's memory, a time before he and his brother ended up in the orphanage. Back then, his brother often carried him on his back. In the present tense, the protagonist opened his good eye and thought, "Yes, that's what his back used to be like." Although it seemed to have become a little wider. "Huh?" he cried out sharply. "What? Why is he on his back?" Yusong, supporting the protagonist by the legs, asked, "Has he finally woken up?" The protagonist screamed, "He has to let him go." The guard replied, "They're almost there. He has to be patient for a little while." The protagonist muttered, "Is he crying?" Yusong clarified, "Does he want to disappear like this?" "He's not crying." The MC mentally scolded himself. He dragged his brother into this mess. Yusong snapped, he was the one who beat him up, so why should he apologize? The protagonist countered, he was the one who forced him to do it, so he's apologizing. There are still many situations ahead where they will have to lie to each other. He firmly thought, "Anyway, let's not give up. He will definitely get out of this hellhole." After a while, a sign appeared on the door. "No entry except authorized personnel, controlled area." Yusong peered around the corner and thought, the guards who stood at this door recently disappeared. Something changed? There must be red prisoners and the secrets of the correctional center inside. To check, he needs to go in. He took a step forward, then stopped in surprise and mentally exclaimed, "Huh? The deputy director? What is he doing here?" The next second, the chief swiped his card on the device. The doors opened. Yusong thought, is he also connected to the red prisoners? Suddenly Sungil asked, is he curious about what's inside? He turned around and clarified, does he want to go in together? After that, he followed Sungil and thought, why is he here too? He cannot figure out the meaning of this man's actions. Then Sungil opened the next door, and they went inside. Yusong looked around and mentally muttered, but this is an empty room. Sungil thoughtfully said, he knew it. The director has already managed to lay his paw. After that, he looked at Yusong and asked, has he satisfied his curiosity? There is no need to dig deeper. It is dangerous. Sungil walked forward and Yusong turned to him and asked, is this a warning? Then why did he show him this place? Sungil replied, well, to him, he's probably an enemy who forced him to beat up his own brother. Yusong wondered, surprised, does he know? Then he stepped decisively forward, and the deputy director added, since he himself had come to hell, he should at least pretend to be the devil. Otherwise, they'll find out anyway. After some time, Yusong asked, where was the deputy director anyway? He hadn't seen him once since his appointment. The warden standing nearby replied, yes, he might not have known. He was on trial on suspicion of extorting bribes. Yusong asked in amazement, extorting bribes? The warden explained, there was a denunciation that he took money from the parents of prisoners. But now, the court has acquitted him, and he's back. Rumor has it that this was a ploy by the director to get rid of him. Yusong thought, are they enemies? It's too early to draw conclusions. The next second, one of the prisoners grabbed his cellmate and shouted, oh, he's an idiot. The warden was surprised. What's wrong? The prisoner screamed. He was playing the Joker. His opponent gave him the middle finger and barked, what are you talking about, you freak? Shut up. But the next second, the protagonist stepped between them and pulled them apart, holding each one back with his hand. He firmly declared, it's work time now, put off the fighting. At that very second, one of the prisoners swung his fist at him and shouted, he needs to get out. What kind of warden is he? If you can't even open your mouth? He used to cut people's throats on the outside. The protagonist calmly replied that he wasn't interested in his past. Let him talk nicely, and then he'll stop. At that moment, one of the prisoners swung his fist and barked at him to shut his mouth. But the next second, the protagonist deftly dodged, and his fist flew with all his might into the opponent's face. He declared that since he was new, he asked only one thing, that he focus on the task at hand while working. The prisoner muttered a frightened apology and promised to focus on his work. His hand trembled slightly, and a thought flashed through his mind. He thought he was weak, but he was actually much stronger than he thought. Then one of the guards folded his arms and said with satisfaction, okay, everyone, get to work. The MC echoed these words. The guard remarked that since Minsu had taken over the construction team, they wouldn't have to interfere. Quite convenient. Yusong nodded silently in agreement and caught himself thinking that Minsu had noticeably changed since that day. Had he matured, perhaps? For someone like that, Minsu deserved a chance to earn positive points faster. Sometime later in the management office, Yusong stood before the guards and reported, The target of the upcoming civil support was a village damaged by the recent flood. The restoration work would be carried out by the construction, repair, and culinary teams. Sungil immediately spoke up. What if the prisoners escaped the premises? Who would be held responsible then? The director calmly replied that, according to his information, the last time the work at the shelter had gone smoothly. If they selected people based on recommendations, everything should be fine. Yusong confirmed. Yes, this time they would only take those who were seriously aiming for points, prisoners with high ratings, and those personally recommended by the guards. He adjusted his glasses and added, if the operation was successful, it would be an excellent opportunity to create a positive image of the correctional center. The director nodded approvingly. The preparations were indeed excellent. They must proceed strictly according to plan. However, he needed to speak with Sergeant Yusong alone. Yusong answered clearly, "Yes, sir, Director." The remaining guards immediately left the room. Sungil, leaving, paused for a moment at the door, glanced around the room and firmly closed the door behind him. After this, Yusong turned to the director. "Yes, Mr. Director, he wanted to see him?" The director stepped closer and quietly noticed. His tie was askew. He carefully adjusted it, and Yusong thanked him discreetly. Then the director quietly added that he had long been curious why such an elite as Yusong had transferred here in the first place, and now he finally understood. Yusong winced slightly. "Excuse me, what did he mean?" The director calmly explained. Wasn't his father a member of the Kangmante board, the sworn enemy of the president who founded this correctional center? After a while, the convoys of buses carrying prisoners set off. The protagonist, looking around, asked if anyone had seen his brother. He was nowhere to be seen. Shouldn't he be in their group? Sijun, sitting nearby, shrugged and assumed he most likely went in another car. Someone asked, "Who is this?" MC glanced at Nick, who had settled into the next chair and leaned his head limply on his neighbor's shoulder. He mumbled awkwardly that he didn't even know who it was. A confused thought flashed through his mind. Why was he even sleeping, leaning against his shoulder? After a while, Dubo folded his arms and asked how they would start cooking. Choker picked up a wrench and muttered that there wasn't much food here, so they should finish it quickly. The others responded in unison that they would do everything right. The protagonist suddenly raised his fist and loudly declared that from this moment on, they were all at war. With this cry, he rushed forward, and the others, not far behind, rushed after him, shouting words of approval. The thought flashed through his mind, yes, now they really were at war. They all grabbed shovels and began shoveling the water. The protagonist shouted loudly for the mud flows to be driven in, and the others responded that everything was under control. A clear image formed in his mind, a battle with this stubborn, thick, mountainous mud water. Due to record-breaking rainfall that had lasted for several days, the village had been thoroughly flooded. Several prisoners were pulling out soaking wet items. One of them angrily threw it down. This can't be repaired. Meanwhile, Dubo laid out food and urged everyone to conserve their strength, take more, and not be shy. At one point, one of the prisoners confidently declared that it would most likely be enough to simply replace the fuse. His cellmate immediately picked up the necessary item and noted with relief. Fortunately, the water hadn't reached the circuit board. The next second, Nick sighed heavily. He sat on the stairs, staring blankly ahead, and muttered under his breath. He didn't even understand how he got here. Meanwhile, the protagonist stubbornly wiped away the water, shouting that they needed to scrub even harder to get everything truly clean. Nick glanced at him and caught himself thinking that Minsu really did have leadership qualities, since both the guys and the construction crews obeyed him. Okay, so be it. But then, that meant his main target was that guy? He glanced at the other two prisoners. Then Shungchul picked up something and asked hesitantly, would that even be possible? The choker firmly replied that, whatever the case, they had to try to do at least what they could. Nick sighed again and wondered, when would he finally be able to do something meaningful? After a while, the MC carefully took a bite of the dish and paused for a moment. Was it even edible? The texture seemed unfamiliar, almost strange. But as he watched the other prisoners calmly sitting on the ground and eating, he realized it tasted even better than he'd expected. The next moment, he winced at the sharp, indignant cry of the old man. He pointed his finger at the guard and screamed indignantly, what kind of words were they, and how dare they drive him out of his own home? The guard remained calm and explained that the recent rainstorms had weakened the ground around the house, and that there was a risk of collapse. The old man flushed and screamed. He'd lived in this house for decades, and nothing had ever happened. The guard patiently added that it was merely a temporary relocation, for safety's sake. Before he could finish his sentence, the old man exploded with another scream. What temporary shelter? Didn't he understand how inconvenient it was? Why should he trust these people if they even stole his wallet? Then Sungil came up to him and asked, the wallet, is he sure? Is he absolutely sure that they stole it? He replied, he let them go so that they could get away, and they took it and disappeared. If not them, then who? Then he pointed his finger at Sejin and shouted, him, that lanky guy stole it. He told me criminals are no good. Then Sungil said, that's why he was against civil support. Shin looked at him in surprise and asked, huh? He added, no matter how many good deeds you do, once you commit a crime, you can't atone for it. In these people's eyes, they are just criminals. And then the old man shouted, and he ended up in a correctional center for theft, right? should I tear his head off to sober him up? He held Seijun by his clothes, but the next second Hyunjin said, he's apologizing. He has a brown wallet, right? The old man shouted. Who the hell is he? He stole it. The prisoner smiled awkwardly and said, the wallet was lying on the road, so he left it at the store. He's apologizing. He shouldn't have touched it without asking, but he thought it might be washed away by the dirt. The old man shouted, if he's lying, he knows it himself. If even one penny is missing, how can you trust the words of these criminal scum? Then Seijun thanked Hyunjin, and he replied, he just told it like it was. The next second, an old woman approached them, and handing Seijun some corn said, eat this and forgive the grump. He was surprised, and she added, after her leg was crippled on a motorcycle driven by the same guys, she became like this. Then Seijun tried the corn, and the old lady smiled and asked, well, was it delicious? He replied, delicious. Meanwhile, in the office, Yusung took off his headphones and sighing loudly, said, and they sent him to such a place. He thought, he knew that one day it would be revealed. It's not so easy to hide the fact that his father is a member of parliament. Not long before, the director asked, is it right to treat such a precious child like this? He is removing himself from this civic mission. Then Yusung asked, is the fact that he is the son of a member of parliament a problem? Is he hinting that he might have impure intentions? The director smiled and replied, he's just uprooting the weeds before they grow. In the present tense, Yusung thought, so that means he doesn't know yet that he and Minsu are brothers? That's how it should be. Then he remembered Sungil's words and thought, then how did the vice director know that they were brothers? He needed to find out. Meanwhile, Sungil stood in the pouring rain and wondered what his intentions were. Then Shin approached him and said, all the guys are here. He asked, have you checked the GPS? He replied, yes, everything is fine, no problems. Then the deputy director turned around and shouted, looks like it's starting to rain again. They will be moving to the temporary shelter today. They are tracking their location via GPS, so they shouldn't worry about anything. With these words, he looked at the prisoners, and they replied, yes, sir. Sungil thought, it's raining pretty hard. I hope nothing happens on the way back. The next second, a huge stream of mud water, along with chunks of soil, tumbled over the cliff. One of the prisoners shouted, it's a mud avalanche. Another prisoner shouted, isn't this that old man's house? The building began to collapse at that moment, and the old man, who was being led out by the guards, shouted, they have to let him go. The guard held his hand and said, there's a risk of another collapse. Don't come any closer. But the old man kept shouting, they have to let him go. His wife is there. Her legs are sore. She can't get out on her own. Sungil, hearing this, looked sharply at Shin and he shouted, quick, call the rescuers. We can't let the guys get close. He replied, yes, sir. The prisoners watching what was happening said, the mud is still getting worse. It looks like the house is about to collapse. And the next second, Seijun tied his shoelaces tighter. And then the protagonist asked, Seijun, what is he thinking? Really him. The next second, Seijun jumped up and ran into the destroyed building. The protagonist called out to him anxiously and shouted, stop, it's dangerous. But he didn't listen. He kicked down the door and shouted, Grandma. Oh, he looked around the room and thought, where is she? He needs to find her quickly. The next second, the ceiling above him began to collapse. He looked at it in fear. Meanwhile, the old man shouted, old woman, they have to let him go. The old woman is inside, but the guards continued to hold him. One of them said, you can't, he'll get hurt in there too. Then Sungil shouted, the weight of the earth is pressing down on the house now. There's a person with limited mobility in there. If the roads are flooded, they need to at least get helicopters up. At that moment, Shin came up to him and called out, there's a serious problem. He asked, what's the matter? He answered, the guys went into the house. Sungil was surprised. What? Who exactly came in? He answered, Seijun and Minsu. At that moment, the protagonist grabbed Seijun and threw him aside. Seijun looked at the rubble in horror and thought, the ceiling would have collapsed if he had been crushed there. Then he asked, but why did he climb up there? The protagonist answered, he's the chief. He has to protect it. He should put this nonsense aside for later. First he needs to find Grandma. Where haven't they looked yet? He looked to the side and said, there's only one left there. Seijun shouted, he sees. Grandma was lying under a concrete slab. Seijun shouted, Grandma, wake up. After that, they lifted the slab and Seijun threw Grandma onto his back. They headed for the exit. The protagonist said, at least she's breathing. Seijun said, the roof has collapsed. At that moment, the building continued to collapse. The prisoners watching what was happening said, Minsu and Seijun are there. What? The next second, Hyuk grabbed the roof, screaming loudly. He began to lift it. The others shouted, how can we lift it? He'll hurt himself like that. The next second, Hyuk looked in surprise at Dubo, who was also helping him hold up the roof. He tensed up and screamed loudly. They were holding up the roof together. And then a prisoner from the culinary team said, their chef volunteered. They should help too. Then the choker said, if the repair team chickens out and sits out, it will be a shame. His subordinate said, that's right, Chief. Everyone together, we need to push. The prisoners ran to the roof one after another. At that moment, Seijun said, a cavity has formed. Now, he ran out of the building. The protagonist also ran after him and fell to the ground. The prisoner shouted, we got out. We need to move Grandma. Yes, sir. Then one of the prisoners from the cooking team raised his fist in the air and joyfully shouted, hooray, they're saved. They raised the roof. Dubo shouted, madmen. No time to rejoice. We need to run. He grabbed Minsu and Seijun and rushed forward. The next second, the roof collapsed, and the prisoners were talking among themselves. Is this true? This is the first time he's seen houses collapse like this. They almost perished. After some time, an ambulance arrived. They put the grandmother on a stretcher. The old man approached her and shouted, "Old woman, wake up!" And she opened her eyes and said she already thought she was dead. How did she survive? The old man took her hand and said, "Old woman." At that moment, Shin looked at Sungil and asked, "Won't he punish them?" The boys acted without permission. In response, he remained silent, and he added, "While the vice director was absent from the correctional center, the boys changed a little. And the reason for this is not the vice director or the deputy, but that guy, Minsu, from the moment he appeared. Perhaps it is not adults who can change children, but children like them." The next day, the sky was incredibly clear, as if mocking the furious downpour. They still continued their civic mission, only some things had changed. Volunteers also joined, and the way the locals looked at them changed slightly. The old women handed out food and said, "Eat more. If there is not enough, they should say." Then the warden approached them and said they should not give them this. The old lady, holding a ladle, asked, "Why are they so strict? You should at least eat a watermelon to get your strength." Then the old lady shoved the spoon with food into the guard's mouth and said, "Guys, they should eat while they work. Isn't it hard for them?" Meanwhile, a voice came from the radio. The chairman of the Yuxon Corporation, Moon Hosik, again did not appear in court due to health reasons. The old people said, "Yes, adults are worse than children. They are the ones who need to be sent to correctional centers. Son, he needs to eat and rest a little." Hyunjin turned around and answered, "Yes." At that moment, Seimin handed him a refreshing drink and said, "Fruit punch." Seijin was sitting by the tree and asked, "When did she manage to come?" She replied, she was not even surprised anymore. He said, he knew she would show up, since Yusung didn't come. Then she patted him on the head and said, "By the way, he's getting great reviews. They say he saved Grandma." She sat down opposite him and asked, "Isn't it old people he doesn't like?" He replied, yes, he still doesn't like them, but he couldn't pass by a grandmother who had shown him kindness. She said, "He's a good boy, but brother, next time he shouldn't rush into dangerous places." With these words, she left, and Seijin stayed with a glass of drink. As night fell, they remained in the city gym. The protagonist lay on the mat and thought, there are 2 days left until the end of the mission. It would be good if there were no incidents. He said, "It's time to go to the toilet." Then he looked at the empty space and thought, where is Hyunjin? Did he also go to the toilet? At that moment, Hyunjin ran through the tall grass through the forest. Meanwhile, Yusung made himself some noodles and said he was going to have a ramen snack. Then he noticed a call on his phone and asked, "Warden Shin?" He answered the phone and said, "Sergeant Yusung from the Community Services Department of the Correctional Testing Center." Shin yelled, "Warden, he has to help. He's in big trouble." Yusung was surprised. What's wrong with him that he's yelling like that? Shin shouted, "Because Warden Kang was exiled, he will now be held accountable. What is happening to his subordinates?" At that moment, the protagonist approached him and asked, "Please be quiet, everyone will hear. He will explain everything." Yusung thought, "Minsu?" He asked, "What's the matter, Minsu? What happened?" MC took the phone and said, "The thing is, Hyunjin has disappeared. It seems he escaped." Meanwhile, he took off his convict clothes and took other things out of the trash. He turned to the girl. "Excuse me." She turned around and asked, "Huh?" He asked, "How can he get to Yuksok Hospital?" She thought, "Poor thing, is he a street kid?" Then she pointed to the bus and said, "Get on this bus. It's a 30-minute ride." He thanked her, and then the bus passed by, stopping at that stop. But Hyunjin remained standing. He touched his empty pocket and said, "What to do? There is no car. I need to get money." At that moment, Yusung was tracking his location. He looked at the monitor screen and thought he couldn't have gone too far from the work area. He asked Supervisor Shin to buy them time until the morning, so there is still some reserve. He's now 4 hours away by car. Supervisor Shin is also having trouble getting away. Then he sighed and said, "Sorry, there is no other way. Seimin has to bring Hyunjin back." At that moment, she was sitting on a motorcycle and turning around asked, "What? Is he coming too?" Seijin crouched behind her, putting on his helmet, and said, "Enough chatter, let's go." He thought, only he didn't have time to apologize to Hyunjin. At that moment, the street TVs were showing the news, and people around were saying, "He told you, these rich idiots are really letting loose. This is definitely a trick to avoid trial." At that moment, Hyunjin leaned over to the nearby vending machine and, looking at the coin, thought, 51 for the ride, 12.50 short, but at least there is something. At that moment, a man approached him and asked, "Do you need money? If he wants, he will give him pocket money." Hyunjin asked, "Really, he will give him money?" The man smiled lustfully and asked, "But in exchange he will become his secret friend?" Hyunjin asked, "What is a secret friend?" The man pointed to the side and said, "It means having fun with the uncle over there." Hyunjin said, "He doesn't think that place is for games." The man said, "They should have fun with the uncle." The next second, Hyunjin screamed in fear, ran and shouted, "He is not one of those. He found the wrong one." The man extended his hand to him and shouted, "Come back." After a while, Hyunjin stopped in an alley, trying to breathe, and thought, is he really following? But he needs to somehow get the fare. Where? The buses will stop running soon. Then he stopped next to a homeless man sitting on the ground. He thought, the homeless man is sleeping. So, he looked at the bowl in front of him, which contained money. He reached out his hand to it. Meanwhile, Seijin leaned under the machine and asked, "Is Hyunjin here?" Seimin asked, "Will he be here?" She looked at her phone and added, "This place is originally not for people." Seijin said, "Although he is not like that, he could have come here." She said, "Sit still, she will check the GPS." Then she showed him the screen and said, "Data from the supervisor came. It seems he moved a little, but he's definitely somewhere nearby." Seijin stood up and said, "Okay, we need to give him some time. He hasn't smoked for a long time." She took the lollipop out of her mouth and asked, This is not a cigarette." He asked, "Why is a heavy smoker without cigarettes?" She answered, "She quit." And he said irritably, "Damn, who taught her to smoke? Why did she quit?" She asked, "Why is he angry? If you want to kiss a non-smoker, it's better to quit." He looked at her in surprise and asked, "And who is this non-smoking idiot?" She walked on and said, "What difference does it make? We need to quickly find Hyunjin." He shouted, Who is this idiot he's asking?" At that moment, Hyunjin jerked his hand and said, "No, you can't do this. It's better to think of another way." Then he was surprised, looking at the man, and thought, was he asleep? And the homeless man handed him a lot of money and asked, "Do you need money? You can take it." Hyunjin said, frightened, "No, he was wrong. It's probably harder for him." And he replied, "He doesn't look so good. It's clear there's a reason. You'll pay him back later, okay?" Hyunjin accepted the money and thanked him. After some time, Seijin and Seimin entered an alley. He asked, "Is this the right place?" She looked at the phone screen and said, "The GPS shows that this is his last location." He asked, "Is there no one here?" She asked, "Maybe he moved again?" And then they heard shouts behind them. "No, he won't give it back." The thug started beating the homeless man and shouting, he must give money for cigarettes. It's not his money anyway. He must share with them. They need gas too. And Seijin walked ahead and said, "Don't pay attention. We need to go. It looks like he's not here. Let's go." And Seimin stopped and asked, "Maybe he is?" At that moment, Hyunjin grabbed one of the men and shouted, "You can't touch the uncle because of money." Seimin asked, "Isn't that guy who's getting beaten Hyunjin?" They looked at him, and Seijin shouted, "We found him, Hyunjin." At that moment, a thug was hitting Hyunjin on the head and shouting, "What is he doing, little one? He ruined his new clothes." Another thug swung his fist and shouted, "Get lost." Hyunjin looked in surprise at Seijin, who grabbed the man by the arm and said, "Stop tormenting the homeless man. Get out of here." He was indignant. "What now?" At that moment, he heard a shout. "Seijin." The men surrounded Seimin, and one of them said, "Come on, let's give her a ride on his motorcycle. Let's go, let's ride together. You can jump on the back." "How cool is that?" She just sighed in response. Seijin asked, "Well, are you really going to touch Hyunjin?" "Okay, we all need to work together." Then the men turned to Seijin and shouted, "Oh, he's a bastard. He thinks there's some kind of losers." After a while, the beaten bandits were on their knees, saying, "They are losers. They're asking for forgiveness." At that moment, Hyunjin approached the beaten man and asked, "Uncle, how is he? Is he alive?" He replied, "Everything's fine. They beat him up every day. Thanks for helping me out." Then Seimin approached them and said, "Hyunjin, they don't know why he left, but he has to come back with them. If you go back now, no one will know anything." Then she answered the phone and the guard asked, "Why?" They found him, but he doesn't want to go back. Seimin said, "She needs to run somewhere on business. Just help me buy some time. She'll be back as soon as she can." After that, they hurried on their way, and Yusung said, "Okay, but what to do?" He looked out the window and noticing the car said, "The problems are more serious than he expected, Director." At that moment, the director looked out of the car and waving his hand shouted, "Sergeant Yusong, I'm going on an inspection. He has to keep the correctional center under control." Yusong said, "He's already gone to the work area." After a while, the car stopped near the medical center. They went into the elevator and Seimin asked, "So, his father is in this hospital. What floor?" He answered, "The 16th. Seijin asked, 16 VIP? Seimin was surprised. Wow, Hyunjin is from a rich family? They rented a VIP room? He answered, "This hospital is his father's property. He has several more." She asked, "Is his father a doctor?" He answered, "No, not really." Seijin asked, "Not a doctor, but he owns hospitals. Stop making things up. As always. Last time you said that Aba World and Dade Tower are his too." Hyunjin started breathing loudly, and then the system announced, "The 16th floor." Seijin added, "He needs to make up a more believable lie so that at least someone will believe him. If he's lying, his trip to apologize was pointless, right?" The doors opened, and they noticed a huge number of security guards. Seijin asked, "Are they on the wrong floor?" And then Hyunjin walked forward. Seijin shouted, "Wait, it looks like they've come to the wrong floor." Hyunjin said, "He didn't mean to deceive them." The next second, the guards bowed and shouted, "He's arrived." Hyunjin said, "He asks that they let him see his father." At that moment, Yusong was watching his whereabouts and said, "The work area is far from here. It's about 2 hours before the director arrives. Is that enough time?" He grabbed his head and added, "No, maybe not. What to think of to detain the director?" Meanwhile, in the car, the supervisor turned around and called the director. He asked, "Huh?" The supervisor replied, "He apologizes, but there's a slight delay." The director asked, "Was there an accident?" The supervisor replied, "No, he must look ahead." The director asked, "Ahead?" At that moment, several units of military equipment were driving down the street, and the director asked, "What is that?" His subordinate replied, "It looks like night military exercises." The director shouted indignantly, "What? He didn't hear that training was taking place in this area. Is there no way around?" The supervisor replied, "Well, there is another way. At that moment, Yu-sung was talking on the phone and said, "Thank you, father. He apologizes for disturbing you, then he'll call later and try another route." After some time, the supervisor turned to the director and said, "Mr. Director, they're late again." The director shouted, "Why? They've already circled the training areas." The supervisor replied, "Yes, there are people sleeping on the road. A huge number of cyclists were riding in front of them," and he said, "Take only one route, so what should they do?" At that moment, Shin was doing exercises and said, "He's leading the cycling club. He's unlikely to make it fast. He's afraid he'll get there soon." At that moment, Yu-sung looked at his phone screen and said, "All he can do is pray that they find Hunjin before the director arrives." Meanwhile, Hyunjin went inside and said, "They said he lost consciousness. Is he okay now?" His father lit a cigarette, walked over to the window, and said, "The president is trying to get a hold of him at all costs, so he's lying low." Hyunjin said, "He was worried, but he's glad he's okay." Hosik turned around and asked, "But why is he, who should be in the center, here?" Hyunjin replied, "He's just worried about his father. He promised to let him out, but then he disappeared." His father said, "She broke the law. She should be punished, right?" Hyunjin widened his eyes in surprise and asked, "What?" Hosik added, "He was in gangs, beat people, committed acts unworthy of a human being, and even went so far as to commit murder. No matter how well he managed business and politics, that's no excuse." Then Hyunjin said, "That's right, the culprit must be punished. But his father still doesn't understand. If he committed a crime, he must answer for it. So why should he pay, and not his brother?" He looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. When Hyunjin was younger, he didn't understand many things. Why did his grandfather, father, and older brother eat there, while his mother, he, and his older sister ate here? One dinner, he asked, "Why do they have less food?" His sister said, "Hyunjin, the adults can hear, he should speak more quietly." And then Sam raised his glass and shouted, "Hey, water!" Lily put the carafe down for him and said, "Here you go." Hyunjin thought, why does the second brother treat his older sister like a servant? The next second, his grandfather slapped Lily in the face and shouted, "Their heir should get the best. Doesn't their firstborn deserve special treatment?" She smiled, holding the carafe, and said, "She's sorry." He looked at his grandson and asked, "Doesn't their heir need some rice yet?" "Mom, their heir's soup has gotten cold." The grandson replied, "Yes, father, the richest family, the envy of everyone." He and his sister hated this house. After some time, Hyunjin, in tears, covered himself with his hands and screamed, "Brother, enough, it hurts, it's his fault." Sam kicked him and screamed, "Who asked him to get good grades? Because of him, his eldest son should also study." But the next second, Lilia hit Sam in the face and screamed, "What is he doing to Hunjin?" The next second, a trickle of blood poured out of Sam's nose, and he was surprised. Nosebleed? He started to run away and screamed, "He'll remember this. He'll tell Grandpa everything." "Grandpa!" Then Lilia grabbed her brother's face and asked, "Why did this happen?" He answered, "His grades are better than his brother's." He got angry. She said, "You're a fool. He only knows how to hit with his fists." After some time, Hyunjin opened the door to the room a crack, and Lilia was lying on the floor and said, "You shouldn't turn on the light." He called her, and she turned away slightly, showing her wounded face, and said, She asked him not to turn on the light. He asked, was it because of him that her grandfather beat her? She answered, everything is fine. Someday the day will come when grandfather will acknowledge them. She hugged her brother. He and his sister learned to survive. Time passed, and Hyunjin became a high school student. The brother, who was spoiled by everyone, began to go too far. He gathered in packs and beat people, did things unacceptable for a person. At one point, the police grabbed him and shouted, "We must arrest him immediately." Then he raised his voice at them. Does he know who he is? He must call home. Grandfather will sort everything out. In the end, he got to the illegal stuff. After some time, Lilia happily held out the document and shouted, "Grandfather, father, they must see." She got into university. Grandfather said, "Ah, their granddaughter. Well done." Then he grabbed her by the shoulder and shouted, "But there's something more important." She exclaimed, "What?" He said, "She's the eldest daughter in the family. For the sake of the heir, she must do anything." She asked, "What does he mean?" He added, "If she can't, nothing can be done. She will have to pay for the youngest Hyunjin." That day, his sister threw herself under a car. No one in their family paid attention to her. The sister took all the blame for her brother and became a vegetable. Then Hyunjin walked along the hospital corridor and thought, why did she throw herself under the car? He does not know. He stopped after the stairwell, where his brother grabbed a guy by his clothes and shouted, it was him. He was the one who snitched on him. The guy shouted, no, he says it's not so. At one point, Hyunjin called out to him, brother? But Sam, continuing to look angrily at the guy, shouted, does he know what kind of hole he almost fell into? Because of him, even his sister suffered. The guy desperately said, it really wasn't him. And then Sam shouted, his tongue is too long. With these words, he pushed the boy down the stairs. Eventually, it came to attempted murder. Then Hyunjin asked in fear, brother, what is this? Sam put his hand on his shoulder and asked, he died. He's had enough. He's had his way. Hyunjin shouted, he shouldn't die. What should I do now? Sam asked in response, what should I do? He knows. After some time, Hyunjin entered the cell and said, his dad is the chairman of the Yuksan group. He'll be released soon. So he ended up in a correctional center and believed his father's words and his grandfather's ideas. It all turned out to be a lie. Maybe this is his punishment for not saving his sister? In the present tense, he said, but father, he will accept punishment for not saving his sister. Shouldn't a brother be held accountable for his own crimes? Hosik replied, it's all for the sake of their heir, who will continue their lineage and business. He was also born into their family and enjoyed the benefits, so he must sacrifice it. That's what younger brothers are for, right? Then Seijin said, what nonsense. He approached Hyunjin and said, hey, they have to go. Don't listen to this nonsense. Seimin added, yes, don't pay attention. A real family takes care of each other and doesn't sacrifice anyone. They have to go back. The correctional center is better than this place. Hyunjin wiped his tears and said, yes, they will come back. The next second, the door to the ward opened. Sam walked inside and asked, what's wrong? There are unfamiliar faces here. Father, who are they? Hyunjin looked at them and thought, brother and grandfather? Meanwhile, Sungil was walking down the hallway and heard conversations from the room. Brother, he'll get all the points this time, right? When they get back, there will probably be a correction test. Sungchul put his hand on the fan and asked, if they pass the test and are released, what will they do? The choker answered, well, he wants to take care of his mother. He's thinking of getting a car mechanic's license. Someday he wants to open a small auto repair shop. Sungchul spun the fan and asked, then, when he is released, will they hire him there? The choker answered, then he must behave well. He still has a lot of points ahead of him. Sungchul asked, will they really hire him when he is released? At that moment, Sungil stood in the hallway and said, Sungchul, the guy who came to the correctional center as an adept at thugs, has now come to his senses. Maybe it's not adults who can change children, but children like them. Then he walked forward and said, yes, maybe he's right. At that moment, Nick peeked out from around the corner and asked, did he leave? He told me the director was scary. So will he start his tasks then? Meanwhile in the ward, Sam asked, oh, Hyunjin left? That was quick. Hosik put his hand to his head and asked, what do you need? He said not to come. He's on punishment. Sam replied, he didn't want to, but his father needs him. It's nothing serious. He drank a little, got into a fight. Apparently, sports are in fashion now. Someone broke down. It seems he doesn't know yet that it was him. Grandpa said loudly, that's right, Hyunjin. He can do it again. Will he do it for an old man? Then Sam put his hand on Seimin's shoulder and smirking, asked, can he play with her? He likes her like that these days. At that moment, Seijin shouted in irritation, dirty hands. The next second, a helmet flew into Sam's face, causing it to fly off to the side. The people present gaped in surprise, and Seimin said, idiot. Is he tired of living? The next second, the grandfather screamed, oh, she's an idiot. How dare she touch his precious grandson? She asked, his grandson? There are no words. Is he blind or something? Doesn't he see that this idiot just pestered her? She didn't interfere in their family affairs. But they weren't their parents, were they? The old man pointed his finger at her and shouted, how dare this freak talk about raising a child? Before he could finish, Seimin said, yes, her parents divorced early, so her upbringing isn't all that smooth. If there's one thing she's learned, it's not to quarrel with her brother, to share with her brother, and to defer to her brother. But that hardened character over there, it seems, hasn't learned that yet. The grandfather shouted, son, what is that freak babbling about? He should take care of that person. Then Hosik pointed his finger forward and said, he will pretend that he doesn't know about their presence here, so she should leave while he's still kind. Sam was surprised. Leave? He grabbed the IV stand and swinging it shouted, where is he going to go? Sejun shouted, sister, and Grandpa shouted joyfully, that's it, well done, their grandson. He must show her what he's made of. Then Seimin turned around. Meanwhile, Sungchul came out of the office and said, he's going to quickly go to the toilet. Choker answered loudly, he'll bring him some lollipops. He stayed behind to repair the fan and said, strange, the wiring is fine. Then he heard sounds and asked, what, is he back already? Anyway, if he really leaves here, then he should take care of the repair team. He has no one else to rely on. Why isn't he answering? He turned around. The next second, Nick hit him on the head with a wrench. Meanwhile at the hospital, Sam shouted, damn. What's wrong? He has to get out of the way, Hyunjin. At that moment, he blocked his path and said, he won't leave. He doesn't want anyone to get hurt because of him. Before he could finish speaking, Sam became indignant. Damn it, what's with that insolent look? It seems he needs to be taught a lesson again? And then Sejun swung his fist and shouted, stop it. The next second, Hosuk hit Sam in the face. The grandfather, perplexed, shouted, son. Hyunjin exclaimed, dad. The grandfather began to hit his son all over the body and shouted, what is he doing? He's hitting his own son. Is that how he raised him? At that moment, Sam grabbed the bruised spot and asked, dad hit him. He never hit him. Is it okay to hit the eldest son? The grandfather ran up to him and shouted, everything is fine. They're heir. The old man will teach him a lesson. And then, Hosik admitted, he needs to stop. He's suffered enough. When he lost his eldest daughter because of him, when the younger Hyunjin went to the correctional center in his place, he believed his father's words that his eldest son would someday come to his senses. And this is the price of his faith. They are all his children. He loves them all. Hyunjin was touched and said, father. And then Hosik bowed to him and said, Hyunjin, he will ask for forgiveness. He will somehow correct his brother's actions and will soon free him from the correctional center. Grandfather ran up to him and started hitting him on the back. Son, what is he doing? When will he even understand what this means? Who gave him permission? Hey, is anyone there? The next second, guards burst into the ward and shouted, yes, sir. And grandfather pointed his finger forward and shouted, grab these guys who abused his grandson. The guards acted decisively and rushed forward. Meanwhile, Nick asked, did he really think he could get out of the correctional center? After all, it was clear that he would return again. The world would do just fine without them. Well, since he wanted to get out, he would help him. He sat next to Choker's body and said, "The fracture is serious. It will be difficult with everyday affairs." The next second, he heard a rustle and, turning around, asked, "What, are you back already?" "Great." He began to pull Choker's leg and said, since Sungchol was also a target, they should quickly finish and go to bed. But the next second, Shin entered the room and asked, "What is this blood, and why is no one there?" At that moment, Nick smirked and swung a wrench. Meanwhile, the protagonist stood in the toilet and thought, why aren't they coming back? They should be back before the director arrives. If anything, he will somehow buy time. At that moment, Sungchol approached him and said, he looks confused. He thought, he is from the repair team, right? He may not know what's wrong, but if he needs help, he should say so. The MC awkwardly thanked him and asked, "But why?" Sungchol replied, he was a bit mistaken about him. He thought that since he was a candidate for the Red Prison, he must be bad. But apparently, that was his prejudice. The protagonist asked, does he hate the Red Prisoners too? Sungchol started washing his hands and replied, he just doesn't want to go back to the past. They made him a candidate and forced him to fight on a whim. Basically, if it wasn't a fight, he'd always help. He headed for the exit and waved. The MC replied, yeah, thanks. He thought, maybe he shouldn't talk to him when he's going to the bathroom. Meanwhile, the wrench fell to the ground and Nick's hands were covered in blood. He looked at Shin's body